Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome to my first ever YouTube video. My name is Flop, and in this video, I'm going to do an in-depth guide into the Restoration Druid spec with a focus on PvP and specifically 3v3 Arena. I started playing WoW in 2008. I was around 9 or 10 years old. I'm 23 now. I've been playing Restoration Druid at a high level since around the start of Legion. I'm a streamer and content creator for Method, and there is a link to my live stream below if you ever want to catch me live. Before we get started, I'd like to describe what this guide is going to be like. In this video, I'm going to break down what I think are the key aspects of what makes a Druid in Arena, which abilities create and define a Druid's role in Arena. I will use specific real game examples of how you as a player and as a Druid can use certain abilities and mechanics to create huge advantages for you and for your team. I will go into detail on how you can use positioning to your advantage as a Druid in the arena in 2v2 and 3v3, 3v3 with two casters, two melee and melee caster compositions. I will pick apart the Restoration Druid healing rotation and go in depth on how to use your healing toolkit efficiently. I will deep dive into positioning as a healer, breaking it down into key concepts that can be applied in every single one of your games. I will also break down the talent and honor talent choices with real game examples of how they can be used. I will discuss covenant choice, soulbind choice, conduits, legendary choice, and stats for Druid. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's get the basic stuff out of the way first. So here we hop in. This is my Druid, and let's talk about let's do stats first. So for stats for Druid, your stats are going to be haste and versatility. Haste and versatility are by far the two best stats for Druid. Mastery is definitely not bad. It's like a close third place probably. But the reason versatility is the best is the same reason it's the best for every spec in PvP right now. It's just because of the trinket bonus, 40% increased effectiveness when you're in Arena. So that makes versatility extremely effective for Druid. You might ask yourself, Mastery is like more healing. If you have a bunch of hot stuff, you get more healing out of it. Yes, but the way the numbers work out, 30% increased healing all the time, regardless of how many hots you have on somebody, is extremely, extremely nice. And haste, you just can't get rid of. If I equip this haste test gear where I take off all of my haste, you can see that my rejuve ticks every 3 seconds. So that's a pretty long time in between rejuve ticks. And you can also see how slow my global cooldown is. If you look at the timer that ticks around every time I press a button, it moves extremely slow compared to this. If I equip my Resto gear, you see how much faster that ticks? Your global cooldowns are just going to be so much faster. It's really nice as a Druid for shape-shifting, for canceling form, and just like moving around the map and stuff like that. It just makes everything smoother to have a little bit faster global. And as you can see here, my hots are ticking every 2.6 seconds instead of 3 seconds. And that kind of stuff really, really, really adds up over time. Having faster ticking hots, having the faster cyclone casts, and the faster regrowth casts, it just makes haste pretty invaluable. I'd say haste and versatility are great, and having a few pieces of mastery never hurts. I think I have a mastery verse ring, a mastery verse necklace because it's socketed. But yeah, mastery is definitely not bad. But haste verse are definitely the two best stats for Druid. Covenant, you want to play Necrolord every single time. I have a lot of people coming to the stream and they ask like, yo, is Night Fae Resto Druid viable? Is Kyrian Resto Druid viable? Yes, it's probably viable at like somewhat of a low rating. You can probably make it work totally fine. But if you want to be competitive, if you want to play Druid the way it's meant to be played, you need to be Necrolord. The reason why is because Fleshcraft is unbelievably powerful for any player, especially a healer, specifically because of the Soulbind. This brings me to the Soulbind that you're going to be playing as Restoration Druid. You're going to play Plague Deviser Marileth every single game, no matter what. The reason you do is because of ultimate form. I do think that there are some arguments in very specific matchups where you could take like maybe Sulfuric Emission, go this Soulbind to get the extra int, or maybe this to the extra passive int. These are okay, but Plague Deviser Marileth is what you should play every single game if you're trying to learn Druid. It's the best. I play it every game. It's just super, super good. And so that the reason that Plague Deviser Marileth is the best is because of, like I said, ultimate form. While channeling Fleshcraft, you're immune to crowd control and you regenerate 2% health every 1 second. If you finish the full channel, you gain 3 seconds of crowd control immunity, during which you regenerate 2% health every 1 second. So extremely powerful defensively. Fleshcraft scales with your HP. So if you're in bear form, if you have BM up, if you have Ursine Vigor, this conduit here that increases your HP in bear form, it's going to buff the absorb of this Fleshcraft. So as you can see here, if I'm in bear form and I have BM up, this is a 26k absorb. That is a huge absorb, and while I'm casting it, I'm immune to crowd control. The only way to stop it is to kick it. If they don't have kicks, they can't stop it. You're immune to crowd control for 3 seconds after you finish the cast if they can't kick it. So it's just extremely powerful for Druid. And then Adaptive Swarm is a key part of your healing rotation. It only costs 500 mana. As you can see here, Cenarian Ward costs 920. Adaptive Storm costs 500 mana. It's on a 25-second cooldown, does somewhat decent healing, but the big thing about it is that it increases the effectiveness of your periodic effects on them by 33%. And it has 3 charges. So that means when you put it on somebody, not only are you not spending very much mana, you're also buffing all of your hots on them by 33%, and you are giving them 3 debuffs, or 3 buffs, excuse me, that the enemy team would have to purge. Say you're fighting a Shadow Priest and you Adaptive Swarm, he has to use 3 globals to get that Adaptive Swarm off on top of your Life Bloom, 2 rejuves, Regrowth, Wild Growth if you have those up. You know, if you're playing with a mage, they have Arcane Int, they have Triune Ward with the 3 barriers, you know, they have the procs that they get if they're fire, if they might have Power Ward or Fortitude from playing with a Shadow Priest if you're playing God Comp or something like that. It's just, this Adaptive Swarm, those extra 3 debuffs, or 3 buffs, excuse me, they stack up big time, and they're a huge protection from Purge, and it's just such a key part of your healing rotation. It's a low cooldown, but yeah, Necrolord is the best for Druid by far. Fleshcraft and Adaptive Swarm are extremely powerful. They work seamlessly into your rotation. It's really, really, really solid stuff. So after that, let's go into conduits. Conduits for Druid. There's a lot of great conduits for Druid. There's definitely a lot of really, really good ones. First, let's go over potency. For potency, I think the top conduits are Evolve, Swarm, and Ready for Anything. I think Ready for Anything is nice to take all the time. It's really, really, really good. Oh, and excuse me, Floral Recycling. So Evolve, Swarm, Ready for Anything, and Floral Recycling. Evolve Swarm you play every game no matter what. I play this all the time. It just buffs your Adaptive Swarm. It buffs the buff of your Adaptive Swarm. It increases periodic effects by an additional 8.4%. That's what makes it 33% instead of, I believe, 25% or something like that. Probably did bad math there, but anyways. Ready for Anything also is a great take. It's just nice to have all the time. It makes your NS a 50-second cooldown instead of being a 1-minute long cooldown. It's just nice to have that up, you know, a little bit earlier. Could definitely be a big help for sure. But the one that I really, really like right now is Floral Recycling. And I actually learned about this kind of, not about the conduit, but about this, what I'm about to say, from somebody in my stream. You know, I don't remember their name, but it was just a viewer was talking to me about Floral Recycling, and I was kind of on the side of Ready for Anything. I was saying like the short NS is just better. You get more value out of it just like every game, no matter what. But the thing about Floral Recycling, the downfall of it is that your Swift it buffs your Swiftmend by the hot it's consuming, right? And if you have Rejuve, Regrowth, every time I Swiftmend, it is always going to consume the Regrowth. Here, let me take my Legendary off so you can see this. It's always going to consume the Regrowth every time. And Regrowth, the Regrowth hot is really not that much. As you can see here, 175 every 1.8 seconds compared to 627 every 2.7. It's really a very small hot. It doesn't heal for that much. It doesn't last for very long, and it doesn't buff your Swiftmend by very much. And so for that reason, you know, for a long time, I thought that Floral Recycling would just not be a good take because it's just always going to consume that Regrowth, and you're never going to get too much value out of it if you're doing a proper healing rotation using your clear casting procs and things like that. But the thing about this is that you're going to find yourself in a lot of situations in the current meta where you only have a Rejuve on somebody and you don't have time to put another Rejuve up. You don't have time to do anything. You just have to Rejuve Swiftmend, right? And those situations do happen a lot, and you actually end up Swiftmending into Rejuves way more often than I thought I would. You know, going back, looking at my VODs, there's plenty of situations where my Regrowth falls off. It's not a very long hot. And I do get a lot of value from this, especially if it's a Swiftmend on a Soul the Forest Rejuve, which is just really nice overall. But yeah, so that pretty much covers potency. I think Evolve, Swarm, Ready for Anything, Floral Recycling, those are the top 3. Evolve, Swarm every game, and then you can kind of pick between Ready for Anything and Floral Recycling, whatever feels better to you, honestly. For Finesse, I like Tireless Pursuit. Is by far my favorite. If you're going to have a slot for Finesse, Tireless Pursuit is probably the best one that could go in there. The reason it's so good is, so I have a 200 item level here. For 4.2 seconds after leaving cat form or travel form, you retain up to 40% movement speed, up to. So if you're in cat form and you cancel form, you'll be moving 30% faster. But if you're travel form and you cancel form, you'll be moving 40% faster. So what this does is it just means essentially I have freedom the entire time and I'm running at 40% movement speed every game. Like it's just like travel form, cancel form. I have 2 globals that I can use until I can travel form again. And the entire time I'm running at, you know, 40% movement speed. You know, even though I'm not in travel form, I'm running at travel form movement speed. And if I go bear form and then I cancel form, I'm still running. I can travel form and go bear form and be running at 40% in bear form. There's just so many different uses for Tireless Pursuit. It's a huge increase to your mobility. Super, super great conduit to take. And I think Born of the Wilds also has a place, not as much as Tireless Pursuit, but it still is pretty decent. Just reduces the cooldown on your bash, makes it around 50 seconds instead of 1 minute. There may be, like, as God Comp, I think there may be some reason to take this more often, just because of the way that your Shadow Priest, Stun, and Silence, line up with bash sometimes. But still, I think Tireless Pursuit overall, you're going to get immense value from it pretty much every game. And that brings us to Endurance. The three that I have here are both 184 item level, pretty low, but they're all very good. I would say that Well-Honed Instincts is a must. If you're playing Druid, you have to get this conduit. It is 100% required. I don't think I've played a single game of Shadowlands Arena without Well-Honed Instincts and Evolved Swarm conduits on my Druid. We already talked about this one, but Well-Honed Instincts, when you fall below 40% health, you cast Frenzied Regeneration up to once every 69 seconds. Frenzied Regeneration, I don't know if it's bugged or not, but it's affected by your Adaptive Swarm, and also Innate Resolve interacts really well with it. It increases the healing that it does on you by 15.6%. So if you have Adaptive Swarm and Innate Resolve on this other Endurance Conduit, it's going to heal you for a ton. It's pretty ridiculous. And it'll happen whether you're in bear form, travel form, cat form, doesn't matter. It will proc. But the weird thing about this conduit is that I should probably pull up an example of this, but I'll try to explain it without an example. If this procs when you are in any form and you shift into any form besides bear form, it will cancel. There's some other weird interactions for Feral and Boomy, I believe, but if you're a Restoration Druid and you get stunned out of form and people are attacking you and they proc this Well-Honed Instincts, they dip you below 40% HP. If you go cat form, it will cancel it. If you go travel form, it will cancel it. If you're stunned in cat form and they proc the Frenzied Regeneration and you're in cat form, if you cancel form, it will actually cancel the Frenzied Regeneration, which is very weird. But if you go into bear form, it will not cancel it. So I would highly suggest, playing this every single game, but also understanding that if you cancel form while it's going to cancel the Frenzied Regen. I believe it's just a bug. But if you go into bear form from regular form, it will not cancel. So Innate Resolve is another Endurance Conduit that I think is really great. Usually I have Innate Resolve here instead of Ursine Vigor on this slot. But I think that Innate Resolve is just good to take overall. If you're just starting to play Druid, if you're just starting to kind of get comfortable and try to push, I would say the best setup for you would be Ready for Anything right here, Well-Honed Instincts right here, Evolved Swarm right here, and then Innate Resolve right here. This is just going to buff your Frenzied Regen right off the bat. The regrowth is like, I guess it's kind of nice, but not a very big deal. And then Ursine Vigor is only useful for one thing. The only reason that this is useful is because if you go into the starting room of an arena and you like I demonstrated earlier, you go bear form and you BM and then you get this Ursine Vigor conduit, you swap your path to this Ursine Vigor conduit to give you 15.6% increased health after shifting into bear form. You will cast Fleshcraft with that extra health and it will increase the absorb immensely. And then after you cast the Fleshcraft, you can just swap over to the Tireless Pursuit and have gained pretty much the benefit of both just in the starting room. So yeah, I mean, that pretty much covers conduits. That's Potency, we went over that. Finesse, Tireless Pursuit's the best for sure. And then Endurance, Innate Resolve is a great pick. Well-Honed Instincts every single game. And Ursine Vigor is a kind of more of a niche conduit. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers conduits. The legendary for Druid is going to be Verdant Infusion. Every single time. It is the best legendary for Restoration Druid by far. There are a few arguments. Drought of Deep Focus is okay sometimes in 2v2 if you're playing like a specific comp or in a specific matchup. It can actually do a lot of damage. But overall, Verdant Infusion is going to be your pick for Restoration Druid for your legendary every single time. Swiftmend no longer consumes a heal over time effect. So just that right off the bat, the fact that it doesn't consume a heal over time effect means you don't have to reapply a hot after you Swiftmend. That makes your rotation much smoother. It makes everything easier, saves you mana. It's very, very, very good. And extends the duration of your heal over time effects on the target by 10 seconds. So that's insane. I mean, an increase like my rejuve when I put it up is only 14 seconds. That almost doubles the effectiveness of this hot, giving me twice the healing from it. As the like for the same mana that I'm spending. It's super efficient for your mana. It's super efficient in your rotation generally. Getting a Swiftmend before you get CC'd is great because it extends all those hots and then they have those hots when you're CC'd. But the real reason why it's the absolute best, I've discussed like kind of the upsides of it, but the real reason why it's the absolute best is because of the way it interacts with Cenarian Ward. Cenarian Ward is a 30-second cooldown, and it's a very powerful hot that lasts for 8 seconds. So you put Cenarian Ward up on somebody. It's initially it has to people have to do damage into the send ward for it to start ticking. But once it starts ticking, it lasts 8 seconds. So you use send ward, your global cooldown starts. They do damage maybe halfway through your global cooldown, you know, maybe 1.2 seconds or so. And that send ward starts ticking. It gets to 7 seconds duration, and then you swift mend on your next global. So when you swift mend on your next global, like we just read it with the legendary, it extends it by 10 seconds. So that extension is going to make your send ward a 17-second cooldown. And at this point, your Cenarian ward is on a 29-second cooldown. So you've got 17 seconds of send ward, and you've got 29 seconds until you can send ward again. So your swift mend is a 15-second cooldown. So there is a 2-second window where your Cenarian ward is going to have 2 seconds left. Your swift mend is going to come off cooldown. You can actually swift mend it a second time, extending it again, bringing it to 11 or 12 seconds. So by the time that 12-second send ward is over, plus the 17-second initial one, that's 29 seconds there. And we're going to go over this again later in the video and how it can actually be applied in real games. But that essentially means that you have a 100% uptime on send ward if you're fighting a team that is just attacking one target. And that's not always true. You know, a lot of times people will be swapping around. You can't always swift mend the send ward every time, but it is something that is really, really, really good to do, and is the reason why this legendary is the best for Druid for sure. Real quick, I just want to go over macros. There's really only one macro that I think is required for Druid in Arena, and it is a cancel form macro. I just went over that with Tireless Pursuit, but as you can see here, I can go into form and cancel form instantaneously, right? I can go into bear form and instantly be out of bear form. I can go into cat form and instantly be out. I can go into like any form and instantly leave the form. When you leave a form, you remove a snare on yourself, and it's completely off global. This is just a really, really, really key part of playing Druid in Arena. It's a great thing to do if you get Nova'd and you're in travel form. You know, you don't have to use the global to go cat form and then cancel form or anything like that. If you get Nova'd and you're in form, you just cancel form, keep using your globals. You know, it's an off global kind of just very fluid way to move your character, and I think is super, super important. If you're going to play Druid, you need a cancel form macro 100%. And then I think the other one was a NS macro. It just looks something like this. It's just slash cast Nature Swiftness, and then here I'm just gonna move my camera out of the way for a second. It's slash cast Nature Swiftness and then slash cast Regrowth. It just makes it so that it's instant cast. It just makes it so that you just have to press it, you know, 2 times and it'll just instantly cast it. You don't have to have it on 2 separate binds. It's just a quality of life thing, not really the biggest deal. And then there was one more, I believe. Oh yeah. Slash cast at cursor for Vortex and Efflorescence. This is not for everybody. Some people like to see the green circle pop down, but these macros just make it so that I can just press it where my mouse is, and it will just automatically, you know, put the ability down wherever my mouse is at the time. I can drop Vortex here and just not have to worry about you know, clicking the bind and then clicking my mouse. It's just you know, one easy click. I like it a lot. All right, so that's all the basics, and let's jump into the video. Okay, so now that we've gone over the very basics of how to set up your Druid, like once you ding 60 as far as Covenant, Soul Mines, things like that, let's kind of deep dive into talents for Druid. So before I really get into the details, I just want to say that there are some talents for Druid that almost never change. There's just your baseline regular talents that you play every game. Those talents are going to be Cenarian Ward, Wild Charge, Soul of the Forest, and Germination. And really Overgrowth as well. But I want to say it's mainly Soul of the Forest, Wild Charge, and Cenarian Ward. There are some 2s matchups and a few 3s matchups even where Spring Blossoms can be good. And I think Flourish does maybe have a place in some very specific matchups as well. But generally, if you're playing Druid, if you're just trying to learn Druid, I would recommend starting out with Cenarian Ward, Wild Charge, Soul of the Forest, Overgrowth, Germination every single game. Okay, you just pick those talents and don't touch them. Just leave them there. And maybe later on you can try out some of these other ones if you want to, but for the most part, you're pretty much all set. And so the reason why you're going to go send ward every game is because of your legendary. We've already discussed that. It is oftentimes my top healing, if not in my top 3. It's extremely good healing overall, and it's just, you know, it's undispellable. It's just a bunch of reasons why it's great. Wild Charge is off the global cooldown, is on a 15-second cooldown, and can be used offensively, defensively, and in any number of creative ways. It's just extremely solid. Renewal is nice sometimes, I guess, if you're just fighting a team that is only trying to kill you, but overall I don't think you really need it. I think Wild Charge is going to give you much more defensive advantages, and I think it's also going to be better offensively as well. Soul of the Forest you want to play mainly because it's just the best healing talent right here. Cultivation almost does no healing. The mastery that you get from it is not very worth it. The Incarn Karn is just not too good. It's just such a long cooldown. There's so much like high burst damage in the game right now, to where I don't think Incarnation is really a real talent choice. So Soul the Forest is your best option here. Overgrowth is extremely good for just recovering in those situations where you fall behind. Maybe you're coming out of a trap from a hunter, coming out of a sheep from a mage, and you have no hots up on your teammate. You just need to quickly recover, you know, get those hots up. I think Overgrowth is the best way to do that, and for that reason, it's probably the best talent on this row. Germination is, you know, if you have 5.7% mastery, Germination is essentially just going to give you a 5.7% increased healing on your target the entire game, plus being able to put a second rejuvenation on them, healing them, you know, twice as much as they would be if they had one rejuvenation. So, you know, obviously just a very solid healing talent. So now that we've gone over the basics, let's go into the 30 and 35 rows, which I believe are the only rows that really consistently change for Druid. I play Feral Affinity most games. Feral Affinity and Guardian Affinity are going to be your top two. Balance Affinity is, you know, we'll talk about that in a second, but Feral and Guardian are really going to be your go-tos. I think you should play Feral Affinity when you're going to be able to get usage out of your stuns. And it's also really nice to be able to have that little increase in movement speed. I think that that's really effective. And it also can provide a little bit of extra damage depending on what's going on. If you're playing with a Warlock in 2v2, it can be extremely powerful. If you're playing with a Mage in 2v2, I think you have to take this talent. I don't think you can play, you know, Mage Druid in 2s without Feral Affinity. But with Guardian Affinity, you get Incapacitating Roar, which is an interrupt, which does not remove dots. So still good sometimes if you're playing with a Warlock, you can use it to interrupt a cast, use it to stop somebody from, you know, doing something, and not take the dots off of the target when you do use the Roar. And you also take 6% less damage, and you get an extra charge of Frenzied Regeneration. So defensively, obviously, extremely solid pick, but Feral Affinity with the movement speed increase, the stuns, and the damage is going to be much more effective offensively. I play Feral Affinity most games just because, you know, I like to have fun with it. I feel like you can be very creative. But I mean, if you're learning Druid, I think most often you're going to find yourself playing Guardian Affinity, obviously depending on what comp you're playing. If you're learning with a Mage, I think you should play Feral Affinity and get used to having to use those stuns and, you know, play around with your Mage's polymorphs and your Cyclones and, you know, rotating through, you know, stuns, Cyclones, Sheeps. And it can also be good if you're playing with like an Ellie Shaman or like any, especially a caster. I think Guardian Affinity is going to be utilized a lot more in 2s at least if you're playing with a melee DPS. So with that said, let's go over Balance Affinity. I think Balance Affinity is extremely niche. The main benefit of Balance Affinity is the Astral Influence. Increases the range of all your abilities by 5 yards. This is really nice for Cyclone. Cyclone is a 20-yard range ability. The extra 5 yards makes it 25, which oftentimes is going to make the difference in getting the Cyclone or not. So for that reason, I really only find myself playing Balance Affinity when I'm playing RMD. When you're playing with a Rogue and a Mage, I think the Balance Affinity is extremely good because it allows you to play far away from the fight, still consistently land those Cyclones, and just get that cross CC every time. So for that reason, I think Balance Affinity can be utilized extremely well in RMD, and I think Feral Affinity is not as useful when you're playing with a Rogue, especially in 2s and 3s, just because of the amount of stuns that they have. You're not going to get too much value from having these stuns. You're better off with the range from Balance Affinity and the interrupt of Typhoon, or from the defensive capability from Guardian Affinity, and having the Incapacitating Roar is also extremely good when you're playing, especially with an Assassination Rogue, but even a Sub-Rogue in 2s and in 3s as well, if you're playing, you know, different comps with Rogues. I think having that Incapacitating Roar to be able to get CC on your own is extremely good, and the reason why is because it's a 30-second cooldown, so, you know, you can Kidney, Incapacitating Roar at the same time, get the Cyclone off the Incapacitating Roar, maybe even, you know, Bash, Incap Roar, Clone. You can just CC on your own reliably, and you know that your Rogue is going to be able to CC at least one person on the enemy team at the same time. So for that reason, I think, you know, Balancing Guardian, extremely good with Rogues. Guardian is extremely good defensively, probably going to be the #1 pick if you're just starting to learn Druid, and Feral Affinity, you have to play it with a Mage. It's extremely nice with classes like Warlock, Shadow Priest, Ellie Shaman, casters like that. And if you're playing with a, you know, a Windwalker Monk, there's ways to weave this in. But I think for the most part, if you're trying to learn, especially if you're playing with a melee, Guardian Affinity is going to be your go-to. But I think that it definitely depends a lot on what comp you're playing and what comp they're playing, and there's different interactions. There's a ton of different factors to consider, so it is pretty complicated. And after I go over all these talents, I'm going to go over some specific builds that I would take into certain comps depending on what comp I'm playing. But with that said, as far as the affinities go, for the level 35 row, we have Mighty Bash, Mass Entanglement, and Heart of the Wild. Heart of the Wild you can pretty much forget about. It's not very good. I pretty much never play it. Mighty Bash is very good offensively and defensively. It's a 1 minute cooldown, 4-second stun. You can reduce it to 50 seconds if you take Born of the Wilds, the Finesse Conduit, but I don't really take that very much. And it's just nice to have an on-demand stun. You know, it's just super valuable if you're playing God Comp, if you're playing, you know, LSD, Shadow Play. Having this stun is extremely good. It's going to set you up to get a Cyclone. It can be used to stun lock a kill target. It's, you know, it's just a stun. Can be used in a bunch of different ways. And I think Mass Entanglement is very good if you're playing with a Warlock. Works extremely well, obviously, with the Deep Roots Honor talent. You know, 30-second cooldown root with, you know, Deep Roots, making it undispellable. It's extremely good against Windwalker monks because of their images. When a Windwalker monk uses Storm, Earth, Wind, and Fire, he summons the images around him. You can use Mass Entanglement on him, root the images, and the images can't get out of the root. And especially if you're talented into Deep Roots, it won't break to AoE. You know, it'll have to get dispelled or something like that. So I think Mass Entanglement definitely has a place, you know, best utilized when playing with a Warlock, I think, honestly, but sometimes useful in other situations. And I think Mighty Bash is once again going to be that go-to pick. I think like a setup like this is probably the best regular setup if you're just starting to learn Druid. You know, Send Ward, Wild Charge, Soul of Forest, Overgrowth, Germination, just the basic healing talents, and, you know, Wild Charge being immobility. Guardian Affinity just to have the Incap Roar for CCing a healer if you need to, for interrupting somebody if you need to. The extra charge of Frenzied Regen and being tankier is just really nice, especially if you're not as comfortable with the matchups that you're going into and, you know, you feel like you can get punished really easily. And I think Mighty Bash, all around good offensively, defensively, pretty straightforward on how to use it. So yeah, I think a setup like this is very common. Setup like, you know, just the same thing, but with Feral Affinity is really good. But yeah, okay, so let's jump into Honor Talents now. So first up, I want to discuss Focus Growth. This is just going to reduce the mana cost of your Life Bloom, give you a little bit of, you know, better single target healing on whoever you have the Life Bloom on, and a little bit of extra Dispel protection. For this reason, I think Focus Growth is just a good baseline pick. You can just kind of keep it in there. You know, never hurts to take it. Reactive Resin, I think, is kind of similar to Focus Growth in how it functions. It's just going to give you a little bit of extra healing. It's just kind of passive. You don't really have to worry about it too much. It doesn't change the way you play that much. But the thing about Reactive Resin is that it's only good versus melee. So I think, you know, Focus Growth you can take versus everything. Reactive Resin, if there's no melee on the enemy team, you're not really going to get too much value out of it. And then I think Thorns is probably your most powerful honor talent versus melee. Thorns is extremely important. It's a 45-second cooldown, costs, you know, 1.8k mana, so it is somewhat expensive, but it does a bunch of damage, and it slows the attacker. Thorns is extremely good fighting any melee in 2v2, especially if they don't have a purge, and it's also really good in threes fighting any melee. Thorns is a super solid pick into almost any melee. It's also really good for baiting Kleptomania out. Even some of the best mages in North America that I fight, sometimes, you know, you Thorns and they'll just Klepto the Thorns, then I can just Overgrowth Adaptive Swarm and you know, totally stabilize. I think Thorns is super solid for baiting Klepto, super solid against any melee, really good for peeling for your team, really good for controlling who the enemy team is attacking. If you're fighting something like TSG as MLD or God Comp or Shadow Play or any kind of Druid double caster, Thorns is like the cherry on top. It's like you already are going to be totally, you know, making these people's lives hell by just like spreading out, slowing them, CCing them, and not letting them touch anything. And whenever they do touch something, you have Thorns, you have Ironbark, you have, you know, some sort of cooldown. So I think Thorns for that reason is super solid into melee. And so let's just go down the list, you know, one by one. Disentanglement, I think, is really only good in a few situations. It's good, obviously. Okay, so what it does is when you put the shroom down, it's going to remove slows from your teammate. So it's good into especially Frost DKs and Affliction Warlocks. If you're fighting a class, like you're playing with a class that needs to kite, you know, the DK, or needs to get around the pillar from the Affliction lock or something like that, Disentanglement can be extremely good versus stuff like that. It's also really good if you're playing with, say, an Ellie Shaman into a DK. Just helping them kite generally, I think, is really good, or sometimes even into Jungle Cleave, it can be good. But yeah, I think Disentanglement is good in very specific niche situations where, you know, you need to be able to dispel some sort of slow frequently. I think Entangling Bark is useless. I would never play it. Deep Roots is good if you're playing with a Warlock especially, but I mean, it can be good in some situations outside of that. I think maybe in 2v2 if you're playing with a Shadow Priest or an Ellie Shaman or something without, like, it's obviously not good if you're playing with a Mage because, you know, they're just going to be on root together the whole game, but I think Deep Roots is best utilized with a Warlock in 2v2 or with Shadow Play in 3v3 sometimes. It can be really good, and it works, again, extremely well with Mass Entanglement because Mass Entanglement is instant. High Winds I really like when you're playing Mage Druid. I think high winds is extremely powerful because it works well already into the idea that you're going to be CCing the enemy team a lot. You're going to be getting cyclones on the 3rd DPS trying to cross CC them. You're going to be trying to get the low clones. It's generally really solid. And it's also, again, when you're playing these double caster druid matchups, high winds is extremely powerful because of the fact that you're going to be able to get those cyclones out so frequently. You know, you have 2 other people casting on your team. You're going to be able to use cyclone as almost a kind of defensive cooldown with high winds. So I think high winds is really solid, but it is, you know, it's not always guaranteed that you're going to be able to get, you know, good value out of it. Sometimes you'll take it and it won't be useful at all. So for that reason, it's not like something that I take every game, but it is extremely powerful. And in the patch notes for 9.1, high winds reduces their damage and healing by 30%. So I think we could be seeing more of high winds come 9.1. If it reduces healing as well, you could use this to clone somebody low, clone like an enhancement shaman or a ret paladin or somebody with a lot of hybrid off healing low. It's also going to give MS to healers after they come out of the cyclone. So I think high winds could make a strong appearance in 9.1 for sure, but it's pretty good now still, even now. Early spring, I find myself really only playing into one composition, and that's shadow play. You know, it's just so much rot damage that I think having the tool of, you know, if you need to, you can go ahead and use early spring. This is something that I'll do a lot. I'll play Spring Blossoms, early spring, and disentanglement with focus growth. Play this into shadow play, or, you know, some double caster teams besides shadow play. The disentanglement with the Spring Blossoms means that when I put my shroom down, you know, this is not only putting an undispellable hot that the Shadow Priest can't dispel, it's also giving them freedom. So what I'll do a lot of the time is when I'm fighting shadow play, I'll play extremely offensive, try to be on their pillar a lot of the game, which can get me in trouble sometimes. Probably not the best way to play it, but if you put the shroom on their pillar and you have disentanglement with Spring Blossoms up, you're going to be able to help your team keep chasing them. You know, if everybody's stacked on the pillar and your team can keep kiting through, you know, in and out of your shroom, it's just going to allow them to keep up with the Warlock or keep up with the Shadow Priest or whoever they're attacking. And early spring just gives me a little bit of extra AoE healing, focus growth again, a little bit of dispel protection, a little bit of, you know, better single target healing. Yeah, so that's all for early spring. And then let's see, Master Shapeshifter is a 2v2 talent only, but even then I don't think it's very good. It only affects your bleed damage, so I think it can be good in combination with Drought of Defocus maybe. Playing Master Shapeshifter with Drought of Defocus and sitting in cat form and letting your bleed stick could be pretty good, but generally, you know, you have other better talents. I think Thorns is better. I think, you know, a lot of things are better than Master Shapeshifter. And then we have Mark of the Wild. Mark of the Wild is extremely good. Very underrated ability. It's extremely good into Ellie Shaman for Flame Shock damage, plus their Fire Ellie, damage. It's extremely good into Boomkin for their Moonfire and Sunfire damage. It's extremely good into DK for their Chill Streak damage and a few other AoE Frost abilities I think that they have. It's extremely good into Frost Mage, and it's somewhat good into Fire Mage if they're playing Meteor, but really not so much into Fire Mage. It also reduces the damage of the Disc Priest dot, Purge the Wicked, which is really nice. It's just generally good to take into classes that have these types of damage: Nature, Fire, Frost, and Arcane damage over time, and the area effect spells to be reduced by 15%. So I think it's definitely, you should always take it into a Frost Decay if you fight that. You should always take it into a Moonkin if you can, an Ally Shaman if you can, Frost Mage if you can. But yeah. So now what I want to do is run through some examples of compositions, examples of matchups, and kind of walk you through my talent choices and why I would pick them. So the first matchup that I'm going to go over is God Comp versus TSG. So that's Mage, Shadow Priest, Druid against Warrior, DK, Shaman, or Holy Pally, or Druid, or really any variation. So since I'm playing God Comp, of course I'm going to stick to Cenarian, Ward, Wild Charge, Soul of the Forest. Overgrowth is really good, Germination is really good, very solid. I wouldn't get too much value out of Spring Blossoms or Flourish. So we're going to stick with all those regular talents. And then as far as affinity goes, we are playing God Comp. So there are some matchups where I do think that Guardian Affinity could be better. If you are playing with a Fire Mage, God Comp, and you are, like, the enemy team is attacking you most of the game, like you are the kill target, then I think Guardian Affinity could be useful for sure. But if you're playing Frost, and if you're not the main kill target every single game, which you probably will not be, I would say that you would play Feral Affinity into TSG as God Comp, 9 times out of 10 for sure. Those extra stuns are going to come in handy. They're going to be a huge asset to you and your team as far as winning the game. And that concept is the same reason why I believe you would take Mighty Bash instead of Mass Entanglement, especially if you're playing with a mage. You don't need the Mass Entanglement too much because, your mage is going to be rooting them. So yeah, Mighty Bash and Feral Affinity is going to give you those stuns to land kills. And as far as honor talents go, I would pick focused growth for sure. When you're fighting TSG, they're going to be primarily attacking one target, but they do have the opportunity to split and they can swap pretty frequently. So for that reason, focused growth, if used correctly, is going to allow you to keep up the 3-stack on one person. And, you know, obviously you would like to keep that up on whoever's being attacked primarily. You know, but if they swap over to the other person, you can put the Send Ward and the Adaptive Swarm up on the other person if you have it up. Hopefully you do. Or maybe Overgrowth or something like that. Maybe Swiftman and S, anything like that. But you will still have the 3 stacks on the other person. And so this is why I think focus growth is so useful, is because it's not just useful when you're fighting single target. You know, it's if they start attacking 2 people on your team, you know, this will still stabilize that other person. Even if they decide to split, you know, you can still keep those 3 stacks on one guy. It'll probably be still pretty useful. So focus growth for sure. As far as the other stuff, I would say Thorns 100%, especially if you're fighting the Holy Pally or the R-Druid version. But even if you're fighting the Arsham version of TSG and they do have access to that purge, that offensive dispel, Thorns is still going to be good, especially if they're attacking your mage, because he'll have Triune Ward, Arcane Intellect, Power Ward, Fortitude from your priest, and he'll also have all of your hots, including Adaptive Swarm, which might take up 3 slots. So it would be pretty hard for the shaman to purge your Thorns if you can get it up when you have those hots up and you have those buffs up. So I think Thorns is really good, especially into double melee. Pretty much take it every single time. And then I would say, for this 3rd slot, you have 2 options. Option number 1 is Reactive Resin. This is going to be extremely useful just for the extra healing. It's going to save you mana, not having to refresh your rejuves as often, and it's just going to be more healing overall with you know, the longer lasting rejuves. But another option I would say, like Reactive Resin would be solid, but I think High Winds would be extremely good because you're playing God Comp. As God Comp, when you're fighting comps like TSG, there are going to be those times where your mage can't shoot the DPS. You know, they may have an offensive cooldown available and you don't have the DRs, or they have a stun on your DPS and you don't have Iron Bark, you don't have NS, you can't really top them immediately. Or maybe you do, but you would just rather not use it. I think that in some of these situations I found myself in, you can actually get a Cyclone off on the Warrior or the DK or one of the double melee. You know, kind of this also relates to other things that you're fighting for sure. But if you get that clone off during their offensive cooldown, even if they trinket it, you know, they're still going to be doing 30% less damage after 4 seconds, you know, or for 4 seconds after the 6 seconds where they were doing no damage if you get the clone. So also extremely effective into TSG. But yeah, I would say definitely this normal setup here, maybe Reactive Resin or High Winds. You can switch that around. But I think that's pretty much it as far as the God Comp versus TSG. So now let's talk about God Comp versus RMP. So when I'm fighting RMP, I think that Guardian Affinity is a very solid take. If they're attacking you, if you get the feeling that this RMP, if you fought them multiple times and they're trying to exploit you a lot, I think Guardian Affinity is a solid take. But I do think overall Feral Affinity would be the best if you can, you know, use your Battle Masters correctly, be in bear form for the stuns, use your Bark Skin and your Fleshcraft correctly. You know, you're not the only kill target. You know what I mean? If you play Guardian Affinity, they can just choose to attack your DPS, and then you don't have the threat of Feral Affinity. So I think that when you're fighting RMP, sometimes you may have to play Guardian. If you're fighting the RMP and that's all they're playing around and you don't feel like you can live without it, you may have to play it. But I do feel like if you're playing Druid into as God Comp into RMP, Feral Affinity is the go-to for sure. This is going to be one of the primary ways of stopping the enemy team from getting re-stealths. You know, stopping the Rogue from getting away, stopping the Mage from getting away, punishing the Priest potentially for playing in the middle of the map. Having access to more stuns is really nice. And especially when you're fighting RMP, you're going to be able to get those re-stealths. So one thing that I like to do when I'm fighting RMP is there will come times where, you know, they've done their go. You know, the Rogue Mage has used their stun DRs and has used their damage, and they're going to start running away. If I can top my team quickly before the damage, you know, like quickly as soon as the damage is over, I can stop healing, get a re-stealth, and I'll actually get a re-stealth before the Rogue does and be able to stun him, stun the Mage as he's running away, and just generally stop them from getting those resets. So I think that Feral Affinity is going to help you and your team, especially as God Comp. You know, sometimes those Rogue Mage can just get around the pillar and get away super easily. So this is going to be huge, you know, in combination with your Ursol's Vortex in preventing them from getting those re-stealths. And I think Mighty Bash, again, for the same reason, would be a solid take. And I would say you would want to play Focus Growth for sure, for the same reasons as I mentioned for TSG, but also because if your teammate gets Kleptomania'd and he has 3-stack Life Loom on him, then that is going to heal him more than if you weren't playing this talent. So just a little bit of counterplay around Klepto. Might not always mean something, but maybe it does. Who knows? And I think Thorns is for sure as well a good take into Rogue Mage. I think Thorns is good because sometimes it can bait Kleptomania. If you put a Thorns up, he Kleptos it, you know, Overgrowth right after, and you're totally chilling, like I mentioned before about Thorns. And so I think it's good against Klepto, and it also is good to punish the Rogue. If there comes a time like where you're lasting deep into the game and the Rogue, you know, isn't wanting to go for that re-stealth, he's wanting to stay in. If you get this Thorns up, this Thorns can punish a Rogue for attacking into it extremely hard. Yeah, people often underestimate the damage that Thorns can do, and it really can punish a Rogue 100%. And I think that the Rogue is often the kill target when you're playing God Comp versus RMP. And for your third talent, I would recommend playing either Reactive Resin or Mark of the Wild. Mark of the Wild because it does affect Meteor, and it also does affect the Purge the Wicked dot from the enemy Disc Priest. So I think it is going to reduce his Atonement healing. I believe it does work that way. Going to reduce some of the damage overall. And if the mage is playing Meteor, then it will reduce that. But oftentimes mages aren't even playing Meteor. I believe Kindling is the other choice. A lot of fire mages go with that. So I think that your other option is Reactive Resin once again. This is just going to give you extra healing in those stuns. You know, in the stun goes if you refresh your rejuve. It's just a little bit of extra healing, especially during CC, that can make your hots last longer or anything like that. So yeah, I think that's basically it for God Comp versus RMP. And so now let's shift gears away from God Comp and let's talk about Shadowplay versus Windwalker DK. So if you're playing Shadowplay versus Windwalker DK, there's a few things to consider. First of all, you're fighting a Windwalker monk, so Mass Entanglement is a very good choice, I would believe. I think that you still need the stuns from Feral Affinity. You don't need the Guardian Affinity. Your Shadow Priest and your Warlock should be able to peel for you. If the Windwalker DK decide to attack you, you use your Fleshcraft, your Skin, your BM, your Bear Form correctly. They should not be able to stay on you without being, you know, punished extremely hard by your two teammates. And that's going to require you to position yourself effectively, you know, etc., etc. But I think that you need the stuns from Feral Affinity. I think Mass Entanglement is extremely good into Windwalkers and DKs. Rooting a DK is extremely effective, depending on what the enemy team is playing with. If they're playing with a Holy Pally, I think Mass Entanglement should only be used on those images. You know, there will come times when the Holy Pally has to freedom, you know, a Corruption Slow, so it would come in handy in those situations. So I think that it's mostly useful for those monk images if they're playing with a Holy Pally, but it can also be good even if they are playing with a Holy Pally. So I think Mass Entanglement would be the go-to pick for sure. And because you're going with that Mass Entanglement, I think that you would have to play Deep Roots. Deep Roots and Mass Entanglement work extremely well together, just going to make sure that those roots never break. Thorns 100%, you know, if it's the shaman version, like I said before, it's still okay. You know, they're not going to be able to purge it every time if you put it up when you already have those hots up. So I think Thorns would be a solid take there. And I think Disentanglement 100% would be very good. This is going to allow your Warlock to kite the enemy team. I think that removing the slow from your Warlock, you know, and also his port removing that slow as well, you're fighting a DK, he's got that Chains of Ice. It's going to be extremely difficult for him to get away. But one thing I do want to mention is that there is the option of playing Mark of the Wild instead of Disentanglement. I do think that Disentanglement is probably the best just because it allows you to potentially completely avoid damage in the first place. But I think Mark of the Wild is extremely good just for reducing that chill streak damage. So I think that that's pretty much it as far as, you know, Shadowplay versus Windwalker DK. I think that you could make an argument for playing Spring Blossoms if you're playing Disentanglement. That could be a really solid setup, but I personally like the help that Overgrowth gives you if you're trying to recover quickly, especially if you're fighting the Shaman version of Windwalker DK, which I do run into quite often. Okay, so after that, let's go ahead and talk about Shadowplay versus Jungle Cleave. So when you're fighting Jungle Cleave, there's a few things to consider. Is it survival? Is it marksman? Is it BM? And the fact that you're fighting a Feral is pretty important. So I think that when you're fighting jungle as Shadowplay, I would definitely recommend Feral Affinity. 100%, you need those stuns, as you did in the other matchups that we've talked about. I don't think that you need Guardian Affinity. I don't think that the jungle is really capable of killing the Druid if you have good positioning and your team can peel for you, same as you know, the Windwalker DK matchup. And so I think as far as Mighty Bash and Mass Entanglement, I do think that you have some discretion as far as what you want to pick here. If I was fighting Shadowplay, or fighting jungle rather, as Shadowplay, I would probably take the Mighty Bash. The reasoning for this is just that I want to be able to punish that Feral as much as I can. I do think that the Feral pushing in, getting too offensive, if we get a good mind games going him, having another stun besides just the priest stun, I think is super important. But if you're fighting the BM Hunter version of this, I do think that there is a good argument for Mass Entanglement, Deep Roots. You know, playing this together is going to allow you to root those pets, keep them off of whoever they're attacking at the time. But I would recommend you play Mighty Bash. It's just super useful offensively in this matchup. And that way it opens up another talent right here. So I would 100% go with Focus Growth, Thorns, and Reactive Resin. just the, very basic setup. Focus Growth is going to give you that good single target healing. Thorns is going to give you that, opportunity to force them to either change targets or force the feral to take extra damage. It's also going to kill the Hunter's Pet, which is pretty nice. And Reactive Resin, again, is just going to give you that extra healing. There is an argument, I guess, for, playing high winds if you're going to be going for those defensive cyclones sometimes. But I think overall you're going to get more value from Reactive Resin. And I think that once again, we find ourselves with this very basic setup: Feral Affinity, Mighty Bash, Focus Growth, Thorns, Reactive Resin. I think that this is kind of the talents that you're going to be ending up playing most of the time. And you can change things around. You can try out different talents, try out different things, different builds. But for the most part, I think that this one right here, as long as you're fighting at least one melee, is going to be a pretty good setup for you. So given the shadow play discussion, let's start talking about turbo. So if I'm playing turbo versus RMP, my talents would probably look something like this. I would play, for sure, Guardian Affinity. When you're playing Turbo, as the Druid, you are going to be a prime kill target for the Rogue Mage, having the Incapacitating Roar to potentially interrupt certain casts, to appeal for yourself if you're getting attacked, and also for getting that CC. Incapacitating Roar is on the same cooldown as Stormbolt, so when you're playing Turbo, I think that lining up that Stormbolt on the Mage with the Incapacitating Roar on the Priest, some sort of CC on the Rogue, if possible, is a very easy way to get pressure consistently. It's going to help you get those Cyclones, over and over and over. Lining up your Roar with his Stormbolt is super effective, and especially into RMP. And I would say that there is some deliberation here. I don't think that you absolutely need the Bash. I think that having Bash is nice. It's a little bit of extra CC on the healer, and I probably would play Bash like maybe 7 games out of 10. But I think that Mass Entanglement with Deep Roots, again, is really, really, really good into these Rogue Mages that are constantly trying to get around the pillar. I think that getting a Mass Entanglement on a Rogue and then dropping the Vortex on him after that and just slowing him down from getting away, even if he gets dispelled 2-3 seconds into the root, you could be getting a Moonfire on him right at the end of that 3 seconds, and it's just going to generally slow down their ability to get away. So I think there is an argument for this, but I think that Mighty Bash would probably end up being a little bit more useful. And once again, we're fighting Rogue Mage. Focus Growth is good. Thorns is good. Both of these are good into Klepto. Punishing the Rogue is a great option here when you're playing Turbo. Getting him just a little bit lower, maybe taking 15% of his HP before he gets Stormbolted can mean the difference between life and death for him. And I think that, once again, Reactive Resin could be good for the extra healing and the stuns, and Mark of the Wild could be good for the Priest Dot and, other things like that. So yeah, that's just explaining my thought process behind talent choices for Turbo versus RMP. And so now I'd like to talk about Turbo versus God Comp. So this is an interesting matchup. And I honestly have not played it much from the Turbo point of view, but just based on, my personal thoughts about it, I would say that you would play this general setup for sure. You need the Overgrowth, you need the Sin Ward, you need the Wild Charge, you need all the regular stuff. And I would say that you could go for either Feral Affinity or Guardian Affinity, but that Guardian Affinity is probably your best option. If you're fighting a good God Comp, not only is the R-Druid going to be the kill target, but they're going to be doing consistent damage to you and your team. And your Enhance is going to be able to help out a ton. Your team has plenty of defensives on their own, but you may not have as much time as you would like to be able to go for these re-stealths. You will have to keep your Hots up preemptively, or else, you could be trying to get them up a little bit too late, and you could get punished extremely hard if you get silenced or stunned by the Shadow Priest or something like that, even just DB'd by the Mage. So for that reason, I do think that Guardian Affinity would probably be the best pick if you're playing Turbo into God Comp. And then I also think Mighty Bash would be the best. You're not going to get too much value out of Mass Entanglement, rooting a Mage or a Shadow Priest, so you want to play that Bash for sure. Mostly for, bashing the enemy healer, or maybe bashing like one of the off targets just to peel or something like that. But Mighty Bash is extremely, flexible as an ability, can be used offensively or defensively, especially in this matchup, Turbo versus God Comp. And so here we can't play Thorns and we can't play Reactive Resin. We're not fighting melee. And I get this question a lot in my stream. People come in and they're like, oh, what talents do you play into casters? I feel like Druids, have all these talents for melee, but I don't know what to play into casters. So here I think the best talent setup would probably be something like Mark of the Wild, Disentanglement, High Winds, or Early Spring, I think are the other 3 choices. But let me first talk about Mark of the Wild. I think Mark of the Wild is good in this matchup because it's an extra Dispel protection against the Shadow Priest. The Shadow Priest is going to be spamming Purge the entire game. Mark of the Wild only costs 500 mana. Rejuvenation costs, I believe, 1100 mana. It's just a very cheap option to get up a buff. It's kind of a trash buff. I've recently been playing TBC Beta, and it's kind of the same concept. You use rank 1 Mark of the Wild, rank 1 Thorns as kind of trash buffs to cover up your other important spells. Same concept with Mark of the Wild. This is one of the big reasons why it's useful. It costs low mana, can be used as a Dispel protection. It's pretty nice. And I would say here, the most common, I would say, honestly, I would tell you to play early spring for the most part. I would say, like, if you're just trying to, you know, figure out what to play in the casters and you don't really know how disentanglement or high winds would be super useful, you know, you're not super comfortable with using them, you know, using the shroom on like some random slow, you never even know what kind of slow it is. Maybe it's the slow that that happens to your DPS after the Fury gets broken from the Shadow Priest conduit. Maybe it's just some random Frostbolt slow from the Fire Mage. You know, who knows what kind of slow it could be. But can be a little bit uncomfortable to use. Maybe you don't even get any value out of it whatsoever. And high winds could be useful, but you're fighting two casters as a double melee. You're not going to be able to reliably clone those casters, you know, every time. They could start playing back, blinking away from your clones, just playing far away from you, and you're not going to be able to get, you know, within 20 yards of them. So I think that early spring is at least going to give you some sort of value, at least during your innervate. This allows you, during your innervate, you have one extra global, one extra hot, you know, one extra mastery proc that you can put up during that innervate. It's totally free. And it also gives you that option of that wild growth. You know, if you know the game is going to end soon and you just don't have any other hots up, and you're not really concerned about your mana, you know, you just need to get extra healing out right then. You can just throw that instant wild growth out on both your DPS. And I think that it is super useful. I think that this talent kind of gets overlooked because I think people get really scared. They're like, oh my god, it's such a waste of mana, you know what I mean? But not every matchup ends because of your mana. You know, a lot of the time you win before your So I do think that early spring is extremely good into these, you know, you fight double caster as an R Druid and you have this dilemma, you know, like, what talents do I play? They're not as obvious as things like Thorns. They're not as obvious as things like Reactive Resin. But I think that early spring, you know, if used correctly, can be extremely useful. And same thing for Mark of the Wild. You're not even using it for the functionality of the ability. You're just using it because it costs low mana and it is an extra dispo protection. So I think you can be extremely creative with the Druid talents. I've heard a lot of complaints about them, but I personally think that there are some really, you know, great gems in here. I think that Master Shapeshifter should be totally relooked. Entangling Bark should be totally looked at. I almost never play either one of them. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers Turbo versus God Comp. And let's move on to RMD versus Windwalker DK. So this is a matchup that, you know, I love to play for sure. And if I'm playing RMD versus Windwalker DK, you've got two options. You can either play Balance Affinity. You have to play Mighty Bash for sure. Everything else stays the same. The only thing that would change in talents is your affinity. You would either play Balance Affinity. This is going to allow you to Cyclone the Monk, Cyclone the DK defensively, Cyclone the DK to cross CC him at the same time as your mage is going to go get a DB sheep on, you know, the Shaman or the Paladin or the Druid or whoever, and your rogue is going to kidney, you know, the kill target. This is going to make it really easy to get that cross CC, super effective. You can Typhoon, you know, the monk on his Fist of Fury, which is really nice sometimes. Just a little trick you can do with that. But I think that Guardian Affinity is going to be a solid pick for sure. If you ever get attacked, you know, it's nice to have that Guardian Affinity, and you don't necessarily absolutely need the range on clone. If you're fighting Windwalker DK and you're getting gripped in and you're dying over and over again, just play Guardian Affinity, you know, just get the other parts of the matchup down, you know. After they grip you in and you survive, what do you do after that, right? Play Guardian Affinity for that, survive the matchup, try to, you know, learn the pace of it and get better at avoiding those grip goes altogether, and maybe flesh crafting the grip or shadow melding right as he grips and you can just get away safely. Getting bear form consistently and having that bark skin, maybe even pre-BMing, you know, the go or something like that. But once you get the matchup down, I do think the Balance Affinity would be the best take here. Once again, for just allowing you to get that cross CC easily. That's super important as RMD. You need the Cyclones to win the games, for sure. And so as far as honor talents go, when you're playing RMD versus Windwalker DK, it's going to be a lot harder to heal than playing God Comp versus Windwalker DK, or Turbo versus Windwalker DK, or Shadowplay versus Windwalker DK. Healing RMD, you are extremely squishy, and outside of your stun goes, you know, your mage can help a ton peel for sure with the sheeps and the novas, but you don't have two casters, and you also don't have intervene and a bunch of off heals or anything like that. So your rogue is a big target. You know, your mage, if he gets caught in an awkward situation, the rogue can't peel for him if he doesn't have stun DRs, things like that. You're gonna have to be healing quite a bit. And so for that reason, I do think that Mark of the Wild would be the best take for sure. Focus Growth, 100%, you need that. And Thorns, 100%, you need that, especially if it's not a Purge team. Putting Thorns up on your Rogue can make them swap to your Mage if your Rogue doesn't have Evasion. That's one huge thing that you can do with Thorns, controlling who the enemy team is attacking. If your Rogue is the kill target and he's 100% HP, and you have the option of
putting up a send ward or putting up thorns. Sometimes if you just put the thorns up and send ward him right after that, you know, they'll get off of him, and because they see the send ward and the thorns, but then you can adaptive swarm, iron bark, swiftman, NS, whatever. You have all these other tools to heal your mage, and your rogue may not have had evasion or cloak or vanish or something like that. So I think that you can kind of control who the double melee are attacking, especially as RMD. If you're CCing one of the DPS, you know, making just one of them hit your teammate, and he's also taking that thorns damage, can be, you know, very not advantageous for him. So yeah, I think that would be the talent breakdown for sure. Balance, affinity, focus, growth, mark of the wild, thorns, you know, mighty bash, everything else kind of stays the same. And guardian affinity could be solid if you're just starting out learning the matchup. And so now let's talk about RMD versus RMP. So when you're playing RMD versus RMP, once again, you're a Resto Druid, you're fighting RMP, you're a kill target. So I think that pretty much every single game, especially if you're fighting Subfire, you're going to be forced to take Guardian Affinity all the time. And it's good because you can use the incapacitating roar to, you know, maybe CC the mage. You know, your mage isn't always going to be able to sheep the enemy mage. You know, hopefully he will be able to, but there may be times where there's no sheep DR on the mage and your mage is in a stun or something like that. Maybe you can incapacitating roar into a clone on the enemy mage, kill for your team that way. It can be super useful, but generally it's just useful for, you know, preventing yourself from dying. And I think Mighty Bash, solid take into RMP. Thorns, solid take in RMP, been over that. Mark of the Wild, focus growth, you know, these kinds of things stay the same. I think you could, you know, sub in Reactive Resin for Mark of the Wild probably, but it just depends. So I think we've gone over a pretty wide range of matchups and ideas. GodComp versus TSG, GodComp versus RMP. S-Play versus Windwalker DK, S-Play versus Jungle, Turbo versus RMP, Turbo versus GodComp, RMD versus Windwalker DK, and RMD versus RMP. There's probably some matchups here that I didn't talk about, but I do think that we went over most of the honor talents, got some reasons as to why they're useful, why they're not useful, and just, you know, went over all the talents and gave each one, you know, their day in the light. So hopefully this was informational for you, and if there's anything else that you have questions about, feel free to join my Discord, leave it down in the comments, check out my live stream, anything like that. Always open to talking about different talent setups and things like that. But yeah, let's move on. So when discussing Restoration Druid, I think one of the most important things to consider is utility. And before I start, I'd like to define what I mean when I say utility. The word utility for the purposes of this video essentially describes abilities which any given player possesses that don't necessarily do damage to your enemies or heal your teammates, but aid your team in some other way. Druids have always possessed an immense amount of utility outside of raw damage or raw healing. Utility and healing over time have always been at the heart of what separates Druids from other healers, at least in my opinion. This is probably the reason I fell in love with Druids so deeply, and why I can continue to enjoy the spec throughout multiple expansions. Let's start by going over some of the Druid's best forms of utility. Number 1, we have Cyclone. When talking about Druid in Arena, you obviously have to talk about Cyclone. Cyclone has 3 major uses in Arena. In 2v2, you can use Cyclone to crowd control the enemy healer, or to crowd control the enemy DPS. You want to crowd control the enemy healer when your team has a stun or a DPS cooldown for the kill target. Say you're playing with a rogue and he has Kidney, or an elemental shaman with Stormkeeper and Lightning Lasso available, or a warrior with Avatar and Stormbolt available for the kill target. That would be a perfect time for you to land a Cyclone on the healer, maybe with the help of your Bash or your Incapacitating Roar. But you want to crowd control the enemy DPS in varying situations. For example, it can be good to Cyclone an enemy DPS when they are low HP and the healer is vulnerable to crowd control in some way at the time. You can also Cyclone a kill target as they have a defensive cooldown, or if their healer has just left crowd control and is about to heal them. But in 3v3, you have the additional option of using Cyclone to crowd control the second DPS on an enemy team. You want to do this at the same time as the healer or kill target are also in crowd control, say a stun on a sheep. This is what you'll hear PvPers call cross CC or cross crowd control. Cyclone is some of the most reliable cross crowd control in the game since it is ranged, has no cooldown, and lasts 6 seconds. Cyclone can prevent damage and save you mana if used on an enemy DPS during a major offensive cooldown, like cycloning a warrior on Avatar, for example. It can break up enemy attacks and force enemy trinkets to win you the game quickly. Say you cyclone a rogue on his Shadow Dance and he decides to trinket that in order to make the best use of his Shadow Dance. It can completely nullify major defensive abilities like Life Cocoon, Blessing of Sacrifice, and Ironbark, among many others. And it also presents enough threat to force counterspells and or kicks in situations where your team can take advantage of being able to free cast. In my opinion, Cyclone is one of, if not the most flexible ability in the game, and in many situations is the Druid's greatest tool by far. I'm going to go over real game examples for many of the abilities and situations I will discuss here, but for Cyclone, you will see it used in many of the games anyways. For number 2, we have stuns. Stuns are a huge part of your utility as a Druid. Stuns are best utilized in combination with other crowd control like Sheep, Cyclone, and Fear.
They are the primary way to end games for your team as a druid, and if you are playing Feral Affinity, you have access to 2 extra stuns, being Rake and Maim. Stuns, especially in the context of playing Feral Affinity, are also best utilized when playing with at least one caster, with a few exceptions like Windwalker DK or TSG, for example. When healing wizard cleaves like God Comp, Shadowplay, MLD, etc., your stuns are one of, if not the most important offensive crowd control that your team has access to. You can use stuns to begin a CC chain on a healer. You can also use stuns to lock down your team's kill target and prevent them from interfering with your CC chains, healing, or using a defensive cooldown. Let's go over some specific examples of how stuns can be utilized in Arena. So in this clip, we'll see stuns and cyclones being used as I previously described. You guys will see me use cyclone and a stun to crowd control the enemy healer, and then a cyclone on an enemy DPS on a defensive cooldown. And you will also see how you can use cyclone to end games quicker in a lot of cases. So as you can see here, the Holy Paladin is in a full fear. My mage has just gotten kicked on Frost. The mage does not have, or still has access to counterspell. We have stun DR for the Paladin, and we have clone DR for the Feral. So let's see what happens. Mage uses CS there. We use Shadow Melt and Prowl to get a stun on the Paladin into a half clone. Paladin Trinket Sacks. So we use Shadow Meld and Rake Stun and got a half clone, and we force Trinket Sack from the Paladin. Mage and Feral both do not have access to their interrupts here. I cast a Cyclone on the Feral, on the sack. He trinkets that. So right here, just using Shadow Meld, Rake Stun, and Paladin into a half clone, we got Trinket Sack. We swapped the clone to the Feral on the sack, and we got the Feral's Trinket. So that's going to help us win the game much quicker. And yeah, that's just a very basic example of how you can use stuns and cyclones to aid your team offensively. Okay, so in this clip, we have the same composition on the same map. I started the clip in a full cyclone, and in this clip, you'll see how just stuns can be utilized, as well as maybe tanking a counterspell, how to tank a counterspell. But yeah, let's jump into the game. My Shadow Priest MD is my clone. Great. We get the full sheep on the Paladin. I use my Shadow Meld, Prowl, Rake Stun on the Mage, run over to the Feral, stun the Feral, right? This is that classic God Comp triple CC. We have a stun on the kill target, a sheep on the healer, and some sort of other CC on the third target. Feral trinkets the bash. So right off the bat, we've used stun on the kill target, stun on the second DPS, and for it, we have gotten big pressure on the Mage, and we've gotten the Feral's trinket. So right here, I tank the CS. Both my teammates are full HP. The Paladin's in a sheep. The Mage is 44% HP. The Feral's healing. You know, this is totally a perfect time to tank the CS. You know what I mean? Like, my team is not in trouble. This is a great time to just sit there, cast the clone, tank the CS. You know, even if they start doing damage, I still have access to Adaptive Swarm. My Mage has a ton of different ways to live. You know, it's all gonna be fine. We get the triple DR sheep, I get DB'd, and my priest lands the full fear. This, again, me using my bash on the Feral means that the Feral doesn't have trinket for this fear. The Feral and the Paladin are both stuck in this full fear, as is the Mage, and, you know, we're just continuing that CC chain, but we don't have anything for the Paladin outside of this. You know, my Mage can maybe sheep the Feral, which I believe he does, but we don't have any DR for the Paladin, so I go into cat form. You know, seeing as I don't have bash or Shadow Meld, I go into cat form, I'm going to build those combo points, and I'm going to stun the Paladin off of this fear. I get rooted, I cancel form, I go cat form again, get combo points, got 4 combo points, and I full stun the Pally. The Mage hits 12% HP, I believe, and ice blocks. So yeah, this was a good example of using stun on the kill target, stun on the Feral, and then stun on the healer. All 3 people in the arena, the kill target, the healer, and the second DPS. Stuns and cyclones both can be utilized in these ways, and it's extremely flexible. Hopefully this clip showed you one way in which you can use stuns to get pressure for your team. Okay, so for this clip, we have the same matchup, Feral Mage Holy Paladin versus God Comp. And in this clip, you're going to see how you can use stuns and cyclones to aid your team offensively, and also how you can turn a potential mistake into something that gives your team an advantage. So let's jump into it. So right off the bat here, the other team gets a sheep on my Shadow Priest and a bash on my Mage. I put Cenarian Ward up on my Mage. I know the damage is coming in. I Ironbark my Mage, dispel my Shadow Priest from that sheep. He Shadow Ward Deaths the next sheep, which is really, really good. This is something that is very good to do as God Comp when you're fighting a Mage. Use your Dispel and Shadow Ward Death to keep your Shadow Priest out of sheeps. So I Ironbark my Mage at very high HP, and as you can see, they did a ton of damage. So we're trying to heal through the damage. We Swift Mend using our Verdant Infusion Legendary to extend the duration on that Cenarian Ward. Very, very, very important. And right here, we actually tank this sheep. we get full polymorph. This is a mistake. As a druid in arena, you never want to get sheeped off of nothing. You can bear form, cat form, travel form. You can always shift polymorph. You should never get sheeped off of nothing. And in this game, I got sheeped off of nothing. But thankfully, we have the Ring of Frost on the Holy Paladin. The Feral Druid is CS'd, and we're attacking the mage. And the mage gets behind the pillar, and we notice that the feral is still out in the open. This is another key part of playing God Comp. Anytime that there is the person you're attacking is running away, say a Windwalker Monk ports away, an Affliction Lock ports away, a Warrior leaps away, mage blinks away. As soon as they get around the pillar and you can't hit them anymore, keep doing damage. So here we swap to the feral, and I'm in this full sheep. We have a full Ring of Frost in the Paladin. So I dropped combat. After 6 seconds in a sheep, unless you get purged or something hits you that doesn't do damage but puts you in combat, you're going to fall out of combat after the first 6 seconds of that polymorph. So I fall out of combat here, and I notice that the Paladin is on this side of the pillar, right here on this Ring of Frost, and the Feral is on this side of the pillar here. So I get a re-stealth, I stun the Feral, I go over, and then I stun the Paladin. We have no sheep DR for the Paladin, but we do have clone DR. So we get the full clone on the Paladin, and the Feral and the Mage are both super, super low. So that's, we got sheeped out of form. That was a mistake. But, we took that time in the sheep to think about the positioning of everybody and pay attention to what was going on. Got the re-stealth as soon as the sheep was over. Stun the Feral, stun the Pally out of line of each other. Mage actually did not have counterspell available yet, so he could not blink CS even if he did have a blink. And we got the full Cyclone. So far, we've used stun on 2 people in the arena. I get the Recyclone on the Paladin, and we get a silence on the Feral on his heals, which is super, super great. And so right here, the mage uses Counterspell on my Shadow Priest, and I realize we don't have Clone DR, we don't have Sheep DR, we don't have Stun DR for the Paladin, right? The silence on the Feral is ending. The mage is super low. So I'm swapping this clone to the Feral Druid. He has no trinket. So there's 7 seconds left on Sheep DR in this Paladin. A 6-second clone on the Feral freezes his HP at 20%. And by the time the clone is over, the Paladin is off Sheep DR again. So we swap the clone to the Feral, and the Mage Ice blocks at 6%. So right off the bat, the Pally wings. He is just trying to. He's got 3 seconds until he's off Sheep DR. You know what I mean? He's got 2 globals to top his freaking team. So that's not going to happen. We get the Recyclone on the Feral too. My Mage is casting the Sheep, lands the Sheep on the Paladin. And here the game ends pretty soon here. I get DB'd, my Shadow Priest stuns, the Paladin trinkets. I'm getting ready to stun his trinket, and my Mage is also sheeping his trinket. So I stun, and my Mage sheeps at the same time on the Paladin. We overlapped, but we were both just thinking about the same thing. The Feral is lining over here. Paladin bubbles, but he's not able to get there in time. My Mage blinks over, kills the Feral Druid, and that's GG. Okay, so in this clip, we have a very similar matchup. It's still Holy Paladin Fire Mage, but it's a Windwalker Monk instead of a Feral Druid. And here you're going to see a focus on Stun and Cyclone, how that can be used once again on all 3 members of the enemy team. And you're also going to see a focus on the Holy Paladin Fire Mage into Frost Mage Druid, how that matchup kind of works out. Being that the Holy Paladin Fire Mage are going to be spending a lot of time on the pillar, trying to avoid the polymorphs and the cyclones. It's the best way for them to play. And when you push onto that pillar, they're going to have access to abilities like Hammer of Justice, Blinding Light, Dragon's Breath, ways of CCing you once you push on top of them. And you're also going to see how Shadow Meld can be used. For those of you who don't know, Shadow Meld is a Night Elf racial. It can be used if you use it at the exact same time as a stun or some sort of crowd control hits you, it will actually immune and nullify that crowd control. So say a Paladin presses Hammer of Justice on you. If you press Shadow Meld at the exact same time as he presses the Hammer of Justice, you will immune the Hammer of Justice and it will not affect you. So you'll see that used in this game. But yeah, once again, stuns, cyclones, Holy Paladin Fire Mage into Mage Druid, and Shadow Meld. So let's jump into the clip. So here, just right off the bat, this is going to happen sometimes. I've actually fallen out of combat while I'm trying to cast Clone on this Windwalker Monk. I'm just going to rewind the clip really fast. I'm casting Clone on this Windwalker Monk, and he's been ranging me over and over again. And as you can see by my prowl icon lighting up, I've fallen out of combat. This is going to happen sometimes when they don't realize that you're going to fall out of combat if they keep ranging your Clone. So here I get out of combat. I stun the Monk into Cyclone. And so already, my Mage and Shadow Priest are right over there, running on top of the Holy Paladin Fire Mage, stacked up on top of them. And I've cloned the Monk, so he's separated from his team. So it's already 2 people versus 3 people, right? Me, my 2 DPS, versus the Mage and the Paladin. So right here, I push in, I bash the Paladin, and what is going to happen right here, right? My Shadow Priest, my Mage, me, we're all stacked up on this pillar versus Holy Paladin Fire Mage. We got a stun on the Pally, we got nothing on the Mage. He's going to press Dragon's Breath right now. He's going to DB all 3 of us. And as you can see on my bar, I've already pressed Shadow Meld right away. this Shadow Meld is going to immune the Dragon's Breath if the mage presses, and I'm going to stun the mage, preventing him from using Counterspell. You can see on my Omnibar here, he has access to Counterspell. He DBs, we Shadow Meld immune the DB with the bash already on the Paladin and the clone on the Monk, allowing our mage to cast a sheep, get the full sheep on the Paladin. So right here, we've CC'd all 3 members of the enemy team with Rake, Stun, Bash, and Cyclone. We stun clone the Monk, we ran in, we stun the Pally, we avoid the DB and stun the mage, preventing him from counterspelling the sheep that our mage is casting, and, you know, obviously getting a go for our team. The Paladin trinket stacks, and right here I cast the clone on the mage. Even if I were to get CS'd here, which I totally could have, he has access to it. You know, he has access to CS. It's not the biggest deal. We have Sheep DR for the Monk. My mage is kicked, but he has 2 hots. He's got plenty of ways of living. For sure, he's going to be fine. But thankfully, we get the Cyclone. And this is an example of what a low Cyclone can look like. This just extends the go just a little bit. It's going to keep the Pally on his toes. You know, the mage is going to be low HP for just a little bit longer. You know, he's got the sack up, but he's not going to get as much value from the sack because it's not going to last as long. And it just extends that go just a little tiny bit. But yeah, let's watch this clip one more time just to go through what happened in the game. And once again, have a focus on stun, Cyclone, and Shadow Meld. So we start here with the Prowl, Rake, Stun, Clone on the Monk. So that's 1 person CC'd. We run in. Bash the Paladin, that's 2 people CC'd. He's going to DB. We meld the DB. Go in stealth, stun the mage, preventing him from counterspelling. And we get the full sheep. So yeah, I mean, you as a druid, you have so much power in the arena. Like, you have so many tools at your fingertips. It's just about how you use them, you know? It's just about how you use them. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this clip, and let's move on to the next one. So for druids, third form of major utility, we have roots. Here I'll discuss the utility of both entangling roots and mass entanglement, which is essentially just an enhanced version of entangling roots. Roots are a very classic druid ability that prevents the target from moving, but breaks on damage. Entangling roots also does not put you in combat, so it works extremely well with Feral Affinity. It also works well with Deep Roots, the Honor Talent, if you're playing 2v2 with either an Affliction Warlock or a Shadow Priest or even a Warrior. Works well into Windwalker Monks because of his images and a few other miscellaneous situations. Roots can be used to generally support your team, especially when fighting melee. One root can give your teammate enough time to kite or get away, or even keep an enemy caster still to give your melee teammate a time to close that gap. Let's go through some clips showing how roots can be utilized to aid you and your team. Okay, so here we have a game of Restoration Druid, Affliction Warlock versus Arms Warrior, Holy Paladin. This is before 9.0.5, before a lot of those Druid buffs came in. And so here we're going to see roots used in a way that brings us a lot of advantage in combination with Feral Affinity. So let's jump into the game. The Paladin dispels UA here, so this is a good time for me to throw a root out, but he's on DR for 4 seconds. So we just cast the Regrowth on ourselves. Warrior stuns our Warlock, and we root the Warrior. The Paladin right here dispels the root again. So a lot of these roots are gonna, my Warlock had just pressed Demonic Portal, so a lot of these roots are going to prevent the Warrior from being able to keep up with the Warlock. So the Paladin dispels the root again. Very questionable dispel, so we get the full stun on him. My Warlock lands the UA and the Phantom Singularity at the same time, and we end up getting the Paladin's Trinket Wall. And so this was very good. This is an example of how you can use roots constantly every game. You can always cast a root on the Warrior, and it can get you Trinket and BM and Wall from the healer sometimes. So yeah, there's plenty of different situations where roots can come in handy. But yeah, let's look at the next clip. So here, as you can see, we have the same matchup. It's Affliction Warlock, Restoration Druid into a different Holy Paladin Arms Warrior. And here we're going to see how you can utilize your roots in combination with your Warlock CC and your Warlock's abilities, as well as in combination with a few of your other forms of utilities. So let's jump into the game here. Right away, we're trying to peel the Warrior off of our Warlock. He's in battle stance. He has the Mastery proc up from his Kyrian, and my Warlock is just trying to get away. We stun him very short, but into a Mortal Coil, into a half root. Warrior misses the Reflect on the root. We soak the Reflect and put our dots up on the Warrior with the Adaptive Swarm. So now we have, Rake has one more tick left, but Moonfire, Sunfire, Adaptive Swarm, just a little bit of damage, extra damage ticking on this Warrior. He's been forced to go into defensive stance, and we, with the half stun into the Mortal Coil, into the half root, we prevented this Warrior from touching our Warlock, giving us time to, you know, recover him and put us in the advantage. So you'll see here what happens. I go ahead and put Thorns up on my Warlock on this as soon as the Warrior presses Sharpened Blade. That's very important important time for him to use a lot of his damage as much as he can. So I press Thorns on my Warlock. He's at 86% HP. We have some damage rolling on the Warrior here. So this Thorns kind of just secures our advantage in this situation. The Warrior hits 15% HP, 10% HP, and he needs to run away. So he intervenes back to his Paladin. Our Warlock is completely fine, totally recovered. We leap in. A lot of situations like this, you don't want to let the other team get away. And as a Druid, you oftentimes have access to a multitude of different tools in order to prevent them from getting away. Here, I was able to sit on my globals and not put myself in combat because I had Thorns on my Warlock with full healing over time effects rolling on him. So I was able to fall out of combat, leap in, stun the Warrior, prevent him from getting out of line of sight. Neither one of them has a trinket. They're both low HP. And so we're just kind of trying to put on the pressure as much as we can. We trinket the Hammer of Justice offensively. As you can see, the game's been going on for 5 minutes and it's 2v2. So it's, there's some dampening. The Pally's almost noon. And I know that this is a crucial point for us. We mass entangled the Warrior and the Paladin together. And we're just swiping from a little bit out of range. And the Paladin uses Bubble Sack, as well as the Warrior using Rallying Cry. The pressure was just built up, built up over time. And as you can see here, using Roots eventually forced us Bubble Sack. Roots can be extremely valuable to your team. You can use them creatively. Even a half root can be totally worth it. A 4-second root can totally change the pace of a game. But yeah, just keeping an eye out for when these roots can be used is definitely very important for Druid gameplay. Okay, so right here we have kind of a rare situation. This does not happen very often, and there were definitely some moments of luck in this game. But right here, as you can see, my Warlock has died. I'm at 70% HP in a Hodge, and the Warrior and the Paladin are both 35% HP, and the Paladin is So I have Thorns, I have Battlemaster, I have Mass Entanglement, I have Vortex, I have Fleshcraft. I have things at my disposal to try and still win this game. So I decided to go ahead and go for the win. So I start attacking the Paladin, and I get, or the Warrior rather, I get my bleeds up on the Pally, and I immediately mass root both the Paladin and the Warrior together, and I use my BM, get hot up on myself in line of sight. As you can see here, the Paladin just didn't have enough mana to use Blessing of Freedom. He uses it now. And so I'm getting bleeds back up. I get Stormbolted half, and I put Thorns on myself as my BM is falling, and I'm just risking it going for damage. But again, here you can see, okay, so he misses his Kyrian Spear here. If he landed this Kyrian Spear, I 100% would have lost this 1v2 for sure. As you can see here, I dip super low. He leaps at me, and I try to leap his leap, and I get to 7%. I get the Moonfire on the Warrior as I run away, and I'm just trying to get hot spec on myself. But the Paladin is just He can't, he can't keep either one of them alive. My bleeds are still ticking on the Pally. I get a re-stealth, stun the Pally, get some bleeds up, and I mass root them together again. And this mass root really is the one that won me the game because I'm able to get behind the pillar, top off, and in a second here I come out and I stun the Warrior, and I end up killing the Warrior, but we don't need to watch the rest of the clip. It actually took a while. But yeah, I mean, as you can see here, like even in this super random situation where you find yourself in a 1v2 and the other healer is playing mass root was kind of the thing that allowed me to stay alive. Being able to root the Paladin and the Warrior together and get around the pillar in line of sight was extremely useful in this situation. So, every once in a while you will find yourself in these types of situations, but especially in other situations. I mean, even if my Warlock was alive, both of those roots would have been extremely effective in, immobilizing the enemy team, making them stay where I want them, and allowing me to go wherever I want and do whatever I want to do. So yeah, I mean, roots can be super useful. They can be utilized in many different ways, mass entanglement and entangling roots. But yeah, hopefully these few clips kind of gave you an idea of how you can use them, and you can go out into your own arenas and come up with new ways. And just keep in mind that you have that tool available to you, and try to use it as often and as efficiently as you can without sacrificing other more important things. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say for roots. So let's move on to the next forms of utilities for Druid. Okay, so for Druid's fourth form of major utility, we have Ursol's Vortex. I personally absolutely love this ability. Vortex has a multitude of ways it can be used in Arena. The first usage of Vortex that I'll discuss is that it can be used preemptively to counteract the use of a mobility spell by an enemy player. For example, we have Monk Port, Flying Serpent Kick, Roll, Warlock Portal, Warrior Charge, Warrior Leap, Hunter Disengage, Rogue Shadow Step, Mage Blink, Druid Wild Charge, Paladin Divine Steed, if they have no freedom up, Venthyr Door of Shadows, Nightface Soul Shape, or even Demon Hunter Fell Rush. And the reason I mentioned freedom for Divine Steed is because if they just have Divine Steed up and no freedom,
you will basically negate the entire duration of the Divine Steed. But if they have freedom up, they will, proc the Ursol's Vortex and then still get some, some usage out of the spell. But for all those other ones I just listed, it would completely negate the effect. There is a massive amount of mobility in the game, and Ursol's Vortex is an extremely underrated ability for this reason. The second and less immediately impactful, yet more common usage of Vortex is just to briefly control the position of an enemy player, either on a pillar or in the open field, to gain a short-term advantage over them for yourself or for your team. This could be placing the Vortex on, an arms warrior as you are kiting him around a pillar, giving yourself enough time to potentially get a re-stealth or escape in some way. It could also look something like throwing a Vortex down on 2 melee, training your Warlock teammate, and allowing him to briefly get distance with the help of his Corruption Slow. Just basically using Vortex to briefly control or shift the positioning of an enemy player or players, but just for a moment. The third use of Ursol's Vortex is a little bit more niche, but still highly effective if used well. This usage really only comes into play when playing with 2 casters and the enemy team is hiding, running around a pillar. Vortex works extremely well with AoE abilities like Frozen Orb, Blizzard, Shadow Fury, Rain of Fire, etc. You can throw a Vortex down on a team that is hiding behind a pillar at the same time as your 2 casters harass them with AoE spells and instant damage, keeping the pressure on them for a bit longer. It works especially well with Shadow Fury because it instantly applies a slow as soon as you set it down, which is an often overlooked mechanic of Ursol's Vortex. It's an instant cast ability, and as soon as you put it on the ground, it slows everybody. It applies a slow to anybody inside of it. You can put it down as your Warlock is casting the Shadow Fury, and it will slow everybody in that radius and make it more likely to land the stun on multiple enemies. Outside of these 3 usages of Vortex, there are plenty of random situations where a Vortex can come in handy. It can be used to counteract Intervene. Intervene is a 25-yard range ability, but stops benefiting the target that the warrior pressed it on when they are further than 10 yards away. So if a warrior is 25 yards away from his healer and he intervenes him, he will get that intervene. But if the warrior exits 10 yards from the healer, that intervene will no longer be affecting the healer. So if you Vortex a warrior who is more than 10 yards away from their teammate when they press the intervene, it will completely cancel and negate the ability altogether. It can also be used to help your mage land a sheep when a priest doesn't have Shadow Ward Death, or a shaman doesn't have shear or ground but is using a pillar to LOS your mage. You can drop the Vortex and keep him in one spot for a second if your mage doesn't have a blink for 2 seconds. You know what I mean? Vortex also doesn't put you in combat when you press it, so it can be used extremely efficiently with Feral Affinity to give you time to get a re-stealth. But yeah, that's enough talking. Let's get into some gameplay. Let's get into some clips. Okay, so right here we have a game of Restoration Druid, Shadow Priest, Frost Mage versus Ret Paladin, Arms Warrior, Holy Priest. Here we're going to focus mostly on the usage of Ursol's Vortex, but also the usage of Clone and playing together as a team, playing God Comp. So let's jump into the clip and see what happens. We're in the Hammer of Justice. The Holy Priest is casting Mind Games. My Shadow Priest is casting Shadowman on my Mage, but he has Sharpened Blade. He's 67% HP. So right off the bat, we CS Mind Games. My Mage CS is Mind Games. My Shadow Priest MDs my Hammer of Justice right as the Sharpened Blade is falling, and I land the NS, topping him. He gets immediately brought down to 68% HP. We Sendward him, Ironbark him. We get the full sheep on the Holy Priest, and I know it's time for me to CC the Ret. The Warrior has Reflect up, but what I should have probably done is try to CC the Warrior first. My Mage tries to land the Ring of Frost on the Warrior, but just mainly dropping it around the Ret. And as you can see here, the Warrior intervenes his Priest, preventing the resheep from my Mage and kind of stopping our go. So I probably should have casted the Clone on the Warrior. We left one person out of the CC chain, and our go got kind of ruined. So we'll see here what happens. My team does a bunch of damage, and I'm already ready to cast the low Clone on the Ret. This is an important thing to know. When I started this clip, I was in a Hammer of Justice. The Warrior doesn't have fear. They could chastise fear me. The Holy Priest could chastise fear me, but they don't really have that many things to punish my offensive positioning. So I'm aware of the fact that I can be here. I'm not very close to the Warrior. I'm not that close to the Priest, but I am close to the Ret, and that's who we're killing. So I land this low Clone on the Ret, freezing his HP at 53%. So that just touches on a little bit of, positioning as a Druid, staying aware of that, knowing when you can be in and when you need to be far away. In this case, we landed the low Clone. My Shadow Priest has Stun, Silence, Fear, but he's positioned very far away from the enemy Holy Priest. My Shadow Priest is here. The enemy Holy Priest is here. I know he's not really going to be able to get there quickly to land that, so this low Clone is good. I don't have Bash for 10 seconds. I don't have Shadow Meld. I used that to stun the Ret in the first place. But what do I have? I have Vortex. I have a low Clone on the Ret. The warrior's far away, and the Holy Priest is somewhat in a vulnerable position to me. He's very safe. To where my DPS are. My DPS aren't very much threat to CCing him, but to me, he's definitely in somewhat of a vulnerable position. So I dropped the Vortex on the Holy Priest here through the pillar. This is something important to know about Vortex. It does work through pillars, and it works through Z-axis. Like you can suck somebody down on dollar end sewers. If they're in the middle of the upper platform, you can actually put the Vortex downstairs, and if they move away on the top platform, it will pull them through the floor down to the bottom level. And it also works through pillars here. So not only slowing him, but also if he went farther away from me, it would pull him back towards me and allow me to get the Cyclone. So we have the full Cyclone on the Ret, the Warrior's far away, and we have the Vortex on the Priest. The Priest chastises me, uses Feather, and he's running at me for fear. So what would have happened here if I didn't drop the Vortex is that he would have feathered and come at me for the fear. And you might ask yourself, well, he got silenced, so he wouldn't get the fear. But shortly after, the Ret comes out and sanks the silence. So if I didn't drop the Vortex, the Priest would have been on top of me when he got sanked, and I would have gotten feared 100%. I don't have Fleshcraft for 5 seconds, so I would have gotten feared if it were not for placing this Vortex preemptively. And we honestly, consciously, the reason we placed it was to try to swap the clone to the Priest. We had the low clone, he's 50% HP. If we swap the clone to the Priest, my team can do damage and we can maybe land a kill. But it ended up helping me out defensively as well because I got chastised and he was still stuck in the Vortex. So Vortex can be used in a multitude of ways and come in handy in a bunch of different situations. And as you'll see here, him still being stuck in this Vortex, he's not able to run away from me. He's still stuck, slowed in my line of sight. I land the full Cyclone and my team actually swaps onto the Warrior because the Ret gets Guardian Spirited. Warrior parries, but it's my Priest Mind Games Void Torrent, and I believe he Shadow Word Deaths, and the Warrior actually goes down. The Priest Trinket, but the Warrior dies through parry, which is pretty crazy. We did a lot of damage to him there. But yeah, I mean, that swap was pretty good. The low clone on the Ret, hopefully there was a learning moment there, and then using Vortex to keep the Priest where I wanted him, and being aware of my positioning overall. I mean, I think this clip had a lot of things to learn from. Hopefully you guys thought so as well. But yeah, let's hop into the next one. Okay, so here we have a game of Restoration Druid, Shadow Priest, Frost Mage, once again, versus Ret Paladin, Arms Warrior, once again, but this time with a Holy Paladin instead of a Holy Priest, different team. And here we're going to focus on, cross CCS God Comp, making the most of the stuns that you have available and the overall positioning, as well as, once again, Vortex. There's a key moment here where we use Vortex that is important to think about and recognize. But yeah, let's jump into the game. So right off the bat here, we start with the full sheep on the Paladin, right off of DR. Etzarina actually thinks it was on full DR, like he would have immuned her or something. But we get the full stun on the Ret Paladin at the same time. I'm in stealth. I stun the Warrior. Warrior has no trinket. May look like we're attacking Warrior, but we're actually going the Ret Paladin. We cycle on the Warrior full. Once again, this triple God Comp CC. Full sheep on the Pally, Priest stun on the Ret, Druid stun on the Warrior, into Cyclone, Mind Games on the Ret Paladin, so even though he's not CC'd, it doesn't necessarily matter. So we get Trinket Sack from the Holy Paladin for this cross CC that we got. And so we swap the clone to the Ret Paladin. The Ret Paladin's at 63% HP. This low clone is just freezing his health low. The Paladin has Sack on him, reducing the amount of damage he's taking, but he's not able to do any healing with that. The Warrior's low HP as well. The Ret's also not doing damage to anything. He's not able to get his damage rotation going and turn this around after our go. So it's just, for many, many, many reasons, it's great for us. He also cannot sank his Holy Paladin. That is probably the most key thing, as you're about to see. The Paladin Trinket sacked. We clone the Ret Paladin. Now the Ret Paladin can't do anything to help his Holy Paladin because we've only used Sheep DR. We still have Stun and Silence DR for this Paladin. My Priest has Silence. I don't have Meld or Mighty Bash, but I have 3 combo points, So yeah, as you can see here, we get the Silence onto the Holy Paladin while we have the clone on the Ret, and now all 3 of them are dying. The Warrior's 45% HP, the Ret Pally's 63% HP in a Cyclone, and the Holy Paladin's, dipping down sub 50% into a 4 combo point Rake. This was an important moment. I'm going to rewind here in a second because sometimes you need to know that you can hold your global and go for that 3 or 4 point maim. Sometimes it is better to get that 3 or 4 point maim, even though it's a shorter stun, to leave no gap between that stun and another stun or that stun and a silence. And as you'll see here, I did not want to leave a gap between the silence and my stun. So I go cat form. I use dash to get to him. I rake one time and I don't use another global. I just wait and I maim. You know, I could have used one more global and then maimed maybe a half a second after the silence ended, but I didn't want to waste any time and I maimed him. So right here, obviously it looks like I'm about to start cycloning this Holy Paladin. Sack is falling on the ret. The warrior drops War Banner, which tells me, okay, he's looking at me. And then shortly after this, I actually see him start, you know, walking towards me. And if you pay attention to my mouse right here, if you can see my mouse, I'm floating my mouse in this space in between this Holy Paladin and this Warrior. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm thinking I'm going to Vortex this Warrior's charge or Vortex his leap or just somehow prevent him from getting to me and also entrap this Holy Paladin in this Vortex right here to just make it a, you know, a beneficial situation for my Shadow Priest and my Mage. You know, the Warrior and the Paladin are both just stuck over here doing nothing and the Ret Paladin's over there. So here he charge roots me. I drop the Vortex within range of his charge path and suck the Warrior back onto the Holy Paladin. So let's just watch that one more time. But pay attention to where my mouse is. It's going to be right around here. You can see I'm thinking about it and then I drop it. There we go. Got the Vortex on him, preventing the Warrior from stopping our clone. And now we cast another clone on the Holy Paladin and juke out the Warrior's intervene. So this is great for our team. You know, we got the low clone on the Ret after our go. And now we've elongated our pressure with a stun on the Holy Paladin out of the silence, which could not be sanked because of the low clone on the Ret. And now the Warrior is coming to aid the Holy Paladin and getting caught up in this Vortex and is now not doing damage. He's not putting any pressure on our team. He's also not preventing any CC. You know, we don't have any stun DRs available. Me casting these clones, we're not losing any offensive opportunity. You know, he's using his intervene and his intervene reflect, and it's not really gaining them, you know, any sort of defensive advantage. So this is very good for us. So let's see what happens after this. The Warrior runs at us. The Rat Paladin gets on his horse. I'm expecting them to throw the Stormbolt right now. He has access to it. So I press Fleshcraft, and he thinks I'm going to keep running and tries to spear first, and misses his spear and locks me on Fleshcraft. I go Bear Form. We get the Sheep on the Holy Paladin. So, you know, already you can see how fast these things happen. Like we started the go with the triple cross. You see the Sheep on the Holy Paladin, the Priest stun on the Ret, and my stun on the Warrior. And already after a low clone and some side pressure on the Holy Paladin and some CC with Vortex and stuff like that, we're already ready for our next go. We have the full Sheep on the Holy Paladin, and we'll see what happens here. Overgrowth ourselves, getting some hots back up on our Shadow Priest, and we know that we have to get over there in time. We have to get to the Holy Paladin in time to land the full Cyclone. We don't have Stampeding Roar, we don't have Dash, we have Wild Charge. So we're on global from Send Warding our Shadow Priest. As you can see, my timer is about halfway through ticking here, and I'm off global. I Wild Charge to my, or I'm on global rather. I off global Wild Charge to my Mage and land the full Cyclone on the Holy Paladin with no trinket. This is definitely a very key and very common way that you can use Wild Charge as Mage Druid in order to perfectly land these clones and always be there at the right time when you need to be to get the offensive clones. Wild Charge is going to be the #1 way to help you do that. Travel Form Wild Charge is great, but out of form Wild Charge to a teammate, especially to your Mage, who is already obviously in position to land polymorphs, if he's in the right spot and you can get the Wild Charge onto him, that off global mobility is going to constantly allow you to keep up the CC and play well with your Mage. So let's just go over that one more time. Bear Form, Overgrowth ourselves, Rejuve our Priest, Send Ward our Priest, leap to our Mage, land the full clone. You know, very good, very good. And the Ret Paladin actually does go down here. The Holy Paladin did have access to Bubble, but I don't think that they expected the amount of damage that was coming in. Maybe the Ret Paladin thought that he could heal himself through it. He did get healed a couple times. But yeah, we did enough damage. The Holy Paladin used his bubble a little bit late. But yeah, hopefully you guys learned something from this video. I think that this definitely showcased good usage of Vortex, God Comp playing well together, cross CCing, and just general awareness and positioning stuff. Okay, so outside of Cyclone, Stuns, Roots, and Vortex, which in my opinion are the 4 most powerful kinds of CC and utility for a Druid, you also have many other smaller forms of utility to aid your team. Thorns can offer offensive pressure or deter an enemy melee from attacking your teammate, as you've seen in a few of the clips we've gone over so far. Disentanglement can allow your Mage, Shadow Priest, Warlock, Ellie Shaman, etc. To kite around the map, especially when fighting a Death Knight spamming Chains of Ice or a Warlock spamming Corruption Slow.
Hibernate can catch other druids off guard if you get lucky, but it can also force an enemy druid to leave their shapeshift form during a stun, making them vulnerable to polymorph. It can also be used to crowd control a hunter pet, or even Zwen from a Windwalker monk. Soothe is instant cast, does no damage, and also puts the target of the Soothe in combat, and also has a low mana cost. It can be used to soak a warrior's reflect, allowing your teammates to land other more important spells. It can also be used to keep a druid or a rogue in combat who is sitting in a polymorph, or some sort of breakable CC without breaking that polymorph, so that they can't get a re-stealth when the CC ends. Shadow Meld and Fleshcraft are huge assets for you as a druid. Obviously, as Horde, you do not have access to Shadow Meld, but they serve similar purposes. Fleshcraft and Shadow Meld can completely shift the momentum of a game by avoiding an important crowd control on yourself or saving your life if the enemy team decides to attack you. You can Shadow Meld abilities like Chaos Bolt, Greater Pyroblast, Meteor, Frostbolt Flurry, Aim Shot, Explosive Shot, even things like the Hunt from a Nightfade Demon Hunter, just to name a few. Let's go over some of these miscellaneous forms of utility in the Druid Toolkit. Alrighty, so for this clip, we'll see Cyclone used, we'll see Stuns used, we'll see Thorns used, and you're also going to see, I believe it's Shadow Meld utilized here in this clip. So, outside of Cyclone and Stuns, those big major utilities, we're going to see some, something from Thorns and something from Shadow Meld and Fleshcraft here. So let's jump into the clip. We're putting HOTS up, and right now it's God Comp versus Ret Warrior once again. So they're stuck behind the pillar. I feel like this Ret Warrior God Comp matchup is it's favored for God Comp 100%, but the way the matchup goes is it's very stereotypical of what a God Comp double melee should look like. You know what I mean? It's just, I feel like there's a lot to learn from matchups like this for Druid especially. So I feel like as a Druid, your role is more than in many other matchups, like this Ret Warrior matchup. But yeah, let's jump into the clip. So right away, as soon as the Ret Warrior comes out, they're off the pillar. They're both 60% health already. We're very early on into the game, and we just put Thorns up. We have triple stack Life Bloom, 2 rejuves. Thorns is a perfect first global because you're not gonna need to be healing right now because your mage is topped off with HOTS. And they're already low HP, so in order to commit to what they're doing, they have to hit into Thorns and keep taking damage. So that's what they do. They keep hitting into Thorns, keep taking damage. Warrior gets down to 48% HP. The Ret Paladin either heals himself or gets healed. I believe, yeah. Looks like the Shaman used Aura Mastery to keep him out there. And I can see this Warrior looking at me. You can literally see him looking at me and walking towards me, right? It's very obvious that this guy is trying to Stormbolt me. And if you notice right here, there's actually a learning moment for me. My Cenarian Ward is about to fall off and I have Swift Bend available. I should 100% have just Swift Bended that Sen Ward and continued my healing. Even though the Ret's wings are falling and I have Thorns up, I should have just Swift Bended and extended it because I don't have access to it for 23 seconds. But regardless of that, the Warrior's running at me. We know he's about to Stormbolt. So we cast the Regrowth. He throws the Stormbolt. So you can see the animation goes off. The Omnibar, indicator for Stormbolt goes off. I press Shadow Meld. Stormbolt is flying in the air, and it immunes. So that is an example of Shadow Melding Stormbolt. Stormbolt is one of the easiest abilities to do this with because of the fact that it has such a long travel time. But let's just go ahead and watch that in real time. Shadow Meld can be used very efficiently versus Warriors. Right here. Throws a Stormbolt, Meld, immuned it. Got a re-stealth, and we dispel our Mage's Hodge, and they used Wings, which is a 2-minute cooldown. The Warrior used his On Use, Sharpened Blade. This is Sky Fury, Blood Fury from the Warrior, and Avatar. So this is pretty much all of their offensive cooldowns. And so far, defensively, all we've traded is Ironbark. So we Thorns right when they came in, and we Simward Adaptive Swarm, which I should have extended. I would have more healing available on my mage, and we Ironbark our mage at full HP. So let's see what happens from here. The Sharpened Blade comes out. We Swift Bend early, keeping our mage topped off, get that Swift Bend on cooldown. Now our Swift Bend and our Cenarian Ward are on relatively similar cooldowns, so we're going to be able to send Ward Swift Bend smoothly next time, 15 seconds later into the game. But they connect with Kyrian Spear on my mage. The Warrior uses Reflect. The Ret's stuck in a root. The Warrior has Blade Storm up. The Warrior is pumping, so I decided to go ahead and use my Initial Swiftness. You can see here that I hold my global I hold my Soul of the Forest for a while.
See, I wait a second, wait a couple seconds, wait a couple seconds, start casting regrowth. He dips low, and then I NS, right? This is something that's really important to do when you're fighting. Like in the meta, the way the meta is right now, the reason that druids struggle so much into some comps, at least in my opinion, is because of the speed and unpredictability of some of these classes' damage. Warrior, unlike, let's say, Disc Priest has access to Power Ward Radiance. That's the type of ability where, you know, damage could come in at any speed, and you have one global that you can use to top off your team. That makes it very, you know, it takes the stress out of the healing when you're fighting something that's super, super bursty. But for Druid, you have an answer to that, and it's Nature's Swiftness or Swiftmend. Swiftmend oftentimes is not, you know, sufficient, and oftentimes you don't even have a rejuve up. So Nature's Swiftness is your primary tool for dealing with situations like that. And so that's why sometimes I will hold on to my Soul of the Forest. If my mage is stable and the DPS have big cooldowns up, I will hold on to my Soul of the Forest if I think more damage is going to come in, so that I can go ahead and quickly top him off after that high damage hits, in order to just reduce the anxiety for the whole team. Like it makes the game go smoother defensively. It just like you tell your teammate, I have an S, I have an S, I have an S. You know, I'm holding this global. You're fine. Don't worry. I got your HP. You think about other things. And so that's what happens here. Okay, so we Thorns, meld the Stormbolt, Ironbark on the wings and the Avatar. Hold our global for a little bit, especially because it's sharpen, and then we top them off. And yeah, so they're starting to connect, and Ironbark is over. So I'm a little bit concerned here. My mage doesn't have a blink for 15 seconds. My priest has some ways of helping us out. My priest can also heal my mage. But let's see how I deal with this situation here, because, you know, they still have Avatar and Wings up, and now they're going to have uptime, and we don't have Ironbark, Sin Ward, Swiftmend, Overgrowth, and as we've used kind of everything. So my mage uses his Triune Ward, which is extremely powerful. That's a huge reason why he lived here, is because he had those shields available. We get the Adaptive Swarm rolling, the Regrowth, the Life Bloom, and the Rejuvenation. And then we come in here and we're cloning the Ret on the rest of his wings. So the Shaman is behind the pillar. The Warrior doesn't have Intervener, Flick doesn't have Stormbolt, Paladin doesn't have Hodge. They have no way of stopping this Cyclone. And the Ret also has no Trinket. So instead of you know, because of the fact that I didn't have you know, Overgrowth or any big healing, I just Cyclone the Ret on the rest of his cooldowns. Super stabilize our team. We get the Swiftmend. We don't use the Sen Ward. Just getting Hots back up. My Shadow Priest stuns the Warrior. We drop the Vortex on the Warrior and the Ret Pally. And I think the clip cuts off here. But we get the stun on the Ret Pally, and I think the Warrior uses charge. But yeah. So yeah, I mean, let's watch this clip again in real time. But I think here you can see, you know, Thorns, Shadow Meld utilized effectively, and also just a focus on the healing rotation. And I'm going to start getting into that as we get into these clips further into these games. I think that we're gonna touch on some specifics as to how the Druid healing rotation works, with real game examples, of course, and just kind of really dive into that side of Druid. So yeah, we'll just let this clip play out, and then we'll hop into the next game. There's the Ironbark, the Reflect. There's the Nature's Swiftness. Topping off our mage, getting the Hots up. Triune Ward comes in pretty handy here. Triune Ward. Ret has 11 seconds left on Wings. Is it 9, 8? Clone the Wings. And then we stun the Ret here in a second. Use this clone to get a re-stealth. We Vortex. Vortex does not put us in combat when we drop the Vortex on the Ret and the Warrior there. And yeah, there we are. Okay, so for this clip, as far as other utility for Druids, we're going to see, I believe, Fleshcraft and maybe some other things. But yeah, it's the same matchup, but different people. So let's jump into this. We get the Alter Time. We have the Simward up on our mage. He's got full Hots, and we Fleshcraft the Stormbolt once again. So you can see, again, this Warrior is running towards me, making it very, very, very obvious that he's about to Stormbolt me. And as a Druid, you have two major tools to deal with that. So we successfully get the Fleshcraft on the Stormbolt right there. Dispel the Hodge, and Pally uses Wings. So now we're able to heal. There's a Sharpened Blade, and there we hold our NS once again. So you can see here, it's a very, these kinds of things happen all the time. It kind of becomes muscle memory when you fight, you know, Arms Warrior melee cleave, you know, you pay attention to the sharpen, you pay attention to their damage, you kind of get a feel for the rhythm of their damage, and you'll be able to properly react in all these different situations. So there's the Sharpened Blade. We're holding our NS, holding our NS, holding our NS. We don't want to overheal with it. He dips down to 12% HP right there. If you watch, I get a resub here, so it actually covers up his frame, but watch, it dips down to 12%, I believe. I want to right there. It was like 14%, and my hots are ticking, so he gets brought right back up to 16. But he gets low, and then we bring him back up to 78 with the NS. Through Sharpened Blade, by the way. NS is super, super powerful, definitely. And once again, you know, you saw how the Fleshcraft helped us out. It's huge. Here we get the Innervate up, we have Wild Growth rolling, and we cast the 1 tick of the Tranquility just to get as much healing as we possibly can on our mage. And I believe we Thorns here as well. So once again, all these different kinds of the Druid's toolkit coming together, working together to accomplish some sort of goal. Here our goal is to stabilize our mage, trade defensive cooldowns properly, avoid crowd control, and control the positioning of the enemy team. You know, now that the red is stunned in the middle of the map, we have Thorns up on our mage, he's high HP, he's got full hots, and the warrior is just stuck out here. The shaman's already 13% mana, from healing a bunch and purging. So now the warrior intervenes back to his ret, and he's just stuck in the middle of the map, you know? The warrior ends up going over and attacking my Shadow Priest, but yeah, I mean, I think you guys get the gist here, how to use Fleshcraft, how to use things like that. But yeah, let's hop into the next clip. Alrighty, so once again, we have the Ret Warrior, this time with the Holy Priest. And here we're going to see how you can utilize Soothe. Soothing the Warrior's Reflect is the most efficient way to do it. So here we get the full sheep on the Holy Priest, and we push in, we use our Wild Charge to get into position here. As you'll see right here, we get the low clone on the Ret, full sheep on the Holy Priest. We push in, we get the clone on the Warrior, no reflect for 2 seconds, but he did intervene as Priest. If you look at my focus frame right here, there is the reflect. So if you watch my True GCD, we press Soothe, soothing the reflect off, removes the reflect, soaks it. We get the full clone on the Priest, no trinket, and the Ret goes down. So yeah, this is a very short clip, very short game, but just an example and proof of the fact that you can use Soothe to soak the reflect. It's easier than Moonfire for me because I use a lot of focus macros, and it costs less mana. So throughout the game, it's a better option. Soothe the reflect, swap the clone over to the Priest, kill the Ret. Obviously you could use Moonfire. Moonfire just costs a tiny bit more mana, but I think that Soothe is it's something to get in the practice of using. It can come in super handy when a rogue is in a sheep and you don't want them to get a re-stealth. I went over this earlier in the video, but I'll just go over it one more time quickly. Soothe puts the target in combat but doesn't break any breakable CC. So if a rogue is out of combat in a polymorph and gets dispelled, he can just re-stealth right off of it. But that's not necessarily true if 5 seconds, 4 seconds into the polymorph, you cast a Soothe on the rogue. The same is true for Feral Druids, Boomkins, Resto Druids, anything that can stealth. But yeah, let's move on to the next game. So here we're going to go over Shadow Meld and also just some general Druid thinking and some healer stuff. So right off the bat, we can see that I have 2 Rejuves, Life Plume, Regrowth, Wild Growth, Adaptive Swarm, Send Ward, all activated on my Shadow Priest. He is super safe. He's high HP, and we have the 2 Rejuves activated on our mage. This is just in case if the Ret Warrior decide to swap to my mage on all these when I have all these hots on my Shadow Priest. I'll be prepared. I'll already be 2 globals ahead. I can quickly get the hots up and get rolling on him. And this is something to keep in mind when you're playing a Druid or really any healer. Keeping your team topped off, understanding who's vulnerable, understanding the enemy team, how their damage is coming in, when it's going to come in. Understanding all those things is extremely important, and it's going to make all your games so much smoother. Your team is going to, trust each other more. It's going to feel much more relaxed. All your games are going to go better. Your communication is going to be clearer. Obviously, if you're using Discord, everything is going to be clearer, smoother, better. If your defensive game is figured out, that should be an extremely high priority for you as a healer. And it's going to give you more time to think about what you want to do offensively, and also to predict when those key moments are going to come in. Those key moments where you need to react quickly or use the right thing at the right time. And this is one of those key moments. This is a good example of this. My priest is super safe. We've got the hots on our mage just in case, and you're going to see this holy paladin run around this pillar. And let's see what happens here. So we got the full hots up, Holy Powder runs on the pillar, and we Shadow Meld the Hodge and stun the Pally. Leap away, and so I get Hodged here. My Shadow Priest is going to land the MD. We'll just get through the whole clip, and then I'll go back. There's the MD, and we recover. I think my mage lands a CS here. Get the CS in the Holy Paladin, stun on the Ret. And we soothe the reflect off of the warrior right here. You can see on my Trophy GCD, we cast the clone to get the warrior's reflect out of the way. It may have been on something that my teammates were casting, but regardless, we soothe the reflect off the warrior into the clone on the warrior, and we have a silence on the Holy Paladin, and this red is in big trouble. But real quick, let's just go back to that to the Shadow Meld. There's something that I want to talk about here that's going to be very important if you want to use Shadow Meld yourself. So right here,
you can see the paladin coming at me on his horse, and I move forward to be flush with this box. My character is exactly on the edge of this box. What that does is it basically guarantees when the paladin is going to be able to press Harem of Justice. A lot of times when you see somebody, like when people see somebody shadow meld a CC, they're like, oh my god, like that was so insane. And sometimes it is, you know, sometimes you can shadow meld, you know, something in the open field and it's like just exactly predicting the global of the enemy player. But a lot of times there's like a queue that's going to happen beforehand, or there's a way to use a pillar in order to kind of guarantee the shadow meld. Right here, I know exactly when the Hammer of Justice is going to go off. So all I have to do is time my shadow meld with his movement speed. That's all you have to do. You're not even really predicting an enemy player's, you know, decisions. You just see the horse. It's very obvious that he's going to come in for the Hodge. And as soon as he comes in my line of sight, I press the shadow meld. And that's exactly what happens here. You know, it's, to be honest, it's not very mechanically difficult. And I think that it's something that a lot of players could utilize, you know, a lot more on any Night Elf character. Is just utilizing a pillar makes it much easier to time that shadow meld. And it's something that is huge for Druid. With travel form and the amount of mobility you have, you can move around a pillar so quickly, so easily. And with healing over time, when you have all your hots up and being able to just have the peace of mind of knowing that my teammate is safe and I don't need to use a global on them, it's going to give you time to predict enemy players' movements, pay attention to positioning, and, you know, understand how you need to move around the map and how your enemy team is moving around the map. But yeah, I think that this was a good example of, you know, how to use shadow meld, especially versus a holy paladin. But you could do the same thing versus a lot of different things. But yeah, let's move on to the next thing. Alrighty, so we've gone over a lot of the Druid's utility, you know, from Cyclone to Stun, you know, Root, Soothe, how Thorns can be used, Disentanglement in rare situations, a lot of these different things. We haven't gone over some of the other things like Deep Roots, but I believe those things don't necessarily need a lot of gameplay clips to explain why they're useful. You know, Deep Roots is very good if you're playing with an Affliction Warlock, in 2v2 especially, in 3s it can be really nice, but this guide is definitely going to, like I said earlier, have more of a focus on Mage Druid. But with that said, let's start to get a little bit more into healing over time. As I said at the beginning of this video, utility and healing over time have always been at the heart of what makes a druid a druid. Having a solid healing rotation that you consistently maintain, do not let yourself fall behind on, use at appropriate times in the game, both preemptively and reactively, is a key aspect of performing well in the arena as a druid. Just as with utility, as a druid when it comes to healing, you have a vast toolkit to manage. You have regular hots like Rejuvenation and Life Bloom. You have powerful hots like Cenarian Ward and Soul of the Forest Rejuvenation. You have Adaptive Swarm to amplify all of these. You have Swift Mend for burst healing. Swift Mend is tied to Soul of the Forest, which, you know, like I said, ties into Rejuvenation, but also into other abilities. Regrowth for a casted fast heal. Wild Growth for a casted AoE hot. And you have some short and some long cooldowns like Iron Bark, Nature's Swiftness, Innervate, and Tranquility to rely upon. As a druid, it is important to understand when damage is coming in and respond appropriately. You need to keep your team as high HP as possible so that you are ready when high damage begins. And you need to have powerful hots like Cenarian Ward and Adaptive Swarm rolling before or as high damage comes in. If possible, you need to activate undispellable tools like Cenarian Ward and Iron Bark on your partner before crowd control hits you. This is especially important when fighting mages for that Kleptomania talent. You need to manage your mana usage, stay ahead on your hots, and use your cooldowns effectively. Let's jump into some games so that I can explain how I think the Druid Healing Toolkit can be used to its maximum potential. Alrighty, so let's jump into this healing discussion. So I think Jungle Cleave versus Mage Druid is a great style matchup for talking about preemptive healing. You know, since the CC is trap, you have a very simple timer to pay attention to and try to get your healing up preemptively as often as you can. And we can also talk here about there's a couple times where I avoid the trap and some offensive stuff that happens. But yeah, let's jump into the game. But we're definitely going to be paying mostly attention to the healing in this game. So we start off with Rejuve, Life Bloom, Rejuve on our main kill target. This is who I think is going to get attacked the most in the matchup. Put hots up on them first, 2 Rejuves, 1 Life Bloom, and then we put 2 Rejuves up on our Shadow Priest as well. This is a very standard traditional opener for Restoration Druid. You can pretty much do this every single game. You just want to get maybe even the 3-stack Life Bloom if you can on one guy, and then just keep 2 rejuves on the other guy. I really can't stress this enough. The downfall of Druid in Shadowlands is the fast, unpredictable damage. The best way to counteract that as a Druid to play the best in the current meta is to have your hots up before the high damage happens, and have your hots up on the right people, and have the right hots on the right people. Have the right hots on the right people at the right time. And step number 1 of that is having just 2 rejuves, have a solid foundation already, 2 globals ahead, not having to just constantly find yourself catching up, trying to heal through unpredictable damage. So yeah, this was a normal opener for us. 1 rejuve on myself, just in case. And so right there, I should have talked about this a little bit earlier, but my Shadow Priest used stun on the priest, and is now silencing him. My team is attacking the priest. This is a very good thing to do as God Comp in the jungle. And so I wanted to get this bash on cooldown. And the reason I'm bashing the hunter and CCing the hunter instead of the feral, you may ask yourself, like, why don't you CC the feral? Like, the feral's the one healing. The reason for that is just because I want to avoid potentially, getting stunned first by the feral, potentially getting feared by the priest if there's some sort of gap or something happens. That's unfortunate. The hunter was the closest one to me, was the least risky, and by bashing and then cycloning this hunter, I'm delaying the first trap. I'm delaying the other team's first go, which is very, very, very beneficial for us. Something to be aware of. If you can delay the goes, especially when you're fighting things like hunter or maybe fire mage rogue, delaying their goes is going to really slow down their pressure. It's very important for those types of setup comps to get their setups consistently and on time. So delaying this first one is very, very, very good for us. But we need we need to turn right around and get hots back up on our mage. We're going to get the Sen Ward, the Soul of the Forest Rejuvenation. But unfortunately, I'm not able to get the Adaptive Swarm up, which you will see kind of hurts me here. But just to pause for a second, we get the low Cyclone on the Feral. This is good. The Feral has just used Incarn. He has it up for 20 seconds. The Cyclone just cuts 6 seconds out of that, roughly like 35-40% of the duration. So very, very effective for us. Again, so we've slowed down the hunter. Now we're slowing down the feral. There's the Cenarian Ward. We get the Swift Mend right away on the Sen Ward to get the maximum duration out of it. And then we use our Soul of the Forest on the Rejuvenation on our Mage. Our next global is going to be Adaptive Swarm, but as you'll see, we get Intimidation Stunned. No Adaptive Swarm for us. The reason I don't Trinket here, so my Mage uses BM. And the reason I don't Trinket is because I could Trinket Bark Nature Swiftness, but I see the Door of Shadows being casted on me, and by the time it gets CS'd, he's already 39% HP. He could get bit down to 10. If I bark NS, if it doesn't crit, he only goes up to maybe 55. If he gets bit down to 20, he may block anyways. So I just want to avoid using BM, Trinket, and block and everything. So I hold my Trinket here. I let him ice block, which is totally fine to do. As Mage Druid, letting your Mage block first is not the biggest deal. Maybe it would have been better to hold BM. Maybe I could have just instantly Trinketed and avoided the block, but this is totally fine because it leaves the Druid open to having Trinket for himself if the enemy team decides to attack the Druid, and the Mage has another ice block. So blocking first is totally fine. We keep the hots up on our Mage, and we go for the Shadow Meld stun on the Feral. Just trying to, get some pressure out, get some damage out. We get the Feral's Bark Skin with this stun, and we noob it up here a little bit with this clone on the Feral. We didn't see the fear, so it was just a triple DR clone for no reason. But yeah, we dropped the Vortex. Priest uses Dome. There's the Pet Sack. So we're still getting cooldowns, and that was Dome and Pet Sack, and my Priest has Stun and Silence again, in 5 seconds. So I think leaping in and putting that stun on the Feral, and just, my Priest fearing and just seeing them in general is forcing cooldowns, and that's something that's true. And as God Comp, a lot of the times you can kind of do these fake goes. You just you get a fear, or you get some sort of cross CC on one person, and they'll think that they're in trouble, but you don't have your stuns, so they will use a cooldown preemptively and then won't have it again in 20 seconds when you have your stun. So that's what happened here. We get the Adaptive Swarm up, and we send word right here. So if you look at my Mage's buffs, he has Frost and Fire Barrier still. This is going to take a second to explain, but I will do my best to explain it as simply as possible. I'm going to go over how Cenarian Ward and Verdant Infusion work together and why they work together so well, especially when you're talking about Triune Ward and having a large absorb. The thing about Sen Ward is that it doesn't start ticking until the absorbs are over. If I put Sen Ward on my Mage and he has absorbs up, the Sen Ward will not start ticking. It will, Sen Ward activates when they take damage. it does not count any damage that happens into an absorb. So once the absorbs are gone, then it starts ticking. But that's good for me because my cooldown starts as soon as I put it on my mage in the first place. So that gives me an extra, let's say, 3 seconds, of distance between when my Cenarian Ward procs and when it's up again, or when my first Cenarian Ward ends and when my second one is available. So when you are playing Verdant Infusion and you Swift Mend your Cenarian Ward, if it was a perfect world and you could Swift Mend it right at 8 seconds duration, every Cenarian Ward would be 18 seconds on the first Swift Mend. But oftentimes you can't get it off right away. So let's just say it's 7 seconds when you Swift Mend. So if you Swift Mend a Cenarian Ward with 7 seconds left on it, that would make it a 17-second Sen Ward. Swift Mend comes off cooldown 15 seconds later. You've got 2 seconds left. You Swift Mend it again. That's a 12-second Sen Ward. So that's 29 seconds, right? 17 seconds, 12 seconds. So at the end of that, you have 1 second between your Cenarian Ward that's ending, your first one, and the one that's coming up. But since I pressed the Cenarian Ward on my mage before the barriers were exhausted, that means that my Cenarian Ward is going to be up before my first one is even over. So I have Cenarian Ward on my mage 100% of the time. This is a really important thing to understand when you're playing Mage Druid. It can be extremely beneficial to Cenarian Ward right when your mage uses his shields, because it's just basically going to guarantee you that as long as you get the second Swift Mend is the hardest one. The Swift Mend after this first one is the one that sometimes you can get CC'd on and can be awkward. But if you get it, it means you have a Sen Ward up 100% of the time on your mage, and it's very, very, very easy to do once you understand it. But yeah, so that we've got the full hots up on our mage. And the Hunter's going to come in for a trap here. Okay, so as far as avoiding traps go, I highly suggest you use Omnibar and track this Intimidation stun. So right now the Hunter does not have Intimidation stun available. He has to try to trap off nothing, and I know that. So all I'm thinking about is how I'm going to do this. But actually, real quick, just to go back to healing for 1 second, I get a Clear Casting proc and I cast this Regrowth. This Clear Casting Regrowth costs no mana. All it's going to be doing is buffing my healing on my mage by 5%, and that's because I get the extra, hot for mastery from this Regrowth right here. And so that actually is the last global that I use that puts me in combat. So now we're going to just shift a little bit to talking about avoiding this trap. That was the last global that put me in combat. Me healing my mage does not put me in combat. So pay attention to what happens in the next 6 seconds. Root on the Hunter, disengages the root. Dwarf Shadows, and we Fleshcraft the trap, stun the Hunter. So let's watch that one more time. So we cast the Clear Casting Regrowth on our mage. That was the last cast that put us in combat. We know the Hunter's trying to trap us, so we cast the root just to try to maybe get a feign death. Maybe make him run away or just stay still. There's the feign death. He cast the Dwarf Shadows as I'm casting Clone, and you can see I immediately move out of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to juke a Clone cast and then cast a Fleshcraft to try to get him to throw I'm trying to make him think that he's going to trap me on my Cyclone. So I juke the Clone cast and I cast the Fleshcraft. Fleshcraft means the trap. Hunter doesn't get it, and guess what? I'm out of combat. Since the trap didn't land. Well, I don't even think trap puts you in combat, regardless. But he's not attacking me. My Entangling Roots that I cast on him, Entangling Roots does not put you in combat. And I just spent this time not finishing a Clone cast, so I got a Re-Stealth. I stun the Hunter, and he uses Human Trinket. So I still have all my hots on my mage. I get the Swift Mend on the Cenarian Ward again. I could have actually Swift Mended with the Adaptive Swarm there, but I have it again off cooldown right here. He's used Bestial Wrath. They have no crowd control, no trap, no intimidation stun, no kick even, and no Human Trinket. So this is just kind of a perfect example of having the proper healing rotation, understanding when the CC is coming, and doing everything we can to avoid the CC in the first place. So there's a Clone coming out on my mage. Feral comes over, bashes me. My mage CS is the Clone. Very good. And we could have just put another Sen Ward up right there, but we haven't done that yet. We're going for a Re-Stealth. We got a Re-Stealth. We Stampeding Roar just to speed ourselves up, and we stun the Feral, and we Sen Ward right away because we realize our mage is taking damage. I always I refer to it as like feeling guilty. Like sometimes I feel guilty. It's like I'm being too offensive and I'm leaving my mage behind, and I'm letting him, I'm letting his HP fall and not healing him. I'm trying to do something offensively, and it's not good. So right here I Sen Ward and I Swift Mend, just trying to recover him as soon as possible. And right here, I'm gonna actually use my NS, I believe. Yeah, he dips low again, and I just use my NS. This is good. They did a lot of damage here. If you watch, I'm gonna replay this, and you can see how much damage comes in. But sometimes it is much better just to get that nature swiftness on cooldown and stabilize your teammate just right off the bat. You just want to get him high HP first and then start getting your hots up. You know what I mean? Like getting them high HP first and just stabilizing them is going to make them feel safer. It's going to make them feel like they can use globals and start doing things and moving on from having to survive. So I top him off and I Iron Bark. I Life Bloom, Adaptive Swarm, Tranquility, Life Bloom. Super stable, and we have the Iron Bark. So let's just watch that one more time. We're going for a re-stealth here, which maybe we shouldn't have done. This is probably our mistake, was going for this re-stealth, I would say. But we end up making good use of what happened. Cenarian Ward, Swiftman, the Mind Games comes in, bunch of damage. We NS, and then he's right back down to 50%, and then we Iron Bark, Adaptive Swarm. Life Bloom gets purged, and we Tranquility. Tranquility is really nice in these types of situations, just to have that one little extra hot. And so right here, excuse me, right here, the Hunter actually kicks me on my Cyclone, and all my hots are falling, and he has Trap and Intimidation Stun. Hunter has Intimidation Stun, he has Trap. I'm very aware of the fact that I'm about to get CC'd off this kick, so I'm spamming my Swiftmend. You can see me spamming it down there. I get the Swiftmend, extending the Cenarian Ward, the Adaptive Swarm, and the 2 Rejuves right before I get Intimidation stunned, and that actually is what keeps my mage alive during this stun. If I didn't have those hots on him, you can see they're pumping him. If I didn't have those hots on him, he would have taken a ton of damage right there. And then I get full cloned. Thankfully, my Priest MDs me. My Solar Force would have fallen, and I would have had no hots on my mage there. Could have been a much worse situation, but thankfully my Priest was looking out. I get the Sim Ward on my mage, immediately Swiftmend. We use the Thorns. And we leap in on the Priest. Get the Adaptive Swarm to our mage there. Get kicked by the Hunter. Again, just moving around, trying to make it hard for him to trap. Right here, I'm going to stand still for a second and then use dash. This is a good way to avoid traps sometimes for some hunters. Here, the Feral actually just comes at me and stuns me anyways. But this a lot of the time will get you out of a trap. If I'm gonna press play, you'll see me stand still, kind of juking, being like pretending like I'm standing still, and then quickly dashing away. Sometimes that will avoid the trap, but Feral came over and stunned me, gets the full trap. Mind Games on my mage, alter time, but we have the Sim Ward and the Adaptive Swarm rolling. My mage would be much lower HP if I did not have those hots on him before this trap hit. And this is my mage is alter time up, and this is another reason that mage and druid work so well together, is that if the mage can alter time at high HP while the hots are ticking, it's going to take them a while to get him down to 30% HP through those hots. And then they have to just do it again. If he gets the altar back, he's still got those hots ticking. It's just gonna altar time is extremely effective with the way healing over time works. So he ends up being totally fine here, I think, with the altar back. Okay, that was another key moment. Let me go back a second. So I'm in a full trap. What do I not like? What's my least favorite thing about this situation? My least favorite thing about this situation is that I have every hot up. Like I have every hot, but my least favorite thing is that the Cenarian Ward is ending in like 1 or 2 seconds. So I have the Adaptive Swarm, I have everything going. I'm just missing that Cen Ward. But my trap is over in 4.3 seconds. I have Cenarian Ward in 5 seconds. I'm trying. This is going to be the global. This is going to be the best global. I don't have Swiftmend for 6. I don't have NS for 6. I don't have anything else really. I could maybe refresh Life Bloom, but no. Cenarian Ward is the best global for me to use if there is a gap in the CC, and thankfully there is a gap in the CC. We get the Cenarian Ward up, a fresh Cen Ward right as the Disorient hits, and we just Swiftmend that and top him off. My mage uses BM, probably didn't have to, but I understand why he did, and that Swiftmend totally stabilized him there. We get the Solar Force Rejuve, refresh our Life Blooms, and here we go ahead and stun the Hunter while the Priest is stunned. Feral comes in, incapacitating roars everybody, and we get the restun. We meld for the stun and stun the Feral right there. And just a side note, we have the Rake, the Rip, and the Moonfire. Sometimes you'll notice that your Adaptive Swarm will swap from your teammate to one of the enemy players, and it's good to react with that and just try to get any bleeds or dots up on the target that you can. It definitely helps out sometimes for sure. Intimidation stun on me into the full trap. There's the grip. No trap. Stun on my mage. Very good play for my Shadow Priest there. I probably should have been paying more attention to where the Priest was, but he gets the fear on me. Hunter's hitting me, breaks it. I saw pots to myself. I'm not too worried here. I use this add-on here, Diminish, to track my own stun DR. I know that I'm not on stun DR. I know I'm not really in trouble. I think I do use the Solar Force Rejuve on myself just to, stabilize without having to actually cast on myself. I'm trying to get hot spec up on my mage. He's lining me a little bit, but I noticed here that it's probably a pretty good time to bash the priest. My mage has veins up, priest is in my line, doesn't have human trinket, feral's already low. I bashed the priest, they swap to the priest PSs, and the priest is actually perfectly in my line for me to clone the PS. I want mostly to talk about healing rotation and stuff like that in this video, but or at least in this game, in this clip. But this is definitely something that is extremely good to do. The feral has used his big wall, the priest has used PS, but the priest is cycloned on the PS, so he's not actually able to heal himself while he has this damage reduction. It's just nullifying the damage reduction. So yeah, we'll get the hot spec up on our mage. Send word into the Swiftmend to extend it into the Adaptive Swarm, into the Innervate, into the Overgrowth. Innervate is extremely important for mana conservation, and it is best to be used with Overgrowth. The best time to Innervate is when you can Overgrowth one guy, get full stacks, like full hots, everything up on him, drop an Efflorescence, drop a Shroom just for the free mana. You know, it's free, so you know why not drop one, and then get rejuves up on yourself and your second TPS if you can. That's what I like to do with my Innervates, and I think it is the most mana efficient thing during high damage if you can not get CC'd on it and just get full worth out of it. I put 2 rejuves on myself because why not with the Innervate. Keeping hots up on my mage once again. There's the Efflorescence. You saw me drop the Shroom around my mage just for the free healing. And then Hunter's coming at me for trap, and I try to fleshcraft here to avoid the trap because I know that he doesn't have intimidation. So I'm just trying to fleshcraft and you know mess with his head a little bit. He doesn't throw the trap, and I know that he doesn't have kick or intimidation stun, so I'm going to actually cast the clone on the Hunter, which cross CCs him. And we're getting some pressure on the priest. There's the pet sack. We moonfire the priest just to help out a little bit with the damage. Send ward on our Adaptive Swarm on our mage with the I believe it's a Solar Force Rejuvenation, maybe not. I get intimidation stun. So here, as you can see, we probably should have had more haunts on our mage. We probably should have had Send ward up. We probably should have Swiftmended it. I believe they get block here, but the feral did use this isn't the worst because the feral did use his Incarn, which is a 3-minute cooldown, I believe. It's either 2 or 3 minutes. The Tiger's Fury, the On Use, and the Kyrian. So feral used everything. They got a lot of damage. There was mind games as well, and so they get the ice block. Kind of unfortunate. We maybe could have prevented that with better healing rotation for sure, having hots up preemptively. But right away we get the Send ward. We Swiftmend that. Just get it on cooldown. Keep it up as long as we can. Casting Clone on the Hunter. We juke out the Hunter's kick. We dispel our Priest Fear, and keeping hots up on our mage once again. I believe we juke the Feral's kick as well here. Here's the mind games, yeah. Feral miss kick as well, and then there's the bash. And right here, my mage is already low. He's 45% HP. He has no blocks, no alter time. He has 1 blink. I know that I'm going to have to trinket this trap. I'm going to trinket this trap immediately. You know, I know that my only answer in this situation is Swiftmend Nature's Swiftness, but that probably is a sufficient answer. His Beastral Wrath is falling. I know the Feral's already used everything pretty much. I don't have Iron Bark. My only answer is Swiftmend and S. That'll stabilize him. And so right away, no hesitation, Swiftmend. And I wait a second so I don't overheal. Like I said, holding your global on your NS until they're around 30% HP or so is good. And then you want to just quickly top them off in order to avoid overhealing and increase the efficiency of your NS. Because if you overhealed with it, they would just do that damage again, and you would have to catch up with hots. I'm just trying to constantly avoid, just to touch again on that topic, like Druids struggle with the high unpredictable damage. You have to set yourself up preemptively. Try and take every opportunity to keep your teammate as stable as possible in the long term. So holding that global for that NS was very good. Trinketing right away, not hesitating, knowing when my trinket is going to be needed. He's already 40%. I know that I'm going to have to trinket this trap before I even get trapped in the first place. There's a Nature's Swiftness. Keep my hots up once again. Cast a clone on the Hunter because neither one of them has a kick anymore. There's a Stun Silence on the Priest. Drop the Vortex over there on the Priest. We swap the clone over to the Feral. So once again, using Cyclone, I've talked about this a lot already, but we're throughout this game, we're using Cyclone on both the Feral and the Hunter, cross-CCing both of them as often as we possibly can to try and keep our team on the offensive. So here's the Thought Steal. Yeah, so the Priest Thought Steals us here. Another reason why I thought this would be a good game to go over is because of this. You're going to see here how you can very, very, very easily deal with Thought Steal. It is not very threatening in most situations. Cast the Regrowth, cast the Overgrowth, cast the Adaptive Swarm on our mage, and we don't really have another global to press here. We have every hot that we can possibly have on him except maybe Tranquility. We could Trank or we could Thorns. So I believe we Thorns here. We swift mend, thorns, get intimidation stunned. Our priest grips us, thankfully, because that could have been the game there. I mean, my mage had altered time up, but I had no trinket. My mage has no blocks. There's the MC from my priest. And my mage altered time's back to full HP, and the thought steal's over. So overgrowth kind of got us through the thought steal. We leap in, we stun the priest, playing offensive. The game's pretty much over at this point. As God Comfort Jungle, a lot of the times you will out mana the enemy priest. Sometimes if they're holy, it can be different, but here it was a disc priest. We bash the feral, and just trying to, again, we stun up the hunter. So right there, we stunned all 3 targets. We leaped in, we stunned the disc priest, stun the feral, stun the hunter, and I believe the priest goes down here. Yeah, so we'll watch that one more time. It's important to know, when you can end the game as a druid, when your stuns are going to mean the end of the game for the other team. And right here, I was pretty confident in that. Stun the penance. He's too low mana, can't radiance himself. Bash the feral, stun the hunter, and that's game over. The priest humaned, I guess, and the hunter humaned as well. So it wasn't necessarily the best example of a time where, 100% that the game is over, but, still, I saw the opportunity for the stuns to come in. I knew I wasn't at risk of getting CC'd, got the stuns on the right targets, and we won the game. So yeah, once again, I think that this was a great game to learn from as far as healing rotation goes, positional awareness, avoiding traps, avoiding CC, how to play versus a hunter in general, and some cool tricks with Cenarian Ward and Verdant Infusion and stuff. So yeah, hopefully you guys learned something from this game, and let's move on to the next one. Alrighty, so now that we've talked about healing a little bit more in depth, I'd like to move on to positioning. But before I do, I want to clarify one thing. Many of the concepts that I'm discussing are sort of big picture concepts to play around with in your games. I'm using specific real game examples so that it is much easier for you to visualize different scenarios. It just makes it a lot easier to explain. You may find yourself in some of the same situations in your games as you see in the games I've showed you, but oftentimes you will find yourself in completely unique situations. And it is your job as a player to learn and adapt to those situations. This will be affected by the matchup, your teammates' ideas, and whatever else may come into play in any given scenario. Unfortunately, this video isn't long enough to go into detail on every single matchup that you may find yourself in during your games, but I believe that the knowledge in this video and the big picture concepts that I am discussing will help you in every single game you play as a druid. With that said, let's deep dive into positioning as a druid. Positioning as a druid, similarly to healing, is extra important because you have so many tools at your disposal. Wild Charge is off of the global cooldown, is on a 15-second cooldown, and serves multiple purposes. You can use Wild Charge to land an important Cyclone, as we've seen earlier in this video. You can also use Wild Charge to land an important Mighty Bash, and you can even use it to reposition yourself defensively. It's hard to talk about positioning sometimes because of the extreme variance on the game you are in, depending on the matchup and everything. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to break down positioning into 2 key concepts. Concept number 1 is put your team in between you and the enemy team. I'll say that one more time. You want to put your team in between you and the enemy team. This is a concept that is extremely important when playing with classes like mages and warlocks. It's the easiest to understand, easiest to execute when you're playing with especially 2 casters. But any kind of caster, that's the easiest application of this concept. You will find it most useful when playing compositions like God Comp, Shadow Play, MLD, LSD, and other double caster comps. But this positioning concept will help you in any matchup in any expansion. This is kind of the key idea behind defensive positioning. Putting your team in between you and the enemy team makes it much more difficult for you to be either crowd controlled or attacked, both by allowing your team to aid you in different ways: grounding totem, counterspell, polymorph, fear, mortal coil, all these different things, as well as just generally putting distance in between you and the enemy. There are many ways to get yourself into an effective defensive position as a druid. As druids, we are essentially immune to being snared, and we can move very quickly with abilities like Wild Charge, Dash, and Stampeding Roar, with some help from the Tireless Pursuit Conduit and Travel Form in combination with a Cancel Form macro. I feel it's important to mention that it is impossible to position yourself effectively as a healer without paying attention to the positioning of your teammates. In your games, pay attention to your teammates' positioning just as much as you do to your own. And move around the map with them fluidly when you need to. Notice where your teammate is kiting and give them room to kite by retreating to a more defensive pillar or by simply moving backwards and leaving space, kind of allowing your teammate to trace your footsteps. You're kiting into open space away from the enemy team, and your caster or whoever is trying to get away or kite in some way, it's going to make it so much easier for them to get away if you leave them room to kite, so that they're not kiting the team kind of on top of you, if you know what I mean. And we'll go over this with specific real game examples. But communication with your team about major defensives will also greatly increase your effectiveness with positioning as a team. Talking about what cooldowns you have, talking about whether you need to get away. You can just say something as simple as, yo, I think we need to kite. I think we need to get away, kite towards me, and you leave them room as you're saying that. This is especially true when playing with warlocks and monks because of their portal abilities, teleporting them back to a specific location that can determine where you decide to position yourself on the map. You want to always be in line of sight of that portal or be able to easily get to them or access them if they do decide to use that portal ability. To summarize, defensive positioning is a key component of becoming a good healer in the arena. Defensive positioning is accomplished by putting your team in between you and the enemy team. This allows your team to intercept them in any given way when the enemy team pushes in. This also simply puts distance between you and the enemy team. Druids can accomplish this with their highly effective mobility toolkit, and in the coming clips I will discuss how to utilize this concept in your games. And really quickly, I just want to take this moment to discuss a specific macro that I think is maybe the most important macro that I think every single Druid should have, and it's a cancel form macro. All you need to do is make a macro, and in that macro type /cancel form, one word. CANCELFORM, cancel form, one word, put it on your bar, bind it. For me, my bind for my cancel form macro is Shift S. This is a way to take you out of any shapeshift form that you are in, and it is completely off global cooldown. It's the reason that you should never get hibernated as a druid, because you can cancel form at any time, and it is an extremely effective way of removing snares on yourself. You remove a snare on yourself not only by going into a form, but also exiting a form. So that means if you're in bear form and you get slowed and there's a little gap between you and the enemy warrior, you can cancel your bear form if you're on global and remove the snare on you, allowing you to run faster than him if he is in fact snared. So that cancel form macro is going to be extremely useful for you, and is a macro that I highly suggest making if you plan on playing Druid in Arena in any situation. But moving on, concept number 2 is when to push in. This concept is much more complicated and advanced for any healer, but especially for a druid. Knowing when it will be possible to push into the enemy team and land a game-winning crowd control is one of the most beautiful and challenging parts of what makes a druid a good druid. Mastering this skill to the point of true consistency requires a deep understanding of the composition you are playing, the composition your enemy is playing, all of the obstacles to accomplishing your goal, a situational awareness of your own teammates' actions, a situational awareness of your enemy's actions, and your enemy's positioning. That's kind of a lot, but we'll go over it again. The process that encompasses this skill can be referred to as setting yourself up for the purposes of this video. This type of awareness comes after lots and lots of practice. All simultaneously, you must consider what tools do you have to execute an offensive goal. What do they have to stop you? What does the enemy have to stop you? What does your team have to stop them from stopping you? And where is the enemy team? Where are they positioned on the map? Then comes execution. This is what I love most about Druid, because as a Druid, you can cross CC for yourself, land the CC on the healer, a stun on the kill target, and then prevent the enemy team from recovering with a low cyclone, all in the span of 15-20 seconds of gameplay, full of risks, opportunities to shadow meld and fleshcraft incoming crowd control, juke interrupts, and just generally outplay your opponent. But to summarize, this concept can be used in beautiful ways that truly remain the reason I continue to enjoy this game, but it can also be used in less creative, yet more reliable and consistent ways that will still win you games every time you queue up. In the coming clips, I will discuss how this concept can be applied in real games, but with all this said, let's jump in. Alrighty, so having discussed, positioning in a conceptual way, now let's jump into an actual game and get to the actual application of some of these concepts. So as I discussed, the first concept of putting yourself in between, putting your team in between yourself and the enemy team is extremely important, especially with double casters. But here we're gonna have a game of TSG. So Warrior DK Druid into Fire Mage Holy Pally, I believe is a Warrior. Yeah, Fire Mage Holy Pally Warrior. And so we're gonna go over this concept without the double caster, just to show you guys that this concept is is applicable with other kinds of comps. And I'm sure you guys have seen this positioning concept applied in many of my God comp games. You know, it's something that I do pretty much every single game that you ever watch. But yeah, so let's jump into this game here. It's also going to touch a little bit on getting attacked, being in bear form, you know, this and that. So we're going to be playing Guardian Affinity. Which honor talents do we end up taking? Deep Roots, Reactive Resin, Mass Entanglement. So we're gonna be rooting the warrior a lot as much as we can, trying to control their positioning. We're playing Guardian, so we have access to Incapacitating Roar. In most of these videos, you see me using Feral Affinity, but here we're gonna see how Guardian Affinity can be used when playing TSG. But yeah, so let's jump into the game. Mark of the Wild here, good sometimes versus Fire Mage, just to reduce the damage of Meteor, some other small damage like Ignite. I'm not sure if it affects Phoenix Flames or things like that, but it is generally okay to take into Mage, for sure. So yeah, we got Hotspot on our DK, got Hotspot on our Warrior, and let's see what happens. So right away here, I believe I know what happens in the opener. Yeah, so our positioning right away, we're just playing far away, kind of on as much of a pillar as we can get on Blade's Edge Arena. Both our melee DPS are in the middle of the map. The Paladin's on that side of the map. I'm on this side of the map. Just very, very normal positioning. This is how you want to position. You don't want to be right here. You don't want to be over on this ramp healing your team from 10 yards away from them. You know, you could just get Stormbolt and swapped to. You could get DB'd and sheeped at the same time as their warrior fears the DK and stuns your warrior or something like that. It just leaves you so vulnerable to CC in so many ways when you're playing double melee and they're in the middle on Blade's Edge. And in a lot of different matchups, you know, if you're melee or in the middle, you want to be on a pillar, you want to be far away. So the mage Novas, both DPS, this distance between me and the mage allows me to see what he's doing. He blinks once, he blinks twice, he Dragon's Breaths, I Fleshcraft his DB, right? So like I saw the mage coming at me. I know exactly what he's trying to do after he Novas my DPS. The only reason he would Nova my DPS and then start blinking towards me is if he's trying to DB sheep. So he blink, DB. We get the Fleshcraft on the DB. He uses CS there on the Fleshcraft, which is Shadow. I can still use all my Resto abilities, so not a big deal. Get the Stormbolt on the mage. They fear me. I have Stemward up on my DK. I'm Hodged. My DK blinds. The mage Trinket combusts. So we've used Rally, my DK Lichborn, and the mage is actually going me with the Combust, so I use Barkskin. We trade AMZ and Rally. So totally a fine trade. We've gotten both the DPS's Trinkets, we've gotten Combustion, we've gotten Avatar, and we've traded AMZ, Rally, Barkskin, and Lichborn. So, you know, not a bad trade at all. This game is going great for us so far defensively and offensively. We're doing good. So the Warrior continues to attack me, so let's see how I deal with that here. We go into the bear form, get the Adaptive Swarm on ourselves and Frenzied Regen. Adaptive Swarm buffs the healing of Frenzied Regen. I'm not sure if it's supposed to work that way, but it does. So if you Frenzied Regen with Adaptive Swarm up, I believe if you're playing the Innate Resolve conduit, it affects it as well. But I'm not exactly sure how the interaction works, but it definitely is good to Frenzied Regen when you have Adaptive up. We top ourselves up with that. You know, it doesn't cost any mana, just, you know, conserving our mana. And the Warrior charges to us. We Vortex the charge. I'll go through this smoothly again. You know, I know that sometimes me pausing over and over can be a little bit disorienting, but so we bark our DK. He AMS is there. Maybe could have held the AMS. Maybe could have held the bark. Warrior charges. We Vortex the charge, keeping him far away from us. And so the direction I'm moving may seem a little bit weird to you guys, right? Because we're talking about trying to put your team in between you and the enemy team, but it can be hard to accomplish that sometimes. Like, this is a perfect scenario to go over for that concept, because if you look where I am 10 seconds ago, the Warrior's on top of me, the Mage and the Pally are in the middle of the map, and my melee DPS are on the Mage. You know, like, I should be on the opposite side of the map. I should literally be on the opposite side of the map, far away from the Warrior, far away from the Pally, and allowing my team to intercept the Warrior or the Paladin if they want to come at me. So I need to make my way that way, right? There's no point in me staying on this pillar with the Warrior, you know, because the Pally could just, if I did stay on the pillar with the Warrior, what would happen is the Mage would be over here with my 2 DPS, Novaing them, DBing them, sheeping them, you know, doing whatever, and the Holy Paladin could just have a free tunnel right to me. Just a free, you can just walk right over to me, and my Warrior's like nowhere to be found to intervene me or whatever. So I Vortex the Warrior, I root him. I'm trying to control the Warrior's positioning as I move across the map, you know? I'm not just in bear form walking in a straight line. I mean, sometimes that's the right thing to do, but in this situation, I had tools, you know, they didn't have a stun available for me, they do now. But I'm trying to control the Warrior's positioning, keep him off of me, stabilize my team. As you can see, I have Hots up on all 3 people on our team, and I'm starting to, you know, stabilize as far as my healing rotation, and we're controlling the Warrior's positioning as we move across the map. So right here, we roar the Warrior, we leap to our Warrior, and we know the Warrior has Stormbolt. We know he's going to press it. We see it on our pop up on our Omni bar, and we press bear form, getting in bear form for the stun. The Warrior gets gripped back, and look where I am. I'm completely safe. My warrior and my DK are right there, and the paladin is on the other side of my warrior and the DK, as well as the warrior and the mage being stacked upon them, and I'm safe away from the fight, you know, not at risk of being CC'd, not at risk of being attacked, getting haunts upon my teammates, totally safe. So we're going to go over this concept many times over and over again throughout this game, just how to get yourself in these kinds of positions, and just to position yourself safely as a healer in general. But as you can see, as a druid, you just have so many different ways of doing that. So I can see the warrior walking over to me, so I know he's thinking about attacking me. I know he would like to attack me if he could. So I'm just using this pillar, staying out of line of sight. Both my DPS are topped off. I don't need to, like, you know, risk coming in line and getting attacked just to get a few hots up, you know. Put some hots up on myself. Warrior charges me, you know, pretty obviously he wants to attack me here. My warrior leaps back, disarms him. He's just helping me peel a little bit. You know, once again, it's really nice to be within range of your DPS to help you come peel. And so right here, I decide to abandon the concept of trying to abandon the defensive positioning concept for a second. These concepts, like I said, they're large scale concepts. They're not like you should do this all the time, no matter what. You know what I mean? It's a general concept defensively. What I'm gonna do now is drag the warrior away from the fight, CC him, and then reposition. So I'm getting frustrated with this position that I'm in. The warrior's just attacking me. I don't really like that. I don't want to be forced to heal my teammates and then potentially get stunned out of form and swap too, and then my teammates are in trouble too. I just don't like that. So I'm dragging the warrior out while both my DPS are totally fine. You know, my warrior has parry. He's got human trinket. My DK has IBF. He's got AMS coming up in 10, and the warrior's not even over there. So I'm not too worried about my DPS. The mage is actually dying. You know, my team is winning this 2v2. So I mass root the warrior. As you can see, that does not put you in combat. Mass root and entangling roots do not put you in combat. And the warrior should have heroic throwed me here, but I wait for my ignite to fall off and I get a re-stealth because he didn't heroic throw. And we dash up instead of trying to cyclone the warrior, wasting time just playing this game, CCing the warrior. Sometimes it can be good to play that game, get the warrior's reflect, try to roar him, try to root him again, try to clone him, you know, just try to CC him, you know, for 20 seconds over in the one corner of the map. The paladin's so close, he can get a freedom off, he can get a dispel. The warrior could stormbolt me mid cast if I you know, mess up a clone retime or something like that. So instead of messing around with the warrior, I use dash in stealth and reposition over in a safe spot, dispel my DK, and look where we are. So just to rewind, we've made our way from, this is where we started the game. We started the game on this side of the map. We transitioned through the map while controlling the warrior through this, you know, through the center of the map while controlling the warrior on this side, back to the other side, and then we dragged the warrior over to this corner over here and came back up the center of the ramp here to position ourselves again safely on the other side of our team with the enemy team. You know, having our team as a buffer between us and the enemy team. So once again, this is just positioning 101 for any healer, but especially you can see as a druid, having access to stealth, having access to dash, having access to wild charge, you know, travel form, just all these different tools for mobility allows you to be very creative and move around the map in whatever way you choose. So right here, the warrior did just leap stormbolt me, but we're just going to pause for a second on that. Just on a healing note, we have Cenarian Ward, Soul of Force Rejuve, and regular Rejuve on our warrior. We have Adaptive Swarm, 2 Rejuves, and a Life Bloom on our DK. You know, both of them are being attacked. So this is a very good way to split up your healing on your 2 teammates. Using Cenarian Ward and Adaptive Swarm on different targets can be very effective. But let's see what happens in this Stormbolt. The warrior Stormbolts me and attacks me, but the mage gets Stormbolted at the same time. So I just trade Barkskin and Frenzied Regen, get into bear form and totally recover. You know, nothing too big there. And a lot of that is because of our positioning. You know, we're not getting stunned on top of the Paladin where we're taking Judgments and Hammer of Wraths and Crusader Strikes and Consecrate damage. And, you know, we're not taking damage from the mage because he's in a Stormbolt. The only thing that's hitting us is the warrior. And a lot of that is because, you know, it's really because of 2 things. It's because of our positioning and because of our teammates' awareness. So our teammate stunned the mage on the, you know, Camus stunned the mage on the attack on me, and I was far enough away from the Pally to where I'm not taking any extra damage. So not at the red at all. Warrior wasted Stormbolt. We root the warrior away from his teammate. We cast the clone to juke out the reflect. We I think we missed the soothe, and we moonfire the reflect off. We're casting clone on the mage here. So the reason we're casting clone on the mage so freely here is because we actually have reflect up. This is not really something that is reliable. You can try to do this with your team and communicate about it. If you're at a high level with your teammate, you can definitely communicate this, but it is a little bit difficult. I noticed that I get the reflect from my warrior, so I just go ahead and free cast this clone on the mage without worrying about getting counterspelled. We get the full clone on the mage. He didn't press the CS. If he would have pressed it into the reflect, it would have reflected the counterspell, so it would have been no big deal. But this low clone on the mage is kind of nice, just because it allows our DPS to get back on top of him. You know, their stun is coming back up in 8 seconds. He's low HP. The paladin's on top of the mage as well. So it's just a good low clone to freeze. You can see all 4 of them just stacked up right here. You know, generally just gives my 2 DPS an advantage. We're in bear form. We're kiting the warrior out once again, just trying to like take him away from the fight. There's certain times where we want to be close to our team, and then certain times where we don't really want to be close to our team because we can survive on our own and we feel like our DPS are safe. My warrior has stun coming up. He's got fear in 10 seconds. My DK has AMS. Both of them still have trinket, still got IBF, AMZ in 5 seconds. Like, they're totally fine. I don't need to worry about them at all. I'm just going to drag this warrior away, make it so that the warrior can't intervene his mage, can't stormbolt my DPS, can't peel for his mage at all. It's actually probably a mistake for this warrior to be doing what he's doing. So the warrior's attacking me. I know he has stun, and instead of getting bear form on this stun right here, I just press the swift bend. A lot of the time, if I'm just sitting in bear form with a warrior on me, like, you know, it's not actually productive, because there are some times where you need to stay in bear form when the other team has access to a stun, and then you have to wait to get peeled or for something to happen to where you can't get stunned anymore, and then you can come out of bear form and start healing yourself. But in this situation, I felt like the heals would have been definitely more valuable, because the warrior is committed to staying where he is, to staying on me. You know, he's used a lot of his mobility to get to me, and he's probably going to use his stun, which he does. And you know, we don't need to be in bear form to, like, we're not going to die in the stun. We just get the hots up, prepare, you know, to get stunned and keep ourselves, you know, stable. The warrior uses Avatar and actually chunks our HP here, and we just NS ourselves with the Frenzied Regen. We cast the clone, tank the kick out. We've got Fleshcraft, so we're not worried about getting kicked. We've got full hots up, get the Iron Fur rolling. And I believe we Fleshcraft here. Yeah, we Fleshcraft here. Mage comes and CS's us late, so they have no interrupts. We cast the clone on the warrior, getting reflected, and we don't care about this at all. The warrior even has access to fear. He could have just feared us and got our DPS anyways, but our DPS have cooldowns. You know, not too worried about taking this clone. We know that they just want to go attack us again off this clone, so it just basically freezes our HP for 6 seconds at 99% with a Fleshcraft absorb. Again, you know, just not too scary. And so my warrior fears the mage and the paladin, and instead of kiting up and through the enemy team, back through this ramp, you know, like I was standing here, if I kited through the action, back through here, it would just put me at so much unnecessary risk, you know what I mean? The warrior still has access to fear. He didn't get feared. The paladin has Hodge, as you can see. The warrior has stun in 4 seconds. It's just unnecessary risk. So instead of running through them, I just jump down in stealth, wild charge over to this ramp, and once again, you know, look where we are. Look what's going on. The mage and the pally, they're on that pillar. That's where I just was. I am not on that pillar. I have my team in between me and you know, the enemy team. Just once again, just going to drill in that defensive positioning concept. And so I'm staying max range here because it's very obvious that the enemy team wants to attack me right now. They've been attacking me the whole game, and the mage blinks in to me. Casting sheep. I'm not sure if I thought he was casting it on my DK, and he was. And so right here, kind of an important decision happens that I want to go over. The warrior does get disarmed, so this go was not the risk, like, it was not the riskiest thing for me. But so right here, the mage blinks into me and starts casting sheep on my DK, and I have a choice to make. Do I dispel my DK, or do I jump off, right? Are they going to leap and stun and kill me before I get the dispel? Is the dispel even worth it on my DK? Is he going to even be able to peel me, you know, effectively? And I make the decision here, because of how quickly the warrior leaps over to me, to meld, because I think that the warrior is going to leap Stormbolt. I see the leap, and I press meld right here. You can see meld going cooldown, because I figured he would just leap and have already pressed the Stormbolt, like mid-leap, to try to meld the Stormbolt. But he doesn't press it. My warrior doesn't intervene me, but I just, you know, I'm in stealth because of Shadow Meld, and I jump off. My DK sheep is over. Paladin's running towards me. And so just to kind of sum up, like, that decision was a very important one to make, whether to dispel the sheep or not. And in that situation, I do believe that choosing not to dispel the sheep and just melding and getting off the map was the right decision to make. The pally is trying to capitalize on my positional disadvantage, being, you know, on the low ground, needing to come back up to heal my team. He's running at me and forcing me into a kind of a tough spot. But as you'll see, I kind of get out of that. The warrior comes back over and intervenes to his pally to try to attack me here as well. So I roar the paladin, and I think about going for this cyclone. But as soon as the warrior intervenes over here to defend his paladin, I realize that it's time for me to leave. I drop the vortex on them. I get away. Stampeding roar. And the warrior uses Door of Shadows into the vortex, gets sucked back. And look where we are. Once again, guys. Once again, look what's going on. We are far away from the fight. In between, we have switched sides of the map very smoothly. You know, this is just like, you can do this over and over and over and over and over again. And it's like, it's very common when you're fighting Holy Pally Fire Mage, because of how immobile the Holy Paladin is and how much you can restrict the mobility of the mage if you're playing with, you know, the right classes. So, you know, controlling their positioning, controlling your own positioning, and always constantly putting yourself at an advantage positionally is something that you should do, you know, always. So yeah, we dropped the Master Root on the Warrior and the Mage. Again, just staying far away from the fight, keeping hots up on our teammates. We send ward our DK, Swift Mend that. We get a crit. It's very lucky, very good. We've got the Soul of Force Rejuve on the Warrior instead of putting it on the DK because the DK is already topped with Send Ward. We juke out the Mage's CS there, cast the clear casting regrowth on the Warrior. We Adaptive Swarm the DK. And Wild Growth, the Mage Klepto's there. So we know that we can Overgrowth, but we decide not to because we have Innervate up anyways. We just put the Hots up. We're 70% mana, not too worried about mana. And the Mage Combusts here on me. And we just very easily heal through that. So this is something that will happen definitely in your games. Like, if the enemy team, like, if you're fighting a Fire Mage as a Druid DK Warrior, you can absolutely make their life a living hell. Like with the combination of AMZ, AMS, grip, kick, you know, all the cooldowns that a warrior has with intervene, fear, stormbolt, kick, disarm on the melee DPS, like being in bear form for every stun, having BM trinket, you know, like using your cooldowns effectively, trading effectively. It can be impossible for them to like get effective goes on you. You know, when you're playing on the ladder in tournaments, I think it's a little bit of a different situation. But when you're playing on the ladder, you can make a fire mage's life hell. And a lot of the time, if they can't get the proper like combust go, they'll just press it, you know, kind of randomly, just like whenever they can. If they land a random CS or just get something, you know, spontaneous, they'll just press it and end up wasting it because, you know, you've prevented their go so many times. And so that will happen if you play a good defensive game, for sure. That is an element to having good defensive positioning. It can be very frustrating for the enemy team. So right here, you can see me mass rooting the warrior, controlling his positioning, casting the clone, you got the reflect, sue the reflect off, bro the warrior, just slowing him down from helping his mage. And so we're in bear form here. The warrior is on top of us with access to stun. And right here, you see both my melee DPS get blinding lighted. That is, you know, big clue. What's going to happen next? You know, when you see both if you're playing with big debuffs, this add-on that makes these buffs larger, what does that mean? It immediately means they're cross-CCing my DPS, they're going to stun me and kill me. So once again, instead of trying to dispel our DPS, we see the Ring of Frost being casted. We know we're not going to be able to dispel both our DPS. We're not going to be able to get them both out of CC. And you can't, you know, split second make the decision like, do I dispel my warrior? Do I dispel my DK so we can AMZ? What do I do? What do I do? The warrior has Trinket. Even if he could get peeled, he has Trinket for whatever peels hit him. You know, so we jump off. We decide not to dispel. We're in bear form. We jump off. We frenzied regen. We drop the Vortex on the warrior right here downstairs. And as soon as we get out of line, we dash. We get upstairs, and we're safe. We're chilling. Completely escape that situation. They use Blinding Light and Ring of Frost on both of my melee DPS to CC them and try to kill me. And instead of having to trade Trinket, Barkskin, you know, BM, Iron Bark, any cooldown whatsoever, all I traded was Bear Form, Ursol's Vortex, and Dash. That's all I had to use to prevent this go was those, you know, abilities. Vortex is the only cooldown there, and it's a 1 minute cooldown. So just using your positioning effectively as a druid, recognizing the threats when they're coming in. You know, when you're fighting a mage and you're playing with double melee, that's going to be their goal. They're going to try to CC your double melee and kill you if they're attacking you. So yeah, we'll just go over this one more time and then see what happens afterwards. Double Blinding Light, Ring of Frost, kite the warrior down. Warrior chases us, drop the Vortex. As soon as he gets sucked back, we dash up. Can't stun us. And the Pally's going for a drink. So we use Dispel on our DK. We come in here to stop the drink. Thankfully, we get it. The Pally hodges us, and the warrior avatars. He's connecting on us. We bark skin, and our warrior intervenes us. You know, now that the Sheep DR is over on our warrior, you know, the enemy team has used their CC to try and land a kill on me. Now they don't have CC to cross CC them and try to kill me when the kill is actually possible. So we BM, we send ward. The warrior uses Trinket. I'm not sure what on there. We Iron Bark our warrior, overgrowth him, getting hots back up on our DK. We pop the Trank, and the warrior charges back over to us, still just attacking us. We're really not too worried. We have Trinket, you know, we're kind of chilling right now. Our BM is falling though, so we do need to be a little bit careful. We go ahead and Swiftman ourselves and just NS. It's a relatively short cooldown, 50-second cooldown if you're playing ready for anything, which I am in this matchup. We leap over and we stop the drink. I mean, you can just see how mobile a druid is. Like, look how much distance I can cover so quickly. Like, I'm NSing myself over here. The paladin is drinking on the opposite side of the map, downstairs. I just jump, wild charge, and he's in my line right away, right there. Stop the drink. Very, very, very good. Root the Pally, preventing him from getting back upstairs. Mage Alter Times, we try to land the clone. The Pally dispels himself. You know, good on him. Gets over there, but he gets stunned by our DK. Paladin Trinkets, keeping hots up. And once again, this is starting to get into the end phases of the game. So you don't need to be as concerned about perfect defensive positioning, especially when you're playing a melee cleave. You can position defensively effectively without necessarily being across the map. Like at the beginning of this, I told you not to be where I am right now. Don't be on this ramp. Don't be really close. But right here, you know, they don't have fear. They don't have Hodge. They don't have all their cooldowns. So it is okay kind of in this situation. But immediately, as soon as they start attacking me, I reposition. I come back over here. I get safe again. And we're gonna get some hots up. Nice little voice crack there for the boys. We get the full sheep reflected on the mage. There's the freedom. Cast Ring of Frost. We got the kick, and we Shadow Meld the Stormbolt there. This was just pretty telegraphed here from the warrior. It was just pretty obvious what he wanted to do. He's obviously looking at me. He's obviously running towards me. We can see he's just like thinking about it. He's just disarmed. So I know like as soon as the disarm is over, he's just gonna leap Stormbolt. So he charged Stormbolts, and we Shadow Meld right here, immuning the Stormbolt and getting away. So yeah, totally prevented this going us. Cast the clone on the warrior. He blade storms it, and we've still got plenty of healing for ourselves. Not too worried whatsoever. Warrior has no blade storm, no avatar. We put him in the root. He's stuck in that root. So we casted the clone on the warrior in order to maybe land it. And instead of using, like he didn't have reflect. So there's really no way for him to avoid this cyclone besides blade storm, unless he was able to get on top of me and kick me. So after this blade storm, all he has is Stormbolt and kick, or I mean, he doesn't even have Stormbolt, he just has kick. So we root him. He has no avatar, no blade storm. We Soothe the Reflect off. He gets freedomed, and we cast the clone here. We Fleshcraft. Don't think he kicks that. Yeah, it doesn't kick that. He kicks the clone. He doesn't. Okay, so he doesn't even kick the clone. So we just land the full clone on the warrior there. Very good. Probably should have just kicked that. He probably thought I was going to juke just because of all these mind games that you're playing with people. This is definitely, again, very true. Kind of like the concept of people wasting offensive cooldowns if you're playing a good defensive game. If you are really messing with the mind of a warrior with reflect and blade storm and like different kinds of CCs and like juking out his kick and things like that, you can find yourself in a situation where you can just get a cast off for free. And so that's what happened there. We get hots back up on our warrior. There's the AMZ. We Swiftman the Sen Ward, and the warrior comes at us and Stormbolts us. And I believe he does a substantial amount of damage to us here. Now we trade Barkskin. We're totally fine. He didn't have avatar or anything like that. We roar the warrior and we juke the CS out for the mage. Overgrowth ourselves. And let's see what happens. Keeping hots up. Nothing's really going on right now. Warrior's walking towards us. We run downstairs, trying to stop the Pally's drink. Getting stealth. Just trying to stay annoying. We don't need to. Yeah, okay. So this is, yeah. All right. I know what I need to say here. It's the end stages of the game. Our DPS are completely fine. We need to be fluid. You need to be open-minded about how the game is going to end. Pay attention to the enemy team's positioning. All of the pressure is on the enemy team. They're freaking out in their comms. They're trying to get a drink. They're like, oh my God, what do we do? What do we do? Like, let's do this. Maybe let's do that. Throwing out random ideas at the end of the game, kind of probably having a pretty hard time. We're high mana, have all of our cooldowns, no pressure whatsoever. There is going to come a time where it's time to capitalize on, the chaos. So the Paladin is down here, separated from his team. I know he's separated. I get the re-stealth. I'm watching the Paladin and where he's running back up from, also watching the Warrior. I see the Paladin running back up this way, and I notice that, he's in a perfect spot for me to CC him. We mass root him. He uses the global on the freedom, and we land the full Cyclone. So here, we have not really pushed in for CC a single time, honestly. As Druid, when you're playing TSG, it doesn't happen very often. But right here, this was the perfect time. So, we're about 7 minutes into this game, and we see the Paladin going for the drink. We have plenty of time, plenty of space. We got plenty of cooldowns. So we pay attention to the Paladin's positioning, and we catch him off guard, coming around the pillar, trying to heal his team and stabilize. We land the clone into the reclone, into the incapacitating roar. We Swiftman our warrior, and he parries, and we land the kill on the warrior. So we didn't even end up killing the mage. It's just, these are the kinds of things that happen when you're playing melee cleaves or playing, more dampening kinds of comps. But as you can see here, we have just slightly touched on the second concept that I discussed in positioning, and that is when to push in. And in this game, this is many games that you will find yourself in, depending on what composition you're playing. You don't find yourself even finding like the right opportunity to push in until literally 7 minutes into the game. And the one time you do find the opportunity to push in and land the offensive crowd control is the time you win the game. And that's exactly what happened here. So I think we've gone over a lot in this game. This wasn't like a super high rated game or anything like that, but it's against good players, and it's a very stereotypical comp matchup, and I feel like there was a lot to learn from in this matchup. So hopefully you guys learned as much as I intended you to, and thanks for watching. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so now that we've gone over the kind of key concept behind defensive positioning, let's go over some offensive positioning. So we're going to discuss that second key concept that I brought up, which is when to push in. And so I have a few different clips lined up here. We've got a clip of Turbo, a clip of Shadow Play, 4 of God Comp, and then 1 of RMD. And in all of these different situations, you're going to see like end game concepts, like how to push in and use your CC, both Guardian and Feral Affinity, and try to end the game. So here, let's start with Turbo. We are CS'd, coming out of a CS. Our in-hand Shaman has wall up. The Holy Priest is almost He's on Sheep DR from probably a Hex or an Incapacitating Roar or something like that. But none of them have trinkets except for the Holy Priest. So let's see what happens in this clip. So we're recovering our Shaman and we're trying to push in and end the game here. So we land the full clone on the Holy Priest because he's kind of standing in our face. So first, let me discuss just a general positioning concept. Like if you look back at the beginning of this game, we are positioned somewhat defensively. We have our Shaman and our Warrior are on the Warlock. The Shadow Priest is on the other side. So we're in a very solid defensive position. But this Holy Priest is in a very odd position. This Holy Priest is kind of in the middle of the map and very vulnerable to CC. And it's 17, it's 17 minutes left in the game. We're in dampening. So it's time to punish him. So we land the full clone on the Holy Priest. Our Warrior's getting MC'd across the map, but he leaps back over. We get the reclone on the Holy Priest, I believe. Yeah, we get the reclone. The Holy Priest trinkets, and we throw the bash on him out of his trinket. And then we leap back over to the Warlock, trying to clone the Warlock low, and we actually do get the glow clone on the Warlock. So what this is doing is freezing the Warlock's HP at 30% health, after the Holy Priest is already trinketed and is eventually going to be coming off of Cyclone DR. So we've gotten the Priest trinket with Cyclone, we've punished the trinket with Bash, and then we push into the Warlock to get the low Cyclone. We freeze the Warlock's HP at 30% HP. And so let's see what happens after that. We get silenced. We're still pushed in very offensively here. It's time to end the game. We've roared the Shadow Priest, CCing him into the Cyclone. On the Mind Games, we clone the Shadow Priest trinket because we know he's going to trinket. This is something to practice as a Druid. Knowing when these endgame times are going to happen. One of the fun things about Druid is that people often are going to use their medallion, their trinket, on your Cyclones. So knowing when they're going to trinket and already being casting the next clone on the trinket is a very important concept. And even just the threat of CCing the trinket is very important as well, as you'll see in some of the coming clips. So we get the clone on the trinket from the Shadow Priest, and my Shaman lands the full Hex on the Holy Priest. We wild charge in to our Shaman and land the full clone on the Priest out of the Hex, and we land the kill. Our Warrior trinkets the Shadow Fury to land the kill on the Warlock. So let's go over this clip one time with no pauses. But yeah, I mean, it's offensive positioning, how to use your tools. Right here, we're Guardian Affinity. We get the full clone of the Holy Priest, capitalizing on his offensive positioning. The Warlock is kiting around the map, trying to run away, trying to get away from our DPS, using Soul Shape. We land the reclone, we get the Bash. We leap into the Warlock here, just trying to get the low clone on him. We get the low clone because he doesn't have CS for 1 second, if you saw down there. And again, this is what I'm talking about. I said I was going to do no gaps, but let's just do one gap really quick. It's about knowing when they have CS. This Warlock has not had CS for this entire time. It's knowing what they have to stop you from doing what you want to do and getting it done. The Shadow Priest probably could have silenced me on some of these. Maybe he couldn't have. Maybe it just came up. But the Warlock didn't have CS. I'm not that in that much trouble if I start casting these clones. So this is the time for us to be ending the game. So we cast the low clone on the Warlock. He probably should have trinketed this low clone. This Warlock probably should have trinketed while his Priest wasn't CC'd, because he ends up getting the Hex. Here in a second, we get the Incapacitating Roar into the clone on the Shadow Priest on the Mind Games. We clone the trinket, we leap into our Shaman, and we land a full clone on the Holy Priest out of the Hex. So once again, using our mobility, using Wild Charge, using Travel Form, using all of our mobility to put ourselves in the position to land the game-winning crowd control. And in order to do that, you have to understand that the Warlock didn't have CS. Maybe I can tank CS at this point. Maybe I can position myself in a way where I can't get CS or I can't get silenced. But yeah, this was ending a game as Turbo, as Guardian Affinity, fighting Shadow Play. But let's jump into the next clip. So for this one, we have God Comp versus Shadow Play. We're playing the Shadow Play. And so right here, this is actually going to be a punishing a drink situation. So when you're fighting Druid versus Druid, late game, especially these double caster matchups, late game, the drinks are going to be super important, and they're going to kind of decide the fate of the game. So right here, we're casting the Fleshcraft. We're positioned relatively offensively on the same side of the pillar as our team. The other two people are over on that side. I don't have any dots on myself. It says Devouring Plague. We get the Fleshcraft up to give ourselves an Absorb, so we're not worried about pushing in, as it is pretty deep in dampening. Only 13 minutes left in this game. The Druid dispels himself. He's going for a drink, and my Shadow Priest double fears both the DPS. So I notice where the Druid is. I see he's over there going for a drink. I leap over,
and I dropped the Vortex on the drink, and my Vortex actually doesn't work here, which I don't understand. It didn't pull him back, and I'm not exactly sure why. But Vortex does prevent people from drinking. It just doesn't take them out of combat. So this is the time. You know, you need to have the awareness to know when is the time to push in. This was the time to push in. The Druid is going for a drink. We have a lot of pressure on them, and me pushing in for this. To stop this drink is actually controlling the positioning of the enemy team in a very unique way. I decided to push on to the Druid and stop his drink the fastest way that I could, which happens to be this left side of this pillar. This is also the fastest way for this Druid to heal his mage. His mage is the one that's in trouble. He's 54% HP. In order for this Druid to heal his mage, to come out of this drink and heal his mage, he would need to run directly through me. I've put myself, like, you know, defensively, you want to put your team in between you and the enemy team. Offensively, a lot of the time, if you can put yourself in between the enemy healer and their team, if you can somehow sneak in between that little gap, you can control where they go and punish them for their positioning. So I've prevented this Druid from drinking. I dropped the Vortex. It doesn't work. And now the Druid has to run all the way around this way to get to his mage. So he has to run all the way around this way. And I'm chasing him with Bash. And I get silenced. I land the Bash on the Druid. He doesn't have Trinket. He did get the Overgrowth off right there. You can see when his hands go up like that, it's usually Wild Growth, but that was an instant cast, so it's an Overgrowth. So he gets the Overgrowth off, but the mage just had to kite not around here. Like, think about it this way. Look where my Ursol's Vortex is. Look what the purple eye is. If I didn't come around that side of the pillar over there, the Druid would have just, if I didn't do anything that I did, if I just stayed on the pillar defensively and didn't position myself offensively, the Druid would have just peeked out right this way. The mage would have blazing speed from Cauterize and his blink, and would have blinked back here behind this pillar, lining my Shadow Priest and lining my Warlock. The fact that I came attacking the Druid from this side, forcing the Druid around this way, forcing the mage not to be able to run here without lining his healer, and having to run into the middle of the map is what allows my Shadow Priest to land this Mind Games that you'll see in a second. Sorry, I just accidentally skipped back in this clip. We land the Bash on the Druid, we get DB'd, and now the mage is just in our face. My priest casts the Mind Games, and he goes down. So there was absolutely no chance. I mean, this game, you could argue that this game was going to end in our favor, either way at some point. I was 24% mana when he was 8% mana, but, it's Fire Mage, he's got Combust, he could totally end the game. Me Vortexing this Druid, forcing him to run around the long way, and then landing the Bash, preventing him from getting off, efficient globals at the right times, is what eventually won us this game, keeping this mage, in the middle of the map, just kind of screwing up their defensive positioning. So yeah, this is definitely a learning moment for sure. And there's a lot of opportunities to punish Druids who are drinking, or really any kind of healer who's drinking. But yeah, hopefully that made sense positioning wise. So let's jump into this next one. So this is a game of God Comp versus Mage, Warrior, Druid. So right here, this is an example of a time where the enemy team does not have anything to stop us, right? So they don't have block. None of them have a trinket. They don't have CS. The Druid doesn't have bash. And the warrior can get CC'd. The warrior, my mage is here. My Shadow Priest is here. The warrior is behind me. I am positioned in a way where I'm ready to push in. The warrior is not on cheap DR or clone DR. Nothing is on DR. We have stun DRs. I have bash. I actually have 4 combo points in cap form right now, although you can't see them. So right here, my mage sheeps the warrior. This is another key concept for mage druid. If whenever you're fighting like caster melee and you want to push onto the caster when they're on a pillar, exactly the situation you see here with the the warrior being close to us and the mage and the druid being behind the pillar. When the warrior is close to us, we sheep him once, gets dispelled. Sheep him again, has to sit that. Full clone on the warrior. We've got 6 seconds. Without the warrior being able to do anything, help his team, intervene his team, get a mass reflect off, Stormbolt, fear us, defensively, anything. We've got 6 seconds where the warrior's cross crowd controlled. So what do I do with those 6 seconds? I Stampeding Roar, run in, get cat form, stun the mage first because the druid had ultimate form up. He had just casted his Fleshcraft, so he has ultimate form. We stun the mage first. We wait for the ultimate form to fall. We stun the druid. We cast the Hibernating on the druid to try to get him to come out of form. He does come out of form, but we land on the Ring of Frost anyways. Our Shadow Priest is coming out of the Cyclone. We get the silence on the mage, and we get the damage on the mage. Gosh, I just keep skipping to the wrong points in these clips. Hold on one sec. Sorry. Yeah, so we get the full Ring of Frost on the druid, the silence on the mage, and he does go down here. We cast the clone on the warrior and get reflected. A lot of times in these like high pressure situations, I usually feel like a lot of warriors will just forget to press reflect, but at the same time, if they see a clone being casted and it's hectic and chaotic, they may just press the reflect regardless of whether it's on them or not. Here we got a little bit unlucky that he got the reflect off. Probably should have juked that out, but didn't end up mattering really because we had trinket for it. We trinketed. Our priest had fear. We got the half sheep. We had plenty of follow up CC for the druid, and we get the seed and the game's over. And just like that, like this is the game has only been going on for 2 minutes and 20 seconds or so. So just in this little span of time, they have no trinkets. We sheep the warrior, sheep him again, clone him. We've used our Cyclone to CC the third target, the second DPS cross CC. We stun the kill target. We stun the healer. So we've CC'd all 3 people on the enemy team at this point. And then our mage comes in with the Ring of Frost. Shadow Priest comes in with the Silence, and we get the damage going, and the guy goes down. So yeah, this was definitely pretty cookie cutter ending to the game. Like I said when I was discussing these ideas kind of more conceptually, there's times where it's beautiful. There's times where you push in and you juke a kick and you shadow melts and fleshcraft and blah blah blah. Like you do all these cool things and you land CC. There are those times, but there's also times that are like this, where it's very cookie cutter, very simple, very straightforward. It's just kind of a script. You CC the warrior first, then you push onto them, you land the stuns, you land the CC, and you get the damage going. It's just very reliable, very consistent. And if you're able to execute this and understand your win conditions as a druid, regardless of the comp you're playing, you are going to definitely see some success for sure. But yeah, let's jump into the next one. So here we have a game of God Comp versus Turbo with the Disc Priest, and here is going to be more so capitalizing on the enemy positioning. When I discussed this conceptually, I went over the things that you need to be aware of. Those things are what comp you're playing, what comp the enemy team is playing. What do they have to prevent you from doing your go? Do they have CS? Do they have Sheer? Do they have Ground? Do they have Stormbolt? Do you have Warrior Fear? Does my priest have Silence? Does my priest have Stun? Does my mage have Sheep DR? Does my mage have Counterspell? Is my team in crowd control? Is it even a good time for me to be doing what I'm doing? Another one of those things is paying attention to the enemy's positioning, recognizing when they're standing in the middle of the map. A lot of these clips are 3K plus gameplay where you're fighting people who are very experienced, they're very well positioned, but oftentimes, even people who are 3K plus, a lot of those players will still make positional mistakes and be caught, in the middle of the map at certain points. The best players, maybe not, but a lot of very good players, you can catch them off guard. You can catch them in a, kind of a sketchy position all the time. So right here, that's what we're going to see. We get the hots rolling on our mage. We tank the sheer out. Not a big deal. This is just a perfect time to tank sheer. We've got full hots on our mage. Our Shadow Priest is chilling. Our mage has BM up. They're both in a Nova far away from a mage. We just tank the sheer out. We get the Moonfire on the enhance right there, and we clone this enhance low. This is perfect for us. This is a beautiful situation. It may not look that beautiful, but this is a game-winning situation. The shaman is in a clone. He has the option of trinketing. If he trinkets, he's off stun in 4 seconds. He gets stunned. He could die, right? Priest doesn't have trinket. Warrior is very far away from his priest, not going to be able to get dispelled if it gets sheeped. And the shaman's cloned at 58% HP, and he's not on clone DR. The shaman doesn't have sheer, doesn't have ground, warrior doesn't have stormbolt, doesn't have fear. They have no ranged stops for my cyclones, since I just tanked the sheer, a second ago, as I discussed. So we land this low cyclone on the enhance, and you're going to see this priest walk directly into the middle of the map. I just walk towards this priest, and he just runs right towards me, happily. He tries to body and soul and fear me, doesn't land the fear. I'm going to land the cyclone first. 9 times out of 10, it's a 20-yard range. You can't close, 20 yards in 1.3 seconds as a priest most of the time unless you have greater fade, which would just mean the clone in the first place. But yeah, we land the low clone. We swap the clone over to the priest with no trinket. The enhance actually tops himself, which is, that's cool. But still, everything that we've done still matters. We know we're going to get sheared. You can actually hear me say it. Here, I'll rewind really quickly. I'm going to cast, but he's going to shear. So I know that I'm going to cast this reclone and he's going to shear me. So I decide to bash him, and my priest freaking silences over, freaking CMG. And so I leap at the warrior out of the sheep, and he rallies. We get the stun on the warrior into the clone. He could have maybe trinket reflected this, but I don't know how much it mattered. And the shaman goes down. So you can see here, like, this is such a stereotypical ending to a God Comp game versus a melee cleave when you're able to capitalize on their bad positioning. Like, if you find a melee cleave standing in the middle of the map, you should be able, and you have stuns available, you should end the game as, like, you should create a threat as soon as possible. So let's just watch this through one more time. He Novas, we cast the clone, we tank the sheer. Our Shadow Priest gets MC'd, not the biggest deal. We get the Moonfire up in the enhance, and we clone him at 58% HP low while the priest is MCing, not healing him. Priest runs at us, we land the clone on him. Before he gets the fear, we get the Swiftman on our mage as well, keeping the Send Ward up. We know we're going to get sheared. We bash. Our priest silences over because he's trolling. And we get the meld stun on the warrior into the clone on the warrior. So once again, in this clip, you saw me low cycle on the shaman. So we've CC'd the kill target. You saw me clone the healer, get crowd control on the healer to prevent healing, and land a stun and a clone on the third target to prevent him from feeling his teammate. So over and over, I know I've said this enough, but that is what I love about Druid. That is one of the most beautiful things about Druid is how you can use your crowd control to CC all 3 members of the enemy team in a span of 10-15 seconds. It's beautiful, it's fun, it's engaging, and I feel like there's a lot of creativity to it, even though sometimes it can be very cookie cutter, very scripted, but sometimes it's not. So here, let's jump into this one.
Here we've got Shadow Priest to Warrior Arsham versus God Comp. We're in a stun. There's mind games on our mage, and we are positioned defensively. We're far away from the fight, but you know, there's going to be a time that we need to push in, and that time is coming very soon. So we get the Iron Bark on our mage because it's Avatar. We get the priest down to like 1% HP, it looked like there, and he gets the swap on the shaman. The shaman has no trinket. So I see the swap on the shaman, or the life swap to the priest swap to the shaman, bringing him down to low HP. We can just watch that one more time. He literally dips down to 1% HP, swaps the shaman at 25%, and I immediately want to bash him. I'm sure my team is saying something like go shaman or something like that. Yeah, so he says, kill the Sham, kill the Sham. So I run in, I bash the Shaman, I get Warrior Feared. But this bash is still very, very good. You know, it's still locking down the Shaman. He's still, all three of them are stacked on top of each other in line of sight of both my casters. My Priest has PI up, you know. This is very, very, very good for us. We get the stun on the Shaman, getting us some more pressure. My Priest uses that stun on the Shaman in order to land the mind games on the Priest, because the Shaman can't shear him. He half stuns the Shaman out of that. And it looks like the priest is about to go down. I don't know if he does. He gets the fade off. The shaman shears me. There's the earth, the earthen wall totem. And where I'm positioned now is extremely offensive, but oddly safe. You will find yourself in sometimes in these positions where you're playing, especially with double caster. Where I am right now, it's not going to be that easy for me to get CC'd, and they don't even have that much CC for me. They don't have grounding shear to stop my clones. They don't have silence to silence me. They don't have warrior fear. They've just stunned my mage. There's not that much they can do to prevent me from doing what I want to do and ending this game. They're all low HP. They have no interrupts for my CC, and my Shadow Priest is on this side, my mage is on this side, and I have infiltrated their position by I'm not in the middle of the map where you would normally see a healer in this situation. I'm actually in their starting room, you know, in line of sight of both of them, kind of in their face. And these situations, you know, a lot of times if you're in here at the wrong time, if they have access to Stormbolt and Silence and, you know, mind games, you could very, very, very easily get punished. And, you know, they have double purge. Like, there's a lot of downsides sometimes to pushing into Arsham, Shadow Priest, Warrior. But in this situation, because I was aware of what my team had, the pressure that we had, and, you know, what the enemy team didn't have, I was totally comfortable being in this position. We go ahead and just tank the shear out. We can just continue casting the clones. We get the clone on the priest at 40% HP. You know, he's frozen low HP. He ends up trinketing that. My priest lands the full fear on the shaman, and I half clone over the full fear because I see the vampiric touch, and I just really don't want the fear to break early because I know that my mage is trying to sheep. This is kind of a niche thing. It's not really something that you can like try to do consistently. It doesn't matter that much, but it was good to do in this case. There was a chance that the fear could break. We get the half clone on the shaman to prevent the damage, and our mage lands the full sheep out of the fear on the shaman, and we land the full clone on the warrior. Clone his trinket on the trinket intervene, and I believe the rally falls and he goes down. Yeah, we land the silence on the shaman and a stun on the priest. So once again, like you're seeing as a druid how often you can just CC all three members of the enemy team. Let's just start from the beginning. We run in, we stun the shaman. We get warrior feared on it, puts us in a place that is very advantageous for us. Happy to stay here, just because of what's going on in the game. We get sheared, and we go for the clone again on the Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest trinkets that, and my Shadow Priest lands a full fear on the shaman, half fear on the Shadow Priest during that. We half clone over the full fear in order to prevent it from breaking into the full sheep, and get the clone on the warrior and the clone on the trinket into a stun. So we've CC'd all three people in the enemy team with cyclones and stuns. And yeah, so let's jump into the next one. Here we've got DK, DH, Arsham. And so this, again, like in the first clip, is going to touch on punishing drinks. So right here, you know, we're pretty deep into this game. We're, you know, almost 10 minutes into this game, and dampening has begun. We've got Ironbark on our mage. We're trying to heal him up. The DH has meta up, and the DHs are all the way over here on this side of the map with both my casters ready to do damage to him. The DK is also in the middle of the map, has just pressed Fleshcraft, but the DK does not have Trinket. The Shaman has Trinket, the DH has Trinket. They have cooldowns. They have Spirit Link, they have Darkness, they have Netherwalk, they have plenty of cooldowns. But the one thing that we really have going for us is the Shaman's positioning. The Shaman is going for a drink. He's on the opposite side of the map behind the pillar. So I recognize this is the time to do stuff. So before I push far into stop this drink, I make sure that I have Sin Ward, Adaptive Swarm, and I Swift Mend, extend all my hots on my mage. So we're starting from here. We're in a very defensive position, far away from the shaman. We Swift Mend the Sen Ward, and we don't even use the Soul of the Forest because we don't have time to use the global. We drop the Vortex on the Shaman, forcing him to make a decision. He has to run either through me again or run around the long way. And the Vortex makes it even more of a long way because it sucks him back again. So instead of getting sucked back and coming this way through me, he decides to run the long way. And, you know, my priest catches him in a stun as he comes around. We cast the clone on the Shaman. DK gets sheeped. Again, does not have a trinket. Both people are in the middle of the map. The DH is in AMZ and darkness, so he can't like leave that and go interrupt the CC that's coming on the DK. The DK is on my Shadow Priest, so he's unable to kick the sheep on him. So the DK is getting CC'd by my mage, who cannot be stopped by the DH or the DK. My Shadow Priest has stunned the Shaman after I, you know, positionally punish his drink. I cast the clone on the Shaman, get the full clone. There's nobody to stop me. I cast the reclone, trying to, you know, make him aware of the fact that I'm trying to CC his trinket, put him under more pressure, have him think about multiple things during this, you know, because he's in a very intense moment right now. His DPS is 25% HP. He's in CC. I'm on top of him. My Shadow Priest is right there on top of him. You know, it's a very high pressure situation for him. And so casting the CCs on his trinket is just adding more pressure to the situation. So casting this Hibernate here as well, you can cast Hibernate on shamans when they're in Ghost Wolf. A lot of shamans will, you know, get cloned in Ghost Wolf, and if they're going to trinket the clone, sometimes what I do is I cast a Hibernate if they're in Ghost Wolf, just so that if they trinket, they get an 8-second CC instead of a 6-second CC. It's very effective, very good. Some shamans will like Tremor. They'll trinket Tremor the Hibernate, and that way it will just put them in the YAR and, you know, immune the Hibernate, which is very skillful. But yeah, you'll see here, we cast the Hibernate, he comes out of form, and I cast the reclone on the half clone, and I believe he trinkets this half clone, because I'm again, this whole time, I'm casting clones, you know, even though he's already cycloned. I'm just going to rewind really quickly. Stun into clone, cast a clone on the trinket, cast the Hibernate, cast the clone again, time the reclone, and then cast the clone again, and then he trinkets, but the DH is MC'd and the DK is sheeped. My Shadow Priest drops the MC and deaths him. So this was very good by my Shadow Priest here, because so I've been talking about the CC on the Shaman. So now let's kind of transition over to what's happening on the DH. The DH is very low HP. The DK is in a sheep again, cannot be dispelled because the Shaman's, you know, also in CC. And the DH presses Netherwalk at 15% HP, but in Netherwalk you are not immune to mind control. So my Shadow Priest mind controls the DH. My mage resheeps the DK, preventing the DK from, you know, the DK can't stop the mind control. The Shaman can't stop the mind control. The DH is in the mind control. So by the time the Shaman trinkets, you know, DH is 16% HP. He drops it. My mage Ice Novas him, and my Shadow Priest uses Shadow Ward Death. So that's just a very clean ending to a God Comp game. You know, taking these double melee teams to damp if you have to, and then trying to punish them like positionally or as far as cooldowns go, you know, whenever the opportunity arises, but not allowing your team to fall behind. You know, keeping my hots up on my mage as I push in, Ursol's Vortex on the Shaman, hot on myself. Stun on the Shaman, full clone, threatening the CC on the trinket, causing extra pressure. My mage has the cross CC on the DK taken care of. And then, you know, just cool little, you know, kill tactics like this mind control here is just very, it's the cherry on top, you know what I mean? Dropping it and landing the death and the Ice Nova at the same time. You know, the Shaman has trinket, he has Link, but because of the way we're playing the game, because of the way that they chose to position themselves, we have capitalized and taken advantage of the situation. So yeah, just another example of offensive positioning and how you can capitalize. So let's jump into this game here. This is RMD versus Arsham Ret DK. We get the full sheep on the Ret, the full blind on the Shaman, and the full kidney on the DK. And the Ret bubbles, because not all three of them don't have trinket. They have almost no defensive cooldowns, and we're killing the DK. You know, he has no AMS for 15. He's got no trinket for 20. Obviously no IBF. So we get the blind on the Arsham, the full sheep on the Ret. The Ret bubbles the sheep and bops the blind. And so at this point, I understand that. So I'm positioned offensively, as you can see. Like I've already pushed in. I know that this is the time when we're probably going to win the game. Usually when you have a blind go and the enemy team doesn't have any trinkets and your rogue has, you know, flagellations, shadow blades, you know, shadow dance, everything up, it's going to be a game winning go. So the Ret responds with bubble and bop, bringing them both out of CC. So now the DK can get healed by two people. He can get healed by the Shaman, or he can get healed by the Ret. So I'm ready to low clone this DK as soon as I can, but you're going to watch me delay my low clone over and over again, trying to maybe juke out the shear, get the grounding out of the way before I actually want the low clone to happen. This is a very key concept when using Cyclone. Casting the clones before you even want them to happen is extremely good. You can use this with DRs. Like if someone's still on clone DR for 5 seconds, but you want to clone them when that DR is off and they have kick, you can start casting the clone 5 seconds before they have DR. That way, even if you get interrupted, it doesn't matter because it's, you know, it's a 3 to 5 second interrupt, or maybe even 6 second interrupt. And by the time the interrupt is over, they have just been off DR for only 1 second. And so this is kind of a similar concept. I know that the DK is going to take a ton of damage. You can see the key, like the clues are the sinful proc right here, the flagellation, and the mirrors of torment. Mirrors of torment from a frost mage means he's about to do a pretty fat shatter. So I know the DK is going to take a ton of damage, and I'm going to delay my cyclone, juke out the interrupts, and try to land the low clone on the DK while these two people are immune to crowd control, in order to land the stun and the sheep on the shaman, because we still have, you know, stun and sheep DR on the shaman. I don't even know if we use the stun DR, but we'll see. So we juke out the clone, we juke out the shear with the first cast, we juke the second cast, and we cast the third cast. So he's 36% HP in this clone. My mage did have 2 procs right here, and the flurry was in the air. I think if I waited an extra half second, he would have been lower HP. But you can see the ret is running towards me with bubble up. So it's like, you know, that was the clone that I needed to go for, or else I was going to get interrupted by the ret. So let's just go through that one more time, a little bit slower, or I mean a little bit quicker. Juke, land the third cast before the ret gets to us. And right here, we're going to use Vortex to suck the shaman into a vulnerable position for our mage to land a sheep. We're going to drop the Vortex right there. You just saw me drop it. The shaman runs, gets pulled into the middle of the map. My mage doors in, uses the blink, and lands the sheep on the shaman. Uses both blinks and door there to get that sheep. And we didn't have to use stun on the shaman at all. So we get the full sheep. We get the bash on the ret. Probably should have just casted the clone on the ret here, but the bash is fine, and we get the full clone and the game's over. So we were able to win, even though they used, you know, bubble and bop and things like that. So let's just watch this one more time. Sheep ret, blind shaman, Kinney DK, bubble, bop. And so we juke the first cast, juke the shear, cast the second one, get him a little bit lower, get the clone before the ret gets the kick. Vortex on the shaman, gets pulled out a little bit into the middle of the map, comes out again to earth grab, and that was the killer right there. He blinks and gets the sheep, and then we bash the ret and we kill the DK. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure that, you know, a lot of these clips, you know, I recommend you guys go over them, you know, watch games like all the way through on your own. You know, I'm doing my best to kind of pause throughout these clips and explain them as best I can. But these situations are extremely complex. They're extremely nuanced. There's an infinite number of ways that things can come together in different games and, you know, different scenarios to allow you to end games as a druid. But I hope that I went over enough of the general concepts of, you know, how to use stuns and cyclones to, you know, cross crowd control an enemy team, as well as positioning. I think that positioning is something that I've found very, very, very difficult to talk about and write about. It's hard to explain positioning, but I think that with these two key concepts being, you know, defensive and offensive positioning, as far as healing, not really relating to DPS, but as far as being a healer, you know, understanding when to put your team in between you and the enemy team, and when to put yourself in the action. Understanding those two sides, you know, balancing those two opposites is a really beautiful thing, and it's something that I have a great time with, and I hope that you guys enjoy it as much as I do. But yeah, let's get into the next part. Okay, so real quickly, I just want to go over this clip right here. It's going to relate to positioning, especially with double caster, but more specifically going for a drink, and how going for a drink can allow you to capitalize offensively in a lot of different situations. One of the you know, things about Druid is that you do relatively quickly, so you are going to have to go for drinks a lot. But when you're playing double caster compositions, you are definitely able to go for drinks in a way that creates opportunities for your team if the enemy team decides to come and stop your drink. This can often, there have been many games of God Comp in BFA and Shadowlands that I've played with Grayson and CMG where you know, the enemy team will push in to stop a drink and end up losing as a result of it. So that's what happens in this game here. So we're going to go over this and just see, you know, what happens. So let's jump into the game. So right away, as you can see, the Warrior's BM trinket has just fallen. So Warrior does not have BM. He does not have trinket. Mage doesn't have trinket, and Druid does not have trinket. So we've done a good job offensively so far. We're just kind of recovering our Shadow Priest and trying to reposition. Right there where we were, I'll just rewind for just a second. Right here, we're all stacked up on this pillar. The Druid, the Mage, the Warrior, and my whole team is stacked up on this pillar except for my Warlock. But this is not an advantageous situation for Shadowplay to be in. When you're playing Shadowplay, you want to be spread out. You want to be in the middle of the map. You want to have as much open space as you possibly can. So right here, I decide to, you know, just reposition onto this open side of the map. We drop a new shroom for our Shadow Priest there. We get both of our DPS are in that shroom. We're playing Spring Blossoms for that. And so right here, we decided to go for a drink. We're 50% mana. The Druid's 83% mana. So we're losing on mana, but we do have Shadow Meld. So we're getting all of our hots up. And this is definitely something you want to do when going for a drink. And I'm glad I'm getting to discuss this in the video because it's an extremely important concept for Druid. Going for drinks is extremely important. When you go for drinks, you need to have hots up on your teammates. You can't go for a drink with no hots up, or else it's going to be extremely easy for the enemy team to punish you for trying to go for that drink. So we get the Send Word rolling, we get the Shroom rolling, we have Adaptive Swarm on our Priest for a couple seconds. They're both topped off, and so right here we dispel our Priest Sheep and we meld and go for the drink. So right here with the warrior starts casting Door of Shadows on us, and if we stayed still, that Door of Shadows would have, disoriented us and stopped our drink. But we just barely run out of this Door of Shadows, allowing the warrior to run in, and then we land the stun on the warrior. My priest turns around. At this point, I'm communicating with my team. I'm saying, the warrior's leaping in to stop the drink, I'm going to stun the warrior. So he already has UA, 10 stack Agony, Vampiric Touch, Shadow Ward Pain, Corruption, and now I get the Rake, the Rip. The Send Ward has just faded on the warrior, and the Life Blooms are fading as well. The warrior does not have that much healing active on him. We land the Root on him, and our priest gets the Mind Games because the warrior does not have Reflect. So warrior is stuck in a Mass Root. I'm playing Deep Roots, which is an honor talent, very good to play when you're playing with Shadow Priest and Affliction Warlock. This warrior is stuck in this Deep Root on the opposite side of the map from his Druid, all because he felt like he needed to stop my drink, which he probably did, but, there's some situations where you can't stop the drink or else you lose the game. So I root the warrior, we land the Mind Games on him, we've got full dots rolling on him, we Vortex him to suck him back on his Blade Storm, he goes around the other side of the pillar, and in the meantime, our Shadow Priest has stunned the Druid with Psychic Horror into the silence on the Druid, and the warrior goes down. None of them had trinkets, the warrior had no BM trinket, and they just didn't have any way of responding to this. So this is definitely something that can happen very frequently. Going for drinks can open up offensive opportunities for you and your team, and it's important to be able to capitalize on them when you can. But yeah, let's jump into the next video. Alrighty, so here I just want to take, this is not going to be a major part of my video, but I do feel like it's an important concept to go over, an important concept to discuss, and so we're gonna analyze this game. It's not the longest game, but one of the key components I want to talk about here is how to and we'll go over this in other game examples as well, but how to survive as a Druid under pressure if the enemy team decides to attack you, how to position yourself, and how to play with your team. So let's jump into this game. Let's see what happens, and we're gonna analyze it as we go. So we're starting the game in stealth. We've got hots up on our mage. Of course, we want to keep those hots up as soon as we can. We get the Adaptive Swarm rolling, Send Ward, while our mage has the Absorbs up. As you can see, our Send Ward has not ticked yet. You can see it's going to tick here in just a second. Our priest gets the silence on the priest into the, I guess maybe he death the polymorph or something like that. But we get the stun, the Mind Games, and the Shaman. Priest dispels, Shaman BMs, intervene, rally. So we get a decent number of cooldowns there. Warrior's attacking me. We juke the pummel and we go for the Cyclone. The warrior gets sheeped here, I believe. And we fleshcraft ourselves just to give us that absorb. So we have the cross CC going. We got the sheep on the warrior, the clone on the priest after the sheep on the priest ends. We get the reclone on the priest, and right here the enemy team starts running towards us, starts attacking us. So instead of running, there's a lot of different places we could go right here. We're not going to run towards the priest. We're not going to run, too far away from our team. We're kiting the enemy DPS back into our team's line in order to make it difficult for the priest to heal. So if we position ourselves over in this general area over here, if you see where my mouse is circling, the melee DPS would be right here. The priest would have to push onto this pillar over here, opening up my my casters to be able to land CC on him or put pressure on him positionally in some way. So let's see where I position throughout the game and just try to pay attention to it. But right now we're in the open. We tank the shear out with the clone. We're still in bear form. We still have the fleshcraft absorb. We're not super worried. The warrior charges us, and so we press Shadow Meld thinking that he had Stormbolt, but he actually didn't have it for 4 seconds. But we end up juking the warrior's kick again. We're in bear form. We innervate, Send Ward, we get stunned, and the Shaman uses Ascendance. I see my mage is in a fear, and he's also Thought Stolen. My priest does not have stun or silence, so I don't feel comfortable sitting that stun, the Shaman having used Ascendance. But the thing I don't use yet is Barkskin, because, if I trinket and Barkskin right away, they could just swap somebody else, and then I don't have that if they want to attack me later. So I trinket, I get my BM up to get me, a little bit higher HP with Send Ward, get the Swift Mend, NS myself to full HP. My Shadow Priest Sheeps breaks before I dispel it, which is great, saves me the global. And right here, the shaman continues to connect. The sharpened blade comes out, and I trade bark skin. So they've, now they've invested more than just ascendants. They've invested sharpened blade, and they're continuing to attack me with only 7 seconds left on ascendants. My regen's proc. I go bear form to get the extra ticks for it. When you're well-honed instincts, if you see this debuff right here, this is the debuff from well-honed instincts. It's your frenzied regeneration that procs. It actually heals you for more the more HP you have. It's a percentage-based heal. So when you have BM up, that increases the healing. When you're in bear form, that increases the healing. So I have BM up, my regens get procced, and I go bear form just to get a couple extra ticks of it. And we're healing ourselves for a pretty substantial amount through sharpened blade. And right here, I ironbark myself, and the reason I do is because usually you don't want to overlap ironbark and bark skin, but my mage is communicating with me, telling me that he can't do anything to help me. So, and I'm asking for help. I'm calling for peels, communicating, and he's telling me that I can't really help you. So I use the ironbark and get back into bear form. Unfortunately, we can't hear the comms in this. I don't believe we can. Yeah, we can't hear the comms in this game. But regardless, we're stabilizing. But now we don't have trinket, we don't have bark skin, we don't have ironbark, we don't have fleshcraft, we don't have BM. We have like nothing. We have like no cooldowns. But what we do have is god comp. We're playing god comp. We have plenty of CC. My team has plenty of support for me, so I'm not too concerned. I don't want to run too far away and just have the DPS get back on my DPS. I actually kind of like being attacked by these melee compositions as a druid because it leaves both my casters open, and it allows me to determine where the game is played. And you'll see that happen throughout this game. I'm staying in the middle of the map, kind of like trusting my team and playing well. This is not something that you may always be able to do with your matchups. In a lot of matchups, your team may not be on the same level as my mage and my shadow priest. They're very good players. They're always looking out. They're always looking to how to peel for me. And as you play with your team and as you improve, you will get better and better and better at that, and develop kind of a comfortability with your teammates. So right here, I'm back in bear form. Again, just dragging these DPS out, keeping them in the middle of the map, keeping them open. The warrior's getting sheeped off of me. The shaman has used wall. We juke the shear there. We go back bear form. We have thorns up, and we get bear form for the stormbolt. This is extremely, extremely important. Bear form has no cooldown. You should almost always, if you're playing perfectly, be in bear form every single stun that you're being attacked in. So we got in bear form on this stun. And I believe the stun that we trinketed earlier, we were not in bear form for. So that was, another reason why we used why we would use trinket there. We wild charge to our mage, and we're getting hots back up on our priest. We get the overgrowth, the trank, and we kill the totem there. We soothe the warrior's reflect off, cast clone on the warrior, get the clone on the warrior. He charges to us, but he didn't have kick or stormbolt, so we didn't need to stop casting. We wild charge to our mage, and our mage gets the triple DR sheep, and we get feared. So this was just me simply playing bad. I should have just bashed. The reason that we got double feared here is because my mage swapped the sheep to the warrior like just a couple milliseconds before I was going to bash right when the sheep ended, but I should have been paying attention to my mage's sheep cast. If you watch this right here, the priest is in a sheep, the warrior's in a clone. I leap to my mage. I'm waiting for my mage to cast into the sheep. He casts the triple DR sheep, and I'm gonna bash the priest right off of this triple DR sheep because he's already on clone DR. But if you watch my mage's cast, see this polymorph right here? He's gonna swap it to the warrior. The sheep ends just a little bit early. You see how close the sheep is to ending? It's gonna end just a little bit early, and he's gonna land the fear. So I was just waiting an extra couple milliseconds, but I really should have just been paying attention to my mage's sheep cast and gotten the bash off. There's the stormbolt coming out on me in the skin. Not prepared enough for this stun whatsoever. Should have been in bear form, but my warrior's already in a polymorph, and we should be fine. It's just the one stun. We get out of the stun. We swift mend. We still have NS. We're not using the NS quite yet, because it would be too much overhealing, and so we just put the Soul of Force rejuve on ourselves and get behind the pillar, kind of getting us into a safe position. There's the stun on the shaman, getting hots back up on our priest. This is still Avatar from the warrior. We're casting clone, trying to juke out the shaman shear. Just, trying to get it out of the way, and there it is, juking the shear out. Throughout this game, you've seen me just constantly, anytime the opportunity presents itself, this is a very effective way to use Cyclone. Cyclone presents a threat. People will use kicks on a threat. So you can constantly juke out these interrupts throughout a game and just generally help your team, prevent the enemy team from having access to those, helping your team land CC and do damage. So again, just kiting away. And right here, I probably should have been kiting slightly differently, but there wasn't necessarily, like, I could have kited back towards my team into this room over here, but that still would have left the priest with this pillar. I'm kiting way into the open, far away from my team, because I want to keep this game in the open. I want to keep it in the middle of the map, way out in the open, keep both the melee DPS vulnerable to my casters. I get Stormbolted here again, out of bear form once again, should have been in bear form. Sharpen comes out, regens proc, we Cenarian Ward ourselves, Swiftman the Sen Ward, and we're totally fine. You can see here the power of well-honed instincts. This auto frenzy regen proc, like, I'm making mistakes in this game. I'm not in bear form for every stun that I could be. I'm playing a little bit lazily. So this frenzied regen is kind of saving my butt in a lot of these different situations. And so right there, you know, we get the Sen Ward up, we quickly recover with the full hots. We go into bear form, we cast the clone. The warrior gets the kick on us, but now they have no reflect, no grounding, no shear, no pummel. I get the fleshcraft off. And we clone the warrior here, I believe. So this is an important thing to do. When you use Fleshcraft, you have that ultimate form immunity. A lot of the times, if I'm fighting a warrior and I don't have time to juke out the reflect, if it's convenient, as it was here, I cast the Fleshcraft, get the CC immune, and I just cast the clone into the warrior, soaking the reflect, because I know it's going to soak it. And that's exactly what I know, that I'm not going to get cloned on the reflect because I have the ultimate form here. You can see the ultimate form debuff on myself. I cast the clone on the warrior, he reflects it, and it doesn't get the clone on me. I meld stun the shaman because my mage got a sheep on the priest, clone the warrior with no reflect, and the shaman couldn't shear me because he's in the stun. I'll go over that one more time. Excuse me, one sec. Oh, okay, so cast the clone into the warrior, soaking the reflect. We shadow meld, stun the shaman, because that's the most important thing. Before we get the clone on the warrior, we needed to stun the shaman. Why? Because the shaman has wind shear. So the shaman has access to wind shear. The warrior has no reflect, no kick, no stormbolt. The warrior can't stop me. He could fear me, but he maybe wasn't paying attention or was running towards my priest to fear him. So we stun the shaman first, preventing the wind shear. We cast clone on the warrior, allowing us to get the triple CC. So right here, you know, I have CC'd both the DPS, my mage has CC'd the healer, and we have immense pressure. Shaman walls, BMs tops himself. Pretty cool. And getting hots up, wild charge back over to our mage, trying to land a CC on the priest, get the maim stun into the full clone. My priest actually half stunned the shaman, so we couldn't ground it, which was very good. And we get the PS for that. So we've gotten pain suppression, wall, and BM just from using maim and priest stun. So that's very good. Maybe some, I'm not sure exactly what offensive cooldowns we used, but once again here, we see the warrior leap over to us. We get in bear form for the stun, right? We haven't been doing this, throughout this game, but here we did see it. The warrior comes out of the sheep. He leaps right over to us, and we get the bear form on the stun. So get the bear form on the stun. We use bark skin because warrior goes battle. It's popping stuff off on us. We thorns ourselves, get a rejuve, purchase the thorns right away, adaptive swarm after that, bark ourselves, BM, just to stabilize ourselves. This was probably an overuse of cooldowns. Maybe didn't have to use the iron bark right when we did, but it ended up being good because the warrior used avatar. It's important to kind of understand the flow of these games. Like, my mage has 2 blinks. He's never having to use anything defensively. He probably has his barriers. My mage, or my Shadow Priest still has phase, still has his spurs. He's got, they haven't really gotten any defensive cooldowns from my team, so I can be very liberal with my cooldowns on myself. If I'm low HP, sometimes you can benefit greatly versus these double melee compositions by just using the cooldowns on yourself, stabilizing and keeping them in the middle of the map. So right here, I Iron Bark and BM, keeping myself topped off, and my warrior uses Fear on my Shadow Priest, peeling him, preventing him from helping me. My mage is sheeped and Thought Stolen once again. My mage ice blocks that, but the warrior avatars, and I have Iron Bark and BM up. So this actually ended up being very good. We dispelled our priest's sheep there, but we have mind games on us, so we're not able to heal through it, with our hots. So we go ahead and use the NS just to go ahead and top ourselves off through that mind games. So let's go through this one more time. The sheep is on my priest. I dispel my priest, my Shadow Priest sheep. I get mind games, and I am gonna need to just NS heal with no Soul of the Forest, no Swiftmend. Still heals through the mind games in combination with all of my other hots. And we have Sin Ward coming up here in just a few seconds. Okay, so this is probably I think the game ends here in a sec. We land the kill. Understanding, as you've seen throughout this clip, it's important to understand when you can cast clone, even when you're being attacked, staying cool and calm under the pressure, and not just when you get attacked totally shutting down and not doing anything, right? Because there's still going to be opportunities for you to land cyclones and stuns even if you're getting attacked. It's just a little bit harder to see those opportunities because you're also at risk of dying. So right here, I noticed we land the full sheep on my priest right after we recover from this go. We NS ourselves, we're recovering, we land the full sheep on the priest. We soothe the warriors reflect off, as you can see on my Trophy GCD here. We soothe the warriors reflect off. All they have is shear and pummel. They don't have Stormbolt, they don't have ground, they don't have fear, they don't have reflect. to stop my cyclones. So I juke both kicks with the cyclone cast. We bash the warrior on the juke, allowing us to get the full cyclone on the warrior, and then we follow up with the cyclone on the priest here off of the triple DR sheep. We get the full cyclone. We're casting the recyclone on his trinket because we know that the shaman doesn't have shear. He does have grounding, so he ends up using grounding a little bit preemptively, kind of wasting it because I'm just casting clone. He's not going to be able to absorb any damage with that. He shears me, and I believe my priest lands the stun on the priest trinket, and we kill the shaman. So I mean, at the end there, the enemy team probably did make a few mistakes for sure, but as you can see, staying cool and calm under pressure, still landing the cyclones even when you're being attacked is extremely important. Dispel the sheep, mind games, NS through the mind games, soothe the warriors, reflect, cast the clone, juking both interrupts, and bashing the warrior, cloning the warrior to prevent any kinds of peels, and landing the CC on the priest because they have no interrupts, they have no grounding, no shear, no pummel. We get the full sheep on the warrior, clone on the priest, continuing this triple cross CC throughout the game, and the shaman goes down with the stun on the priest. So what did the priest actually? I'm curious what the priest trinketed. Did he trinket the first clone? Yeah, he trinketed that last clone like right at the very end. So the enemy team did make a few mistakes here, but it's not like that won't happen in your games as well. But yeah, so I just wanted to go over this game of talking about a little bit of touching on positioning, a little bit touching on healing rotation, a little bit touching on surviving and staying calm under pressure when you're being attacked, and how to position yourself with God comp, but generally any double caster comp when you're being attacked by a double melee team on a small map. Alrighty, so that is all I have to go over for this video. I think there are probably some things I didn't cover in this video that I wish I could have, but I did my best to put together something that will help achieve the goals of any aspiring restoration druids out there. Thank you so much for watching this video. It really means a lot to me. Much love to you all, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out my Twitch live stream in the description below. Have a great rest of your day, morning, or night, and I'll see you again soon. Peace out, guys.